Reply to John Lewis. Forward. The reader will find an article and a note here dating from June 1972. The article, Reply to John Lewis, appeared, translated by Brain Lock, in two numbers of the Theoretical and Political Journal of the Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxism Today, in October and November 1972. Reply, because a few months earlier, the same journal had published a long critical article by John Lewis, a British communist philosopher known for his interventions in political ideological questions, under the title, The Althusser Case. The present text of the reply to John Lewis follows the English version of the article, except that I have made some corrections, added a few paragraphs for purposes of clarification, and also added a remark. To this text I have joined an unpublished note, which was to have been part of my reply, but which was cut to avoid extending the limits of an article which had already grown too long. 1 May 1973 LA reply to John Lewis. Self-criticism. I want to thank Marxism Today for having published John Lewis's article about the books I've written on Marxist philosophy, From Marx and Writing Capital, which appeared in France in 1965. He took care to treat me in a special way, in the way a medical specialist treats a patient. The whole family, as it were, together with his silent colleagues, stood motionless at the bedside, while Dr. John Lewis leaned over to examine the Althusser case. A long wait. Then he made his diagnosis. The patient is suffering from an attack of severe dogmatism, a medieval variety. The prognosis is grave. The patient cannot last long. It is an honor for this attention to be paid to me, but it is also an opportunity for me to clear up certain matters 12 years after the event. For my first article, reprinted in From Marx, which was concerned with the question of the young Marx, actually appeared in 1960, and I'm writing in 1972. A good deal of water has flowed under the bridge of history since 1960. The workers' movement has lived through many important events. The heroic and victorious resistance of the Vietnamese people against the most powerful imperialism in the world, the proletarian cultural revolution in China. The greatest workers' strike in world history, 10 million workers on strike for a month, in May 1968 in France, a strike which was preceded. 36. And accompanied by a deep ideological revolt among French students and petty bourgeois intellectuals, the occupation of Czechoslovakia by the armies of the other countries of the Warsaw Pact, the war in Ireland, etc. The cultural revolution, May 1968, and the occupation of Czechoslovakia have had political and ideological repercussions in the whole of the capitalist world. With hindsight, one can judge things better. Lenin used to say, the criterion of practice is only really valid if it bears on a process which is of some length. With the help of the practical test of the 12, 10, or even 7 years which have passed since the original articles were written, one can look back and see more clearly whether one was right or wrong. It is really an excellent opportunity. Just one small point in this connection. John Lewis in his article never for one moment talks about this political history of the workers' movement. In From Marx, that is, in 1965, I was already writing about Stalin, about the 20th Congress of the Soviet Communist Party, and about the split in the international communist movement. John Lewis, on the other hand, writes as if Stalin had never existed, as if the 20th Congress and the split in the international communist movement had never occurred, as if May 1968 had never taken place, nor the occupation of Czechoslovakia, nor the war in Ireland. John Lewis is a pure spirit. He prefers not to talk about such concrete things as politics. When he talks about philosophy, he talks about philosophy. Just that. Full stop. It has to be said that this is precisely what the majority of so-called philosophy teachers do in our bourgeois society. The last thing they want to talk about is politics. They would rather talk about philosophy. Full stop. That is just why Lenin, quoting Wittgenstein, called them graduated flunkies of the bourgeois state. What a wretched sight they make! For all the great philosophers in history, since the time of Plato, even the great bourgeois philosophers, not only the materialists, but even idealists like Hegel, have talked about politics. They more or less recognized that to do philosophy was to do politics in the field of theory, and they had the courage to do their politics openly, to talk about politics. Reply John Lewis 37. Heaven be thanked that John Lewis has changed all that. John Lewis is a Marxist, and we are in 1972. He does not feel the need to talk about politics. Let someone work that one out. But to Marxism today, I must express my thanks for giving an important place to a discussion about philosophy. It is quite correct to give it this important place. The point has been made not only by Engels and of course by Lenin, but by Stalin himself, and as we know, it has also been made by Gramsci and by Mao. The working class needs philosophy in the class struggle. It needs not only the Marxist science of history, historical materialism, but also Marxist philosophy, dialectical materialism. Why? I should like to reply by using a formula. I will take the personal risk of putting it this way. The reason is that philosophy is, in the last instance, class struggle in the field of theory. All this is, as John Lewis would say, perfectly orthodox. 2. And B. In the last instance. I do not want to be misunderstood. What I am saying is that philosophy is, in the last instance, class struggle in the field of theory. I'm not saying that philosophy is simply class struggle in the field of theory. 3. This formula, which is extremely condensed, might mislead the reader. I would therefore like to add 3 points to help orient him. 1. Because of its abstraction, its rationality, and its system, philosophy certainly figures in the field of theory, in the neighborhood of the sciences, with which it stands in a specific set of relations. But philosophy is not a science. 2. Unlike the sciences, philosophy has an especially intimate relation with the class tendency of the ideologies. These, in the last instance, are practical and do not belong to theory. Theoretical ideologies are, in the last instance, detachments of the practical ideologies in the theoretical field. 3. In all these formulations, the expression in the last instance designates determination in the last instance, the principal aspect. The weak link of determination, it therefore implies the existence of one or more secondary subordinate, overdetermined, and overdetermining aspects, other aspects. Philosophy is therefore not simply class struggle in theory, and ideologies are not simply practical, but they are practical in the last instance. Perhaps there has not always been a full understanding of the theoretical significance of Lenin's political thesis of the weak link. It is not simply a question of choosing the weak link from a number of pre-existing and already identified links. The chain is so made that the process must be reversed. In order to recognize and identify the other links of the chain, in their turn, one must first seize the chain by the weak link. 38. Engels, whom Lenin quotes on the point in what is to be done, wrote in 1874 in his preface to the Peasant War that there are 3 forms of the class struggle. The class struggle has not only a non-personal risk of putting it this way. The reason is that philosophy is, in the last instance, class struggle in the field of theory. All this is, as John Lewis would say, perfectly orthodox. 2. And B. In the last instance. Engels, whom Lenin quotes on the point in what is to be done, wrote in 1874 in his preface to the Peasant War that there are 3 forms of the class struggle. The class struggle has not only a economic form and political form, but also a theoretical form. Or, if you prefer, the same class struggle exists and must therefore be fought out by the proletariat in the economic field, in the political field, and in the theoretical field, always under leadership of its party. When it is fought out in the theoretical field, the concentrated class struggle is called philosophy. Now, some people will say that all this is nothing but words, but that is not true. These words are weapons in the class struggle in the field of theory, and since this is part of the class struggle as a whole, and since the highest form of the class struggle is the political class struggle, it follows that these words which are used in philosophy are weapons in the political struggle. Lenin wrote that politics is economics in a concentrated form. We can say philosophy is, in the last instance, the theoretical concentrate of politics. This is a schematic formula. No matter, it expresses its meaning quite well and briefly. Everything that happens in philosophy has, in the last instance, not only political consequences in theory, but also political consequences in politics, in the political class struggle. We will show in a moment why that is so. Of course, since I cite Engels and Lenin in support of my point, John Lewis will surely say once again that I am talking like the last champion of orthodoxy in grave difficulties. Okay, I am the defender of orthodoxy, of that orthodoxy, which is called the theory of Marx and Lenin. Is this orthodoxy in grave difficulties? Yes, it is and has been since it came to birth. And these grave difficulties are the difficulties posed by the threat of bourgeois ideology. John Lewis will say that I am crying in the wilderness. Is that so? No, it is not. Reply John Lewis 39. For communists, when they are Marxists, and Marxists when they are communists, never cry in the wilderness, even when they are practically alone. Why? We shall see. I therefore take my stand on the theoretical basis of Marxism, a basis which is orthodox precisely insofar as it is in conformity with the theory of Marx and Lenin. And it is on this basis that I want to take issue both with John Lewis and with my own past errors, on the basis of the need to carry on the class struggle in the field of theory, as Engels and Lenin argued, and on the basis of the definition of philosophy which I am now proposing. Philosophy is, in the last instance, class struggle in the field of theory. I will therefore leave aside all the rather imprudent remarks, some of them psychological, which John Lewis thought worth making at the end of his article about Althusser's whole style of life and writing. John Lewis is, for example, very worried, very put out, quite upset, good humanist that he is, by the fact that Althusser argues exhaustively and with extreme dogmatism, in a way which makes him think not so much of the scholastics, who were great philosophers of the Middle Ages, but of the schoolmen, commentators of commentators, erudite splitters of philosophical hairs, who could not rise above the level of quotation. Thank you, but really this kind of argument has no place in a debate between communists and the Journal of the Communist Party. I will not follow John Lewis onto this ground. I approach John Lewis as a comrade, as a militant of a fraternal party, the Communist Party of Great Britain. I will try to speak plainly and clearly in a way that can be understood by all our comrades. So as not to make my reply too long, I will only take up those theoretical questions which are most important politically speaking for us today in 1972. Second, to understand my reply, the reader must obviously know what John Lewis, in his radical critique of my philosophical writings, essentially holds against me. In a few words, we can sum this up as follows. John Lewis holds: 1. That I do not understand Marxist philosophy. 2. That I do not understand the history of the formation of Marxist thought. In short, his approach is that I do not understand Marxist theory. That is his right. I will consider these 2 points in succession. First point, Althusser does not understand Marxist philosophy. To demonstrate this point, John Lewis employs a very simple method. First, he sets out Marx's real philosophy, which is Marx as he understands him. Then, beside this, he puts Althusser's interpretation. You just have to compare them, it seems, to see the difference. Well, let's follow our guide to Marxist philosophy and see how John Lewis sums up his own view of Marx. He does it in 3 formulae, which I will call 3 theses. 1. Thesis number 1. It is man who makes history. John Lewis's argument. No need of argument since it is obvious, it is quite evident, everyone knows it. John Lewis example. Revolution. It is man who makes revolution. John Lewis argument. Since it is man who makes history. Reply to John Lewis 41. It follows that in order to make history, man must transform the history which he has already made. And since it is man who has made history. To transform what one has already made is to transcend it, to negate what exists. And since what exists is the history which man has already made, it is already negated history. To make history is therefore to negate the negation, and so on without end. John Lewis's example. Revolution. To make revolution, man transcends, negates existing history, is self-negation of the history which preceded it, etc. 3. Thesis number 3. Man only knows what he himself does. John Lewis's argument. No argument, probably because of lack of space. So let us work one out for him. He could have taken the case of science and said that the scientist only knows what he himself does because he is the one who has to work out his proof, either by experiment or by demonstration, mathematics. John Lewis's example. No example. So let's provide one. John Lewis could have taken history as an example. Man's knowledge of history comes from the fact that he is the one who makes it. This is like the thesis of John Baptista Vico Verum Factum. These then are the 3 theses which sum up John Lewis' idea of Marx philosophy. Thesis no. 1. It is man who makes history. Thesis number 2. Man makes history by transcending history. Thesis number 3. Man only knows what he himself does. This is all very simple. Everyone understands the words involved. Man make history. No. There's only one word which is a bit complicated. A philosopher's word. Transcendence or negation of the negation. But if he wanted to, John Lewis could say the same thing more simply. Instead of saying man makes history in 42. Transcending it by the negation of the negation, he could say that man makes history by transforming it, etc. Wouldn't that be more simple? But a little difficulty still remains. When John Lewis says that it is man who makes history, everyone understands. Or rather, everyone thinks he understands. But when it is a question of going a bit further in the explanation, when John Lewis honestly asks himself the question, what is it that man does when he makes history? Then you realize that the nasty problem appears just when everything seems simple, that there is a nasty obscurity just in the place where everything seems clear. What was obscure? The little word make in the thesis that it is man who makes history. What can this little word make possibly mean when we are talking about history? Because when you say, I made a mistake, or I made a trip around the world, or when a carpenter says, I made a table, etc., everyone knows what the term make means. The sense of the word changes according to the expression, but in each case we can easily explain what it means. For example, when a carpenter makes a table, that means he constructs it. But to make history, what can that mean? And the man who makes history, do you know that individual, that species of individual, as Hegel used to say? So John Lewis sets to work. He does not try to avoid the problem. He confronts it, and he explains the thing. He tells us to make, in the case of history, that means to transcend negation of negation. That means to transform the raw material of existing history by going beyond it. So far, so good. But the carpenter who makes a table, he has a piece of raw material in front of him too, the wood, and he transforms the wood into a table. But John Lewis would never say that the carpenter transcends the wood in order to make a table out of it. And he is right. For if he said that, the first carpenter who came along, and all the other carpenters and all the other working people in the world would send him packing with his transcendence. John Lewis uses the term transcendence, negation of a negation only. Reply to John Lewis 43. For history. Why? We have to work out the answer, for John Lewis himself does not provide any explanation. In my opinion, John Lewis holds on to his transcendence for the following reason, because the raw material of history is already history. The carpenter's raw material is wood. But the carpenter who makes the table would never say that he was the one who made the wood, because he knows very well that it is nature which produces the wood. Before a tree can be cut up into solid planks, it first has to grow somewhere in the forest, whether in the same country or thousands of miles away on the other side of the equator. Now, for John Lewis, it is man who has made the history with which he makes history. In history, man produces everything. The result, the product of his labor, is history, but so is the raw material that he transforms. Aristotle said that man is a two-legged reasoning speaking political animal. Franklin, quoted by Marx in Capital, said that man is a tool-making animal. John Lewis says that man is not only a tool-making animal, but an animal which makes history in the strong sense, because he makes everything. He makes the raw material. He makes the instruments of production. John Lewis says nothing about these, and for good reason, because otherwise you have to talk about the class struggle. And his man who makes history would disappear in one flash, together with his whole system. And he makes the final product, history. Do you know of any being under the sun endowed with such a power? Yes, there does exist such a being in the tradition of human culture, God. Only God makes the raw material with which he makes the world, but there's a very important difference. John Lewis's God is not outside the world. The man God who creates history is not outside of history. He is inside. This is something infinitely more complicated, and it is just because John Lewis's little human God, man, is inside history and situation, as Jean-Paul Sartre used to say, that Lewis does not endow him with the power of absolute creation when one creates everything. It is relatively easy. There are no limitations. But with something even more stupefying, the power of transcendence, of being able to progress by indefinitely negating superseding. 44. The constraints of the history in which he lives, the power to transcend history by human liberty. John Lewis's man is a little God. Like every living being, he is up to his neck in reality, but endowed with the prodigious power of being able at any moment to step outside of that reality, of being able to change its character. A little Sartrean God, always in situation in history, endowed with the amazing power of transcending every situation, of resolving all the difficulties which history presents, and of going forward towards the golden future of the human socialist revolution. Man is an essentially revolutionary animal because he is a free animal. Please excuse all this if you are not a philosopher. We philosophers are well acquainted with this kind of argument, and we communist philosophers know that this old human philosophy has always had its political consequences. The first people who talked about transcendence in philosophy were the idealist religious philosophers of Plato's school, the Platonic and Neoplatonic philosophers. They had an urgent need of the category of transcendence in order to be able to construct a philosophical or religious theology, and this theology was then the official philosophy of the slave state. Later in the Middle Ages, the Augustinian and Thomas theologians took up the same category again and used it in systems whose function was to serve the interests of the church and feudal state. The church is a state apparatus, and the number one ideological state apparatus of the feudal state. Is there any need to say more? Much later, with the rise of the bourgeoisie, the notion of transcendence received in Hegelian philosophy a new function. The same category, but wrapped in the veil of the negation of the negation. This time it served the bourgeois state. It was quite simply the philosophical name for bourgeois liberty. It was then revolutionary in relation to the philosophical systems of feudal transcend. Reply to John Lewis 45 dense, but it was 100% bourgeois, and it stays that way. Since that time, Jean-Paul Sartre has taken up the same idea once more. In his theory of man and situation, the petty bourgeois version of bourgeois liberty. And this is to cite only one example. For Sartre is not alone. Transcendence in its authoritarian or eschatological form is still flourishing today among large numbers of theologians, some reactionary, some very progressive, from Germany and Holland to Spain and Latin America. The bourgeois no longer has the same need to believe, and anyway has for the 30 years since 1940 no longer been able to believe that his liberty is all embracing. But the petty bourgeois intellectual, he is quite a different kind of animal. The more his liberty is crushed and denied by the development of imperialist capitalism, the more he exalts the power of that liberty, transcendence, negation of negation. An isolated petty bourgeois can protest. He does not get very far. When the petty bourgeois masses revolt, however, they get much further. But their revolt is still limited by the objective conditions of the class struggle, whether it is helped or hindered by them. It is here that petty bourgeois liberty meets necessity. John Lewis now in 1972 takes up the old arguments in his turn in the theoretical journal of the British Communist Party. He can, if I may say so, rest assured, he is not crying in the wilderness. He is not the only person to take up this theme. He is in the company of many communists. Everyone knows that. But why should it be that since the 1960s many communists have been resurrecting this worn-out philosophy of petty bourgeois liberty while still claiming to be Marxists? We shall see. Fourth but first, I shall follow the procedure used by John Lewis. I shall compare his Marxist theses with the theses of Marxist-Leninist philosophy. And everyone will be able to compare and judge for himself. 46. I will go over the points in John Lewis's order. That way things will be clear. I am making an enormous concession to him by taking his order because his order is idealist. But we will do him the favor. To understand what follows, note that in the case of each thesis, 1, 2, 3, I begin by repeating Lewis's thesis and then state the Marxist-Leninist thesis. 1. Thesis number 1. John Lewis. It is man who makes history. Marxism-Leninism. It is the masses which make history. What is this man who makes history? A mystery. What are the masses which make history? In a class society, there are the exploited masses, that is, the exploited social classes, social strata, and social categories, grouped around the exploited class capable of uniting them in a movement against the dominant classes which hold state power. The exploited class capable of doing this is not always the most exploited class or the most wretched social stratum. In antiquity, for example, it was not the slaves except in a few periods, Spartacus, who made history in the strong political sense of the term, but the most exploited classes among the free men at Rome, the urban or rural plebs. In the same way, under capitalism, the lumpen proletariat, as Marx called it, groups together the most wretched of men, the Lazarus layers of the working class. But it is around the proletariat, the class which is exploited in capitalist production, that you will find groups of masses which make history, which are going to make history. That is, who are going to make the revolution which will break out in the weakest link of the world imperialist chain. Against John Lewis's thesis, it is man who makes history. Marxism-Leninism has always opposed the thesis. It is the masses which make history. The masses can be defined. In capitalism, the masses does not mean the mass aristocrats of the intelligentsia or the ideologists of fascism. It means the set of exploited classes, strata, and categories grouped around the class which is exploited in large-scale production. The only class which is capable of uniting them and directing their action against the bourgeois state, the proletariat. Compare this with Lewis's thesis. 2. Thesis number 2. John Lewis. Man makes history by transcending history. Marxism-Leninism. The class struggle is the motor of history. Here things become extremely interesting because Marxism-Leninism blows up John Lewis's whole philosophical system. How? John Lewis said, it is man who makes history. To which Marxism-Leninism replied, it is the masses. But if we said no more, if we went no further, we would give the impression that Marxism-Leninism gives a different reply to the same question. That question being, who makes history? This question therefore supposes that history is the result of the action of what is done by a subject who? For John Lewis, the subject is man. Does Marxism-Leninism propose a different subject, the masses? 48. Yes and no. When we started to sketch out a definition of the masses, when we talked about this idea of the masses, we saw that the whole thing was rather complicated. The masses are actually several social classes, social strata, and social categories grouped together in a way which is both complex and changing. The positions of the different classes and strata, and the fractions of classes within classes change in the course of the revolutionary process itself. And we are dealing with huge numbers. In France or Britain, for example, with tens of millions of people. In China with hundreds of millions. Let us do no more here than ask the simple question. Can we still talk about a subject identifiable by the unity of its personality? Compared with John Lewis's subject, man, as simple and neat as you can imagine, the masses considered as a subject pose very exacting problems of identity and identification. You cannot hold such a subject in your hand, you cannot point to it. A subject is a being about which we can say, that's it. How do we do that when the masses are supposed to be the subject? How can we say, that's it? It is precisely the thesis of the Communist Manifesto. The class struggle is the motor of history that displaces the question, that brings the problem into the open. That shows us how to pose it properly and therefore how to solve it. It is the masses which make history, but it is the class struggle which is the motor of history. To John Lewis's question, how does man make history? Marxism-Leninism replies by replacing his idealist philosophical categories with categories of quite different kind. The question is no longer posed in terms of man, that much we know. But in the proposition that the class struggle is the motor of history, the question of making history is also eliminated. It is no longer a question of who makes history. Marxism-Leninism tells us something quite different. That it is the class struggle, new concept, which is the motor, new concept of history. It is the class struggle which moves history, which advances it, and brings about revolutions. This thesis is of very great importance because it puts the class struggle in the front rank. Reply to John Lewis 49. In the preceding thesis, it is the masses which make history. The accent was put on the exploited classes grouped around the class capable of uniting them, and in their power to carry through a revolutionary transformation of history. It was therefore the masses which were put in the front rank. In the thesis taken from the Communist Manifesto, what is put in the front rank is no longer the exploited classes, etc. But the class struggle. This thesis must be recognized as decisive for Marxism-Leninism. It draws a radical demarcation line between revolutionaries and reformists. Here I have simplified things very much, but I do not think that I am betraying the essential point. For reformists, even if they call themselves Marxists, it is not the class struggle which is in the front rank, it is simply the classes. Let us take a simple example and suppose that we are dealing with just two classes. For reformists, these classes exist before the class struggle, a bit like two football teams exist separately before the match. Each class exists in its own camp, lives according to its particular conditions of existence. One class may be exploiting another, but for reformism that is not the same thing as class struggle. One day the two classes come up against one another and come into conflict. It is only then that the class struggle begins. They begin a hand-to-hand battle, the battle becomes acute, and finally the exploited class defeats its enemy, that is revolution, or loses, that is counter-revolution. However you turn the thing around, you will always find the same idea here. The classes exist before the class struggle, independently of the class struggle. The class struggle only exists afterwards. 50. Revolutionaries, on the other hand, consider that it is impossible to separate the classes from class struggle. The class struggle and the existence of classes are one and the same thing in order for there to be classes in a society. The society has to be divided into classes. This division does not come later in the story. It is the exploitation of one class by another. It is therefore the class struggle which constitutes the division into classes. For exploitation is already class struggle. You must therefore begin with the class struggle if you want to understand class division, the existence and nature of classes. The class struggle must be put in the front rank, but that means that our thesis 1 is the masses which make history must be subordinated to thesis 2. The class struggle is the motor of history. That means that the revolutionary power of the masses comes precisely from the class struggle, and that means that it is not enough if you want to understand what's happening in the world just to look at the exploited classes. You also have to look at the exploiting classes. Better, you have to go beyond the football match idea, the idea of two antagonistic groups of classes, to examine the basis of the existence not only of classes but also of the antagonism between classes. That is the class struggle. Absolute primacy of the class struggle. Marx Lenin. Never forget the class struggle. Now, but beware of idealism. The class struggle does not go on the air or on something like a football pitch. It is rooted in the mode of production and exploitation in a given class society. You therefore have to consider the material basis of the class struggle, that is, the material existence of the class struggle. This, in the last instance, is the unity of the relations of production and the productive forces under the relations of production of a given mode of production in a concrete historical social formation. This, Lenin's thesis, on the other hand, puts the class struggle in the front rank. Philosophically, that means it affirms the primacy of contradiction over the terms of the contradiction. The class struggle is not a product of the existence of classes which exist previous in law and in fact to the struggle. Materiality, in the last instance, is at the same time the basis, Marx, of the class struggle and its material existence, because exploitation takes place in production, and it is exploitation which is at the root of the antagonism between the classes and of the class struggle. It is this profound truth which Marxism-Leninism expresses in the well-known thesis of class struggle in the infrastructure, in the economy, in class exploitation, and in the thesis that all the forms of the class struggle are rooted in economic class struggle. It is on this condition that the revolutionary thesis of the primacy of the class struggle is a materialist one. When that is clear, the question of the subject of history disappears. History is an immense natural human system in movement, and the motor of history is class struggle. History is a process, and a process without a subject. The question about how man makes history disappears altogether. Marxist theory rejects it once and for all. It sends it back to its birthplace, bourgeois ideology, and with it disappears the necessity of the concept of transcendence and of its subject man. That does not mean that Marxism-Leninism loses sight for one moment of real men. Quite the contrary. It is precisely in order to see them as they are and to free them from class exploitation that Marxism-Leninism brings about this revolution. Getting rid of the bourgeois ideology of man as the subject of history, getting rid of the fetishism of man. Some people will be annoyed that I dare to speak about the fetishism of man. I mean, those people who interpret Marx's chapter in Capital on the fetishism of commodities in a particular way, drawing two necessarily complementary idealist conclusions: the condemnation of reification 14 and the exaltation of the person. But the pair of notions person thing is at the root of every bourgeois ideology. 52. Social relations are however not, except for the law and for bourgeois legal ideology, relations between persons. Yet it is the same mechanism of social illusion which is at work. When you start to think that a social relation is the natural quality, the natural attribute of a substance or a subject. Value is one example. This social relation appears in bourgeois ideology as the natural quality, the natural attribute of the commodity or of money. The class struggle is another example. This social relation appears in bourgeois ideology as the natural quality, the natural attribute of man, liberty, transcendence. In both cases, the social relation is conjured away. The commodity or gold have natural value. Man is by nature free. By nature he makes history. If John Lewis's man disappears, that does not mean that real men disappear. It simply means that for Marxism-Leninism, there is something quite different from copies. Multiply at will of the original bourgeois image of man, a free subject by nature. Have the warnings of Marx been heeded? My analytical method does not start from man, but from the economically given social period. Notes on Adolf Wagner's textbook. Society is not composed of individuals for undress. One thing is certain, one cannot begin with man, because that would be to begin with the bourgeois idea of man, and because the idea of beginning with man, in other words, the idea of an absolute point of departure equal to an essence, belongs to bourgeois philosophy. This idea of man as a starting point, an absolute point of departure, is the basis of all bourgeois ideology. It is the soul of the great classical political economy itself. Man is a myth of bourgeois ideology. Marxism-Leninism cannot start from man. It starts from the economically given social period, and at the end of its analysis, when it arrives, it may find real men. These men are thus the point of arrival of an analysis which starts from the social relations of the existing mode. Reply to John Lewis 53, of production, from class relations, and from the class struggle. These men are quite different from the man of bourgeois ideology. Society is not composed of individuals, says Marx. He is right. Society is not a combination, an addition of individuals. What constitutes society is a system of social relations in which individuals live, work, and struggle. He is right. Society is not made up of individuals in general, in the abstract, just so many copies of man. Because each society has its own individuals, historically and socially determined. The slave individual is not the serf individual nor the proletarian individual, and the same goes for the individual of each corresponding ruling class. In the same way, we must say that even a class is not composed of individuals in general. Each class has its own individuals, fashioned in their individuality by the conditions of life, of work, of exploitation and of struggle, by the relations of the class struggle. In their mass, real men are what class conditions make of them. These conditions do not depend on bourgeois human nature, liberty. On the contrary, the liberties of men, including the forms and limits of these liberties, and including their will to struggle, depend on these conditions. If the question of man as subject of history disappears, that does not mean that the question of political action disappears. Quite the contrary, this political action is actually given its strength by the critique of the bourgeois fetishism of man. It is forced to follow the conditions of the class struggle. For class struggle is not an individual struggle, but an organized mass struggle for the conquest and revolutionary transformation of state power and social relations. Nor does it mean that the question of the revolutionary party disappears, because without it, the conquest of state power by the exploited masses, led by the proletariat, is impossible. But it does mean that the role of the individual in history, the existence, the nature, the practice, and the objectives of the revolutionary party are not determined by the omnipotence of transcendence, that is, the liberty of man, but by quite different conditions, by the state of the class struggle, by the state of the labor movement, by the ideology of the labor movement, petty bourgeois or pro. 54. Libertarian, and by its relation to Marxist theory, by its mass line, by its mass work. 3. Thesis number 3. John Lewis, man only knows what he himself does. Marxism-Leninism, one can only know what exists. See qui est. I am deliberately putting these propositions into such direct opposition so that everyone can see the difference. For John Lewis, man only knows what he does. For dialectical materialism, the philosophy of Marxism-Leninism, one can only know what exists. This is the fundamental thesis of materialism, the primacy of being over thought. This thesis is at one and the same time a thesis about existence, about materiality and about objectivity. It says that one can only know what exists, that the principle of all existence is materiality, and that all existence is objective, that is, prior to the subjectivity which knows it and independent of that subjectivity. One can only know what exists. This thesis, difficult to understand and easy to misrepresent, is the basis of all Marxist theses about knowledge. Marx and Lenin never denied the activity of thought, the work of scientific experiment, from the natural sciences to the science of history, whose laboratory is the class struggle. Indeed, they insisted on this activity. They even now and again said and repeated that certain idealist philosophers, Hegel for example, had understood this activity better, though in mystified forms, than certain non-dialectical materialist philosophers. This is where we get to the dialectical theses of Marxist philosophy, and this is where it differs fundamentally from John Lewis. Marxism-Leninism has always subordinated the dialectical theses to the materialist theses. Take the famous thesis of the primacy of practice over theory. It has no sense unless it is subordinated to the thesis of the primacy of being over thought. Otherwise, it falls into subjectivism, pragmatism, and historicism. It is certainly thanks to practice, of which scientific practice, reply to John Lewis 55, is the most developed form that one can know exists. Primacy of practice over theory. But in practice, one only ever knows what exists. Primacy of being over thought. One can only know what exists. As far as nature is concerned, there ought not to be much problem. Who could claim that man had made the natural world which he knows? Only idealists, or rather only that crazy species of idealists who attribute God's omnipotence to man. Even idealists are not normally so stupid. But what about history? We know that the thesis, it is man who makes history, has literally no sense. Yet a trace of the illusion still remains in the idea that history is easier to understand than nature because it is completely human. That is Jean-Baptiste Vico's idea. Well, Marxism-Leninism is categorical on this point. History is as difficult to understand as nature. Or rather, it is even more difficult to understand. Why? Because the masses do not have the same direct practical relation with history as they have with nature in productive work, because they are always separated from history by the illusion that they understand it. Each ruling exploiting class offers them its own explanation of history in the form of its ideology which is dominant, which serves its class interests, cements its unity, and maintains the masses under its exploitation. Look at the Middle Ages. The church and its ideologists offer all its flock, that is to say primarily the exploited masses, but also the feudal class in itself, a very simple and clear explanation of history. History is made by God and obeys the laws, that is the ends of providence, an explanation for the masses. Look at the 18th century in France. The situation is different. The bourgeoisie is not yet in power, it is critical and revolutionary, and offers everyone without distinction of class. Not only to the bourgeoisie and its allies, but also to the masses it exploits. A clear explanation of history. History is moved by reason and obeys the laws or follows the ends of truth, reason, and liberty. An explanation for the masses. If history is difficult to explain scientifically, it is because 56. Between real history and men there is always a screen. A separation, a class ideology of history in which the human masses spontaneously believe, because this ideology is pumped into them by the ruling or ascending class and serves it in its exploitation. In the 18th century, the bourgeoisie is already an exploiting class. To succeed in piercing this ideological and idealist smokescreen of the ruling classes, the special circumstances of the first half of the 19th century were required. The experience of the class struggles following the French Revolution and the first proletarian class struggles, plus English political economy plus French socialism. The result of the conjuncture of all these circumstances was Marx's discovery. He was the first to open up the continent of history to scientific knowledge. But in history, as in nature, one can only know what exists. The fact that in order to get to know what really does exist, an enormous amount of scientific work and gigantic practical struggles were necessary does not disprove the point. One can only know what exists, even if this is changing under the effect of the material dialectic of the class struggle, even if what exists is only known on condition that it is transformed. But we must go further. You will notice I said that the Marxist-Leninist thesis is not man can only know what exists, but one can only know what exists. Here too, the term man has disappeared. We are forced to say in this connection that scientific history, like all history, is a process without a subject, and that scientific knowledge, even when it is the work of a particular individual scientist, etc., is actually the historical result of a process which has no real subject or goal. That is how it is with Marxist science. It was Marx who discovered it, but as a result of a dialectical process combining German philosophy, English political economy, and French socialism. The whole thing based on the struggles between bourgeoisie and the working class. All communists know that. Reply to John Lewis 57. Scientists in general do not know it, but if they are prepared to, and if they have enough knowledge of the history of the sciences, communists can help scientists, including natural scientists and mathematicians, to understand its truth. Because all scientific knowledge in every field really is the result of a process without any subject or goal. A startling thesis, one which is doubtless difficult to understand. but it can give us insights of certain importance not only into scientific work, but also into the political struggle. Fifth, for all these philosophical theses, these philosophical positions, thesis equal to position, produce effects in the social practices. Among them, effects in political practice and scientific practice. But we have to generalize. It is not only the philosophical theses which we have already discussed that produce these effects, but all philosophical theses. Because if there's one idea which is popular today, even amongst the Marxists, it is the idea of philosophy as pure contemplation, pure disinterested speculation. Now, this dominant idea is actually the very self-interested representation of idealism created by idealism itself. It is a mystification of idealism necessary to idealism to represent philosophy as purely speculative, as a pure revelation of being, origin, and meaning. Even speculative ideologies, even philosophies which content themselves with interpreting the world, are in fact active and practical. Their hidden goal is to act on the world, on all social practices, under domains and under hierarchy, even if only in order to place them under a spell, to sanctify or modify them, in order to preserve or reform the existing state of things against social, political, and ideological revolutions or the ideological repercussions of the great scientific discoveries. Speculative philosophies have a political interest in making believe that they are disinterested or that they are only moral and not really practical and political. This in order to gain their practical ends in the shadow of the ruling power which they support. 58. With their arguments. Whether this strategy is conscious and deliberate or unconscious means little. We know that it is not consciousness which is the motor of history, even in philosophy. You will remember the definition of philosophy which I proposed above. We can apply this definition to every philosophy. Philosophy is, in the last instance, class struggle in the field of theory. If philosophy is class struggle in theory, it depends in the last instance on politics then as philosophy. It has political effects in political practice in the way in which the concrete analysis of the concrete situation is made, in which the mass line is defined, and in which mass work is carried out. But if it is class struggle in the field of theory, then it has theoretical effects in the sciences and also within the field of the ideologies. If it is class struggle in the field of theory, it has effects on the union of theory and practice, on the way in which that union is conceived and realized. It therefore has effects, of course, not only in political practice and scientific practice, but also in every social practice, from the struggle for production, mouth, art, etc. But I cannot deal with everything here. I will just say that philosophy, as class struggle in the field of theory, has two main effects in politics and in the sciences in political practice and in scientific practice. Every communist knows that, or ought to know it, because Marxism-Leninism has never ceased to repeat it and argue for it. So let us now set out our schematic proof by comparing John Lewis's theses with the theses of Marxism-Leninism. That will allow us to show a little more clearly how philosophy functions. John Lewis's thesis, it is man who makes history. Thesis of Marxism-Leninism, it is the masses which make history. The class struggle is the motor of history. Let's look at the effects of these theses. 1. Effects in the field of science. When someone in 1972 defends the idealist thesis that it is man who makes history, what effect does that have as far as the science of history is concerned? More precisely, can one make use of it to produce scientific discoveries? It is a very regrettable fact, no doubt, but it is in fact no use at all from this point of view. John Lewis himself does not get anything out of it, which might help us to see how the class struggle works. You might say that he didn't have his face in a single article. That is perhaps true. So let us turn to his unavowed master Jean-Paul Sartre, to the philosopher of human liberty, a man projecting himself into the future, John Lewis's transcendence, of man and situation, who transcends his place in the world by the liberty of the project. This philosopher, who deserves the praise given by Marx to Rousseau, that he never compromised with the powers that be, has written two enormous books, Being and Nothingness and the Critique of Dialectical Reason, the latter devoted to proposing a philosophy for Marxism. More than 2,000 pages. Now, what did Sartre get out of the thesis? It is man who makes history. 19. What did it contribute to the science of history? Did the ingenious developments of the Sartrean positions finally permit the production of a few pieces of scientific? 60. Knowledge about the economy, the class struggle, the state, the proletariat, ideologies, etc. Knowledge, which might help us to understand history, to act in history. We have unfortunately reason to doubt it. But then someone is going to say, here is an example which proves just the opposite of your thesis about the effects of philosophy, because as you recognize, this humanist philosophy has no effect at all on scientific knowledge. Sorry, I claim that theses like those defended by John Lewis and Jean-Paul Sartre really do have such an effect, even though it is a negative one, because they prevent the development of existing scientific knowledge. Lenin said the same of the idealist philosophies of his own time. These theses are an obstacle to the development of knowledge. Instead of helping it to progress, they hold it back. More precisely, they drag knowledge back to the state it was in before the scientific discoveries made by Marx and Lenin. They take us back to a pre-scientific philosophy of history. It is not the first time that this has happened in the history of humanity. For example, half a century after Galileo, that is. Half a century after physics had been founded as a science, there were still philosophers who defended Aristotelian physics. They attacked Galileo's discoveries and wanted to drag knowledge of the natural world back to its pre-scientific Aristotelian state. There are no longer any Aristotelian physicists, but the same process can be observed in other fields. For example, there are anti-Freudian psychologists, and there are anti-Marxist philosophers of history who carry on as if Marx had never existed or had never founded science. They may be personally honest, they may even, like Sartre, want to help Marxism in psychoanalysis, but it is not their intentions that count. What count are the real effects of their philosophies in these sciences. The fact is that although he comes after Marx and Freud, Sartre is, paradoxically, in many respects, a pre-Marxist and pre-Freudian ideologian from the philosophical point of view. Instead of helping to build on the scientific discoveries of Marx and Freud, he makes a spectacular appearance in the ranks of those who worked as more to hinder Marx's research than to help it. Reply to John Lewis 61. That is how, in the end, philosophy works in the sciences. Either it helps them to produce new scientific knowledge, or it tries to wipe out these advances and drag humanity back to a time when the sciences did not exist. Philosophy therefore works in the sciences in a progressive or retrogressive way. Strictly speaking, we should say that it tends to act in one way or another, for every philosophy is always contradictory. You can see what is at stake. It is not enough to say that what John Lewis or Sartre says does not help us to produce any scientific knowledge of history. It is not even enough to argue that what they say represents an epistemological obstacle, to use Bachelor's term. We are forced to say that their thesis produces or can produce effects which are extremely harmful to scientific knowledge, retrogressive effects, because instead of helping us in 1972 to understand the great scientific treasure that we possess in the knowledge given us by Marx and to develop it, it goes back to zero. It takes us back to the good old days of Descartes, or Kant and Fichte, of Hegel and Feuerbach, to the time before Marx's discovery, before his epistemological break. This idealist thesis mixes everything up, and thus it paralyzes revolutionary philosophers, theoreticians, and militants. It disarms them because in effect it deprives them of an irreplaceable weapon, the objective knowledge of the conditions, mechanisms, and forms of the class struggle. If you now look at the Marxist-Leninist theses, it is the masses which make history, the class struggle is the motor of history, the contrast is striking. These theses do not paralyze research, they are on the side of scientific understanding of history. They do not wipe out the science of history founded by Marx, for these two philosophical. 62. Theses are at the same time proven propositions of the science of history, of historical materialism. These theses then take account of the existence of the science of history, but at the same time they help the working out of new concepts, of new scientific discoveries. For example, they lead us to define the masses which make history, in class terms. For example, they lead us to define the form of union between the classes which make up the masses. As far as the class struggle under capitalism is concerned, they put the question of taking state power, the long transition to communism, and the proletariat in the forefront. For example, they cause us to conceive the unity of the class struggle and class division and all their consequences in the material forms of exploitation and of the division and organization of labor, and therefore to study and come to understand these forms. For example, they lead us to define the proletariat as a class whose conditions of exploitation render it capable of directing the struggle of all the oppressed and exploited classes, and to understand the proletarian class struggle as a form of class struggle without precedent in history, inaugurating a new practice of politics, which is the secret of many still enigmatic or evaded questions. The theoretical consequences of these questions are obvious. They force us above all to break with the bourgeois, that is the economist conception, of political economy, criticized as such by Marx and Capital, with the bourgeois conception of the state, of politics, of ideology, of culture, etc. They prepare the ground for new research and new discoveries, some of which might cause a few surprises. On the one side, then, we have idealist philosophical theses which have theoretically retrograde effects on the science of history. On the other side, we have materialist philosophical theses which have theoretically progressive effects in the existing fields of the Marxist science of history and which can have revolutionary effects in those fields, which have not yet been really grappled with by the science of history, for example, in history of the sciences of art, of philosophy, etc. This is what is at stake as far as the class struggle in the theoretical field is concerned. 2. Political effects. I think that as far as political effects are concerned, things are rather clear. How can one carry on the class struggle on the basis of a philosophical thesis? It is man who makes history. It might be said that this thesis is useful in fighting against a certain conception of history, history in submission to the decisions of the deity or to the ends of providence. But speaking seriously, that is no longer the problem. It might be said that this thesis serves everyone without distinction, whether he be a capitalist, a petty bourgeois, or a worker, because these are all men. But that is not true. It serves those whose interest is to talk about man and not about the masses, about man and not about classes in the class struggle. It serves the bourgeoisie above all, and it also serves the petty bourgeoisie. In his critique of the Gotha program, Marx wrote, the bourgeois have very good grounds for falsely ascribing supernatural creative power to human labor. Why? Because by making men think that labor is the source of all wealth and all culture, the bourgeoisie can keep quiet about the power of nature, about the decisive importance of the natural, material conditions of human labor. And why does the bourgeoisie want to keep quiet about the natural material conditions of labor? Because it controls them. The bourgeoisie knows what it is doing. If the workers are told that it is men who make history, you do not have to be a great thinker to see that sooner or later that helps to disorient or disarm them. It tends, 64, to make them think that they are all powerful as men, whereas in fact they are disarmed as workers in the face of the power which is really in command. That of the bourgeoisie, which controls the material conditions, the means of production, and the political conditions, the state determining history. The humanist line turns the workers away from the class struggle, prevents them from making use of the only power they possess, that of their organization as a class and their class organizations, the trade unions, the party, by which they wage their class struggle. On the one hand, therefore, we have a philosophical thesis which directly or indirectly serves the political interests of the bourgeoisie, even inside the labor movement that is called reformism, and even within Marxist theory that is called revisionism, with all the consequent political effects. On the other hand, we have theses which directly help the working class understand its role, its conditions of existence, of exploitation, and of struggle, which help to create organizations which will lead the struggle of all exploited people to seize state power from the bourgeoisie. Need I say more? None of this is affected by the fact that these bourgeois or petty bourgeois theses are defended in 1972 by militants of the Communist Party. Read chapter 3 of the Communist Manifesto. You will see that in 1847 Marx distinguished three kinds of socialism: reactionary, feudal, petty bourgeois, humanist 25, socialism, conservative or bourgeois socialism, and critical utopian socialism and communism. You have the choice. Read the great polemical writings of Engels and Lenin about the influence of bourgeois ideology in the workers' parties, reformism, revisionism. You have the choice. What we want to know now is how, after so many solemn warnings and so many testing experiences, it is possible for a communist, John Lewis, to present his theses as Marxist. We shall see. 6. So as not to hold things up, I will be brief in dealing with John Lewis's second reproach, that Althusser does not understand anything of the history of the formation of Marxist thought. Here I must make my self-criticism and give way to John Lewis on one precise point. In my first essays, I suggested that after the epistemological break of 1845, after the discovery by which Marx founded the science of history, the philosophical categories of alienation and the negation of the nation, among others, disappear. John Lewis replies that this is not true, and he is right. You certainly do find these concepts, directly or indirectly, in the German ideology and the Grundrisse, two texts which Marx never published, and also, though more rarely, alienation, or much more rarely, negation of the negation, only one explicit appearance in capital. On the other hand, John Lewis would have a hard job finding these concepts in the Communist Manifesto, in the poverty of philosophy, in wage labor and capital, in his contribution to the critique of political economy, in the critique of the Gotha program, or in the notes on Wagner's textbook. And this is despite only some of Marx's texts, as far as the political texts are concerned. And this, of course, is equally true of the text of Lenin, Gramsci, or Mao. Well, he can always try. But in any case, formally speaking, John Lewis is right. And so, even if his argument in fact depends on leaving aside all the texts which should bother him, I must reply. Here, in a few words, is my reply. 66 shows him to be right on this point. In 1845, Marx began to lay down the foundations of science. 66 shows him to be right on this point. In 1845, Marx began to lay down the foundations of science which did not exist before he came along, the science of history. And in order to do that, he set out a number of new concepts which cannot be found anywhere in his humanist works of youth. Mode of production, productive forces, relations of production, infrastructure, superstructure, ideologies, etc. No one can deny that. If John Lewis still doubts the reality of this break, or rather, since the break is only the effect of this eruption of a new science and still ideological repression to the universe, he should compare two judgments made by Marx on Feuerbach and Proudhon. Feuerbach is described in the 1844 manuscript as a philosopher who has made extraordinary discoveries, who has discovered both the basis and the principle of the critique of political economy. But a year later, in the thesis on Feuerbach and in the German ideology, he is object of an all-out attack. After that, he simply disappears. Proudhon is described in the Holy Family as someone who does not simply write in the interest of the proletariat, but is himself a proletarian, a worker. His work is the scientific manifesto of the French proletariat, now suspended by 1847 in the poverty of philosophy. He is hiding from which he will never recover. After that, he simply disappears. If, as John Lewis says, nothing really happened in 1845, and everything that I've said about the epistemological break is a complete myth, then I'll be hung for it. Reply to John Lewis 67, which concerns scientific knowledge of a particular object, the conditions, the mechanisms, and the forms of the class struggle. In simple terms, the science of history. We can say then that this science does not emerge when made from Marx's head. It merely has its beginning in 1845 and has not yet got rid of all its past, of all the ideological and philosophical prehistory out of which it has emerged. There is nothing astonishing in the fact that for some time it continues to contain ideological notions or philosophical categories which it will later get rid of. We can also say, look at Marx's texts, look at the birth and development of the scientific concepts, and since John Lewis insists on talking about them, you will at the same time see the gradual disappearance of these two philosophical categories inherited from the past and still subsisting as remnants known as alienation and the negation of the negation. Now, in fact, the more we advance in time, the more these categories disappear. Capital speaks only once of the negation in explicit terms. It is true that Marx several times uses the term alienation, but all that disappears in Marx's later texts and in Lenin completely. We could therefore simply say what is important is the tendency, and Marx's scientific work does tend to get rid of these philosophical categories. I was not attentive enough to the fact which John Lewis points out, that is the fact of the continuing presence of the philosophical categories after the epistemological break. And that was because I identified the epistemological equal scientific break with Marx's philosophical revolution. More precisely, I did not separate Marx's philosophical revolution from the epistemological break, and I therefore talked about philosophy as if it were science. And quite logically wrote that in 1845 Marx made a double break, scientific and philosophical. 68. That was a mistake. It is an example of the theoreticist equal to rational speculative deviation, which I denounced in the brief self-criticism contained in the preface to the Italian edition of Reading Capital, reproduced in the English edition. Very schematically, this mistake consists in thinking that philosophy is a science, and that, like every science, it has an object, a beginning. The epistemological break occurs at the moment when it looms up in the pre-scientific ideological cultural universe, and a history comparable to the history of science. This theoreticist error found its clearest and purest expression in my formula. Philosophy is theory of theoretical practice. Since that time, I have begun to put things right. In a philosophy course for scientists dating from 1967, and then in Lenin in philosophy, I put forward other propositions. 1. Philosophy is not a science. 2. Philosophy has no object, in the sense in which science has an object. 3. Philosophy has no history, in the sense in which science has a history. 4. Philosophy is politics in the field of theory. What are the consequences? One can, of course, put forward serious arguments to the effect that there is a sense in which philosophy, as Hegel said, and as I repeated in Lenin in philosophy always. Reply to John Lewis 69. Life behind science or the sciences, but from another point of view, which is important here, one has to say the opposite, and argue that in the history of Marx's thought the scientific breakthrough is based on the philosophical revolution, which gives the breakthrough its form, that of a revolutionary science. In the case of other sciences, we often lack evidence and proof of what happened, but in the case of Marx, we are able to say that while both the philosophical revolution and the epistemological break take place at the same time, the scientific break is based on the philosophical revolution. In practical terms, that means the following. The young Marx, born of a good bourgeois family in the Rhineland, entered public life as editor of a liberal newspaper of the same land. That was in 1841. A young and brilliant intellectual, he was within 3 or 4 years to undergo an astonishing evolution in politics. He was passed from radical bourgeois liberalism to petty bourgeois communism, then to proletarian communism. These are incontestable facts, but parallel to this political evolution, you can observe evolution in philosophy. In philosophy over the same period, the young Marx was passed from a position of subjective Neo-Hegelianism, of a contradicting type, to theoretical humanism, Feuerbach, before rejecting this pass over to a philosophy which would no longer merely interpret the world, a completely new, materialist, revolutionary philosophy. If you now compare Marx's political evolution with his philosophical evolution, you will see. That means, in practice, that it is because the young Marx has settled accounts with his previous philosophical consciousness, because he had finally abandoned his bourgeois liberal and petty bourgeois revolutionary positions to adopt, even if only in principle. At a moment when he was letting go the ropes, new revolutionary proletarian class positions in theory, it was because of all this that. 70. He was able to lay down the foundations of the scientific theory of history as history of the class struggle. In principle, because the process of recognizing and occupying these new positions in theory needed time. Time and the ceaseless struggle to contain the pressure of bourgeois philosophy. 4. On the basis of these points, it should be possible to account for intermittent survival categories like those of alienation and of the negation of the negation. Note that I talk about intermittent survival. For alongside their tendency to disappear in Marx's work, considered as a whole, there is a strange phenomenon which must be accounted for, their total disappearance in certain works, then their subsequent reappearance. For example, the two categories in question are absent from the Communist Manifesto as well as from the poverty of philosophy. They seem to be hidden in his contribution to the critique of political economy. But there are many references to alienation in the Grundrisse, preparatory notes made by Marx in the years 1857 to 58, and which he did not publish. We know because of the letters sent to Engels that Marx had, by chance, reread Hegel's logic in 1858 and had been fascinated by it. In capital alienation comes up again, but much more rarely, and the negation of the negation appears just once, and so on. Reply to John Lewis 71. However that might be, and without anticipating other studies which must be made, the contradictory dialectic of Marx's development and the elaboration of his work is to be understood. One fact is clear. The Marxist science of history did not progress in a simple straight line according to the classic rationalist scheme without problems or internal conflicts and under its own power. From the moment of the point of no return, the epistemological break, there certainly is a point of no return, but in order not to be forced to retreat, it is necessary to advance, and to advance, how many difficulties and struggles there are. For it is true that Marx had passed over to proletarian class positions in theory in order to found the science of history, he did not make that leap all at once and for all, forever. It was necessary to work out these positions, to take them up over and against the enemy. The philosophical battle continued within Marx himself, in his work, around the principles and concepts of the new revolutionary science, which was one of the stakes of the battle. Marx's science only gained its ground little by little in theoretical struggle, class struggle in theory, in close and constant relation to the class struggle in the wider sense. This struggle lasted all of Marx's life. It continued after his death in the labor movement and is still going on today. A struggle without an end. It is therefore possible to understand, at least in principle, the partial disappearance and reappearance of certain categories in Marx's work as indicative of survivals of old ideas or attempts to work out new ones, of advances and retreats in the long dual struggle to take up class positions in theoretical work and to found the science of history. When I said that it was the epistemological break, which was primary, and when I said that it was at the same time a philosophical break, I therefore made two mistakes. In the case of Marx, it is the philosophical revolution which is primary, and this revolution is not a break. The theoretical terminology itself is important here, if one can legitimately. A number of texts from the Grundrisse and from Capital go, in my opinion, in this sense, but I know that others go in a different and much more ambiguous sense. 72. Keep the term break to denote the beginning of the science of history, the clear effect of its eruption in the cultural universe, the point of no return. One cannot employ the same term in talking about philosophy. In the history of philosophy, as in very long periods of the class struggle, one cannot really talk about a point of no return. So I shall use the term philosophical revolution in the strong sense in Marx's case. This expression is more correct, for to evoke once again the experiences in terms of the class struggle. We all know that the revolution is always open to attacks, to retreats and reverses, and even to the risk of counter-revolution. Nothing in philosophy is radically new, for the old pieces taken up again in new forms survive and return in new philosophy. Nor is anything ever settled definitively. There is always the struggle of antagonistic tendencies, there are always comebacks, and the oldest philosophies are always ready to mount an offensive disguise in modern, even the most revolutionary trappings. Why? Because philosophy is, in the last instance, class struggle in the field of theory, because the revolutionary classes are always opposed by the old conservative and reactionary ruling classes, who will never give up their ambition for revenge, even when they no longer hold state power. According to the state of affairs, these classes will either defend their power, or, if they have lost power, they will try to regain it, using among other things the arguments of such and such a philosophy, that which serves them best politically and ideologically, even if it comes out of the depths of history. It only has to be done up a bit and given a modern coat of paint. Philosophical theses in the end have no age. That is the sense in which I took up Marx's comment in the German ideology that philosophy has no history. In practice, when the state of the class struggle enables it to put on enough pressure, bourgeois ideology can penetrate Marxism itself. The class struggle in the field of theory is not just a phrase, it is a reality, a terrible reality. Without understanding that, it is impossible to understand either the dramatic history of the formation of Marxist thought, reply to John Lewis 73, or the grave difficulties which even today in 1972 weigh on the orthodoxy defended by a certain number of communists. The dramatic history of Marx and of his thought can be reduced, if we follow John Lewis, to a peaceful and problem-free university career. A certain Marx appears on the literary and philosophical scene. Quite naturally, he begins to talk about politics in the Communist Manifesto, then about economics and capital. He founds and directs the First International, opposes the insurrection in Paris, then in the space of 2 months, takes a firm stand on the side of the Paris Commune. He wages a battle to the death against the anarchists and followers of Proudhon, etc. He said all this without the hint of the problem, of the drama, aside from all the assaults of the struggle, with no regard to the difficulties. The questions, all the torments of the search for truth in that struggle itself. Like a good bourgeois intellectual, as well installed in his thought as he is in the comfort of his existence, Marx in this view always thought the same thing. Without any revolution or break in his thinking, he always taught that man makes history by the negation of the negation, etc. I think I'm justified in saying here that only someone who has no experience of the class struggle, including class struggle in the field of theory, or even simply the way in which scientific research is done, could argue such nonsense and thus insult the life and suffering not only of Marx himself, but all communists, and also of all the scientists who succeed in finding something out. Now, not only did Marx find something out, and at what risk, and at what importance, but he was also a leader of the labor movement for 35 years. He always did his thinking and his investigating in and through the struggle. The whole history of the labor movement is marked by endless crises, dramas, and struggles. There's no need for me to go over them here, but as far as philosophy is concerned, we ought at least mention the great struggles of Engels and Lenin against the intervention of the idealism of Goering and Bernstein. Both of them declared Kantians and humanists, whose theoretical revisionism covered their political reformism and political revisionism. John Lewis would do well to reread the first pages of What is to be Done. In this text, a petty bourgeois intellectual named Lenin is defending Marxist orthodoxy, which is in grave difficulties. With extreme dogmatism, I use Lewis's terms. Yes, Lenin declared himself proud to be attacked as a dogmatist by the international coalition of critical revisionists, with the English Fabians and French ministerialists at their head. I am quoting Lenin. Yes, Lenin declared himself proud to defend this old problem in orthodoxy, the orthodoxy of Marxist teaching. Yes, he thought it was in grave difficulties. The cause, reformism and revisionism. Some communists today are thinking and doing the same. There certainly are not too many of them. That is how things are. Why? We shall see. Seventh, we have to answer two questions. One, why are there communists like John Lewis, and there are quite a lot of them, who in 1972 can openly argue in communist journals for a philosophy which they call Marxist, but which is in fact simply a variant of bourgeois idealism? Two, why are the communist philosophers who defend Marxist philosophy so few in number? To answer these two questions, which are really one and the same, we must all apologies to John Lewis briefly enter the field of political history. I have made the basic points in for Marx, but John Lewis does not seem to have read the political pages of Marx. John Lewis is a pure spirit, and yet I was rather clear in explaining that the articles collected in for Marx had to be considered as a philosophical intervention in a political and ideological conjuncture dominated by the 20th Congress and split in the international communist movement. The fact that, replied to John Lewis 75, I was able to make such an intervention as a consequence of the 20th Congress. Before the 20th Congress, it was actually not possible for a communist philosopher, certainly in France, to publish texts which would be, at least to some extent, relevant to politics, which would be something other than a pragmatist commentary on consecrated formulae. That is the good side of the 20th Congress, for which we must be grateful. From that time on, it was possible to publish such texts. The French party, to take only one example, explicitly recognized the right of party members to carry out and publish their philosophical research. But the criticism of Stalin's errors was formulated at the 20th Congress in terms such that they inevitably followed what we must call an unleashing of bourgeois, ideological, and philosophical themes within the communist parties themselves. This was the case above all among communist intellectuals, but it also touched certain leaders and even certain leaderships. Why? Because the criticism of Stalin's errors, some of which, and rather a lot, turned out to be crimes, was made in a non-Marxist way. The 20th Congress criticized and denounced the cult of personality, the cult in general, personality in general, and summed up Stalin's errors in the concept of violation of socialist legality. The 20th Congress therefore limited itself to denouncing certain facts about what went on in the legal superstructure without relating them, as every Marxist analysis must do. Firstly, to the rest of the Soviet superstructure, above all, the state and party, and secondly, to the infrastructure, namely the relations of production, class relations, and the forms of the class struggle in the USSR. 76. Instead of relating the violations of socialist legality to 1. The state plus the party, and 2. The class struggle, the 20th Congress instead related them to the cult of personality. That is, it related them to a concept which, as I pointed out in Marx, cannot be found in Marxist theory. I now venture to say that it can perfectly well be found elsewhere in bourgeois philosophy and psychosociological ideology. If you take communist philosophers and other communist intellectuals and set them officially on a bourgeois ideological and philosophical line, in order to criticize the regime under which they, among others, have suffered deeply, you must not be surprised when the same communist philosophers and intellectuals quite naturally take the road of bourgeois philosophy. It has been opened up right in front of them. You must not be surprised when they make up their own little bourgeois Marxist philosophy of the rights of man, exalting man and his rights, the first of which is liberty, whose reverse is alienation. It is quite natural for them to lean on Marx's early works. That is what they are there for. And then on humanism in all its forms. Shall it be Garotti's socialist humanism, the pure humanism of John Lewis, the true or real socialism of others, or even, why not, scientific humanism itself? Between these different varieties of the philosophy of human liberty, each philosopher can of course freely take his choice. All that is perfectly normal. Having said that, we must add that it is important not to mix things up which, politically speaking, ought not to be confused, things which are quite different from one another. The humanist reactions of Western communist theoreticians, and even of some from Eastern Europe, are one thing. It would however be an extremely serious political mistake, for example, to claim to judge and condemn on account of an adjective, human, something like the classes remain and will remain in the era of the dictatorship of the proletariat. Classes remain, but each class has undergone a change in the era of the dictatorship of the proletariat. The relations between classes have also changed. The class struggle does not disappear under the dictatorship of the proletariat. It simply takes other forms, economics and politics, in the era of the dictatorship of the proletariat. Reply to John Lewis 77. Slogan socialism with a human face, a slogan under which the check masses let everyone know, even if the form was sometimes confused, about their class and national grievances and aspirations. It would be an extremely serious political mistake to confuse this national mass movement, this important historical fact, with the humanist pedantry of our Western. Sometimes communist philosophers, or such and such a philosopher of Eastern Europe, there were intellectuals in the Czech national mass movement, but it was not a movement of intellectuals. What the Czech people wanted was socialism and not humanism. It wanted socialism whose face, not the body. The body does not figure in the formula, would not be disfigured by practices unworthy both itself, the Czech people, a people of high political culture, and of socialism. A socialism with a human face, the adjective is in the right place, the national mass movement of the Czech people, even if it is no longer to be heard of, and the struggle is nevertheless still going on, merits the respect and support of all communists. Exactly as the humanist philosophies of Western intellectuals, at ease in their academic chairs or wherever, the philosophies of Marxist humanism, whether they are called true or scientific, merit the criticism of all communists. It is for all the reasons outlined above then that there are cases like John Lewis in the Western communist parties, and that there are rather a lot of them. It is for the same reasons that in these parties there exists a certain number of communist philosophers who are fighting against a certain current, and that there are rather few of them. And it is for these reasons, directly political reasons, that I want to repeat my thanks to Marxism Today, Journal of the Communist Party of Great Britain, for accepting to publish my reply. Paris, July 4th, 1972. Note on the critique of the personality cult. Not for one moment does the idea strike John Lewis that philosophy is as close to politics as the lips are to the teeth. That, in the last instance, what is at stake, indirectly but also very directly, where philosophical theses are concerned, is always the number of political problems or arguments of real history, and that every philosophical text, including his own, is, in the last instance, also a political intervention in the theoretical conjuncture, as well as through one of its effects. Today, the main effect, a theoretical intervention in the political conjuncture. Not for a moment does the idea strike him of wondering about the political conjuncture in which my texts and his own were written, about what theoretical political effects I had in mind when thinking them out and publishing them, about the framework of theoretical argument and political conflicts in which the enterprise was undertaken, or about the reactions it caused. I am not expecting John Lewis to have a detailed knowledge of French political and philosophical history, of the struggle of ideas, even unimportant or erroneous ideas, within the French Communist Party since the war, and especially between 1960 and 1965. But all the same, communists have history in common, a long, difficult, happy and unhappy history, one which to a large extent is linked to the Third International, itself dominated since the 30s by Stalin's political line and leadership. We have a common past as communists in the popular fronts, the Spanish War, the Second War, and the anti-fascist resistance, and the Chinese Revolution. But we also have Lysenko science replied to John Lewis 79, which was no more than ideology, and a few formulae and slogans which were claimed to be scientific, but were no more than ideological, and which conceal very strange practices. We all share, as communists, a past which includes Khrushchev's criticism of the personality cult at the 20th Congress of the Soviet Party, and the ordeal of the split in the international communist movement. We have the Chinese Cultural Revolution in common, whatever we think of it, and may 68 in France a few ups and downs, in short, from which one ought to be able to abstract so as to talk philosophy between communists in 1972. It is not too serious a matter, because one day we really shall have to try and call things by their name, and to do that as Marxists. We have to look for that name, I mean the right concept, even if we have to do it while we advance, so that we can come to understand our own history. Our history is not like a peaceful stream flowing between secure banks, its course marked out in advance, any more than Marx's own history was, or the tragic and glorious history of the first 2 decades of the century. Even if we do not go back so far, even if we only speak of the recent past, whose memory, whose shadow even, still reaches over us today, no one can deny that for 30 years we lived through a period of ordeals, heroism, and dramas under the domination of a political line and political practices, which, for lack of a concept, we have to call by a proper name, that's Stalin. Do we quite simply leave all this behind as a consequence of Stalin's death and on the strength and through the effects of a little phrase, the personality cult, pronounced at the 20th Congress of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union as the last word in every possible sense in the affair? I wrote during the 1960s in 1880, philosophical text which John Lewis has right in front of him, that the concept of the personality cult was a concept which cannot be found in Marxist theory, that it had no value in terms of knowledge, that it explained nothing and left us in the dark. This was quite clear, it still is, a concept which cannot be found in Marxist theory, this must be recognized. In the form in which it was put forward and used, both theoretically and politically, the concept of the personality cult was not simply the name of something. It did not satisfy itself with simply pointing out the facts, the abuses, the violations of Soviet legality. It claimed at the same time, this was openly stated, theoretical pretensions, it was supposed to give an account of the essence of the facts which it revealed. And this is how it was used politically. Now this pseudo-concept, the circumstances of whose solemn and dramatic pronouncement are well known, did indeed expose certain practices, abuses, errors, and in certain cases crimes, but it explained nothing of their conditions, of their causes, ensured their internal determination, and therefore of their forms. Yet since it claimed to explain what in fact it did not explain, this pseudo-concept could only mislead those whom it was supposed to instruct. Must we be even more explicit? To reduce the grave events of 30 years of Soviet and communist history to the pseudo-explanation by the cult was not and could not have been a simple mistake. An oversight of an intellectual hostile to the practice of divine worship. It was, as we all know, a political act of responsible leaders, a certain one-sided way of putting forward the problems, not of what is vulgarly called Stalinism, but of what must, I think, be. Reply to John Lewis 81, called, unless one object is thinking about it, by the name of a concept, provisionally the Stalinian deviation, and at the same time it was a certain way of not posing the problems. More precisely, it was, and still is, a way of seeking the causes of grave events and of their forms and certain defects of the functioning of the legal superstructure, violations of socialist legality, without even in the form of a hypothesis, looking into the whole of the state apparatuses constituting the superstructure, the repressive apparatus, the ideological apparatus, including the party, and above all, without getting to the root of the problem, one which was so serious and lasted so long. The contradictions of the construction of socialism and its line, that is, without dealing with the existing forms of production relations, and class struggle, the last of which is then said in a formula which has not yet been withdrawn to have been transcended in the USSR. Yet this is where the internal causes of the facts of the cult must be sought, at the risk of finding other facts. Of course, it is not true that everything is always connected with everything else. This is not a Marxist thesis, and one does not need to invoke the whole infrastructure and superstructure to sort out a simple legal detail, if it is only a detail. 3. The term Stalinism, which the Soviet leaders have avoided using, but which was widely used by bourgeois ideologians and trotskyists before penetrating into communist circles, offers in general the same disadvantages as the term personality cult. It designates a reality which innumerable communists above all have experienced, either in direct and tragic form, or less directly and with more or less serious consequences. Now this terminology also has theoretical pretensions among bourgeois ideologists and many trotskyists. It explains nothing. To set out on the road of Marxist explanation, to be able to pose the problem of the explanation of these facts, the least that is required is to put forward Marxist concepts, and to see whether they are suitable. That is why I am proposing the concept of deviation, which is a concept that can certainly be found in Marxist-Leninist theory. Thus one might, first of all, talk of a Stalinian deviation, first of all, because to talk of a deviation necessarily requires that it should next be qualified, that one should explain what it consisted, and always in Marxist terms. One thing at the present stage must be made clear. To speak of a Stalinian deviation is not to explain it by an individual, who would be its cause. The adjective certainly refers to a man in history, but above all to a certain period in the history of the international labor movement. 82. And only legal. But is the Stalin deviation a detail? A simple legal detail? Of course one cannot at any and every moment in a moment remake what many years have made. This is not a Marxist thesis. There are of course historical constructions which are so interconnected with neighboring buildings, which are so much propped up by these latter, that one cannot simply brutally chop down their surroundings to give them some air. One must sometimes proceed cautiously. But the precautions of the 20th Congress, the Stalinian deviation in the form revealed to us by the terms of the official declarations, pointed out certain facts, without, for lack of Marxist explanations, avoiding the trap of repeating much earlier denunciations, those of the most anti-communist bourgeois ideology, and those of the anti-Stalinist theory of Trotskyism. As it was revealed to us, limited in its scope to violations of socialist legality alone, while the communists of the USSR and of the world had an infinitely more extensive experience of it. This deviation could, finally, only provoke two possible reactions, leaving aside its classical exploitation by anti-communist and anti-Soviet elements. Either a left-wing critique, which accepts the term deviation, even in a very contradictory sense, and which, in order to account for it, undertakes serious research into its basic historical causes, that is, if John Lewis was to use the united man of personality, but into the superstructure, relations of production, and therefore the state of class relations and the class struggle in the USSR. Such a critique may then, but only then, be justified in talking not only about a violation of the law, but also about the reasons for this violation. Or a right-wing critique, which attacks only certain aspects of the legal superstructure, and of course can then invoke man and his rights, and oppose man to the violation of his rights, or simple workers' councils to the bureaucracy. The fact is, one practically never hears anything but the second critique, and the official formulation of the critique of the cult of the violations of socialist legality, far from keeping the most violent bourgeois anti-communism, reply to John Lewis 83, and Trotskyist anti-Stalinism at arm's length, actually provides them with a historical argument they hardly hoped for. It gives them justification, a second wind, a second life. Which explains, let it be said in passing, a good number of apparently paradoxical phenomena. For example, the resurgence 50 years after the October Revolution and 20 years after the Chinese Revolution organizations, which have lasted 40 years without winning a single historical victory, because, unlike some of the present-day ultra-left, they are organizations and they also have a theory, the Trotskyist organizations. And that is not to speak of the effectiveness of bourgeois anti-Sovietism 30 years after Stalingrad. However that may be, we do not need to wait long before seeing the official critique of the Stalinian deviation that the personality cult produced in special circumstances, its inevitable ideological effects. After the 20th Congress, it openly right its way carried off, to speak only of them, many Marxist and communist intellectuals, not only in the capitalist countries, but also in the socialist countries. It is not of course a question of putting the intellectuals of the socialist countries and Western Marxists into the same bag, and especially not confusing the mass political protests of our comrades in Prague, known as socialism with a human face, with their ideas, integral humanism, etc. In Prague, they did not have the same choice of words. The words did not have the same sense, nor the same choice of roads. But here we see communists following the social democrats and even religious thinkers who used to have an almost guaranteed monopoly in these things, in the practice of exploiting the works of Marx's youth in order to draw to them an ideology of man, liberty, alienation, transcendence, etc. Without asking whether the system of these notions was idealist or materialist, whether this ideology was petty bourgeois or proletarian. Orthodoxy, as John Lewis says, was almost submerged, not Stalin's thought, which continued and continues to hold itself comfortably above the uproar in its faces. Its line is certain of its practices, but quite simply the theory of Marx and Lenin. 84. It was in these conditions that I came to intervene, let us say accidentally, in the form of a critical review I wrote of a number of Soviet and Eastern articles which had been translated into French. This review on the young Marx appeared in the magazine La Pensée in. I was trying to the best of my ability and with the makeshift tools at my disposal by criticizing a few received ideas and asking a few questions to combat the contagion which was menacing us. That is how it was. At the beginning there were not very many of us, and John Lewis is right. We were crying in the wilderness, or in what certain people might call the wilderness. But one must be very wary of this kind of wilderness, or rather, know how not to be frightened by it. In reality, we have never been alone. Communists are never alone. So, against the rightist idealist interpretations of Marxist theory as a philosophy of man, of Marxism as a theoretical humanism, against the tendentious confusion, whether positivist or subjectivist, of science and Marxist philosophy, against the evolutionist reduction of the materialist dialectic to the Hegelian dialectic, and in general against bourgeois and petty bourgeois positions, we have tried to defend, come what may, at the cost of rash actions and errors, a few vital ideas which can be summed up in a single idea, that which is special and specific to Marx, which is revolutionary in both theoretical and political senses. And this in the face of bourgeois and petty bourgeois ideology, with which he had to break in order to become a communist and found the science of history, the same ideology with which even today we must still and always will have to break to become, remain, or become again Marxists. The forms may have changed, but the root of the questions remain for 150 years or so substantially the same. This bourgeois ideology, which is the dominant ideology, and which weighs so heavily on the labor movement and threatens its most vital functions. Unless the movement fights resolutely back on the basis of its own positions, quite exterior to bourgeois ideology because proletarian, this. Reprinted in from Marx translator's note, reply to John Lewis 85. Bourgeois ideology is actually, in its deepest essence, constituted by the ideological pair of communism, humanism. Behind the abstract categories of the philosophy, which provides it with titles and airs, it was this pair of notions which I was aiming at when I made a joint attack, both on theoretical humanism, I repeat, theoretical, not on a word or a few phrases or even an inspired idea of the future, but on a philosophical language in which man is a category with a theoretical function, and passing by the vulgar forms of Hegelianism or evolutionism which join with it on communism. For no one, at least no revolutionary Marxist, can fail to see that when, in the midst of the class struggle, the litanies of humanism hold the theoretical and ideological stage, it is a communism which is quietly winning. Even under feudalism, when humanist ideology was revolutionary, it was still profoundly bourgeois, and a bourgeois class society always has played, and still does play the role of hiding the class determined economic end. Economistic practices governed by relations of production, exploitation, and exchange, and by bourgeois law. In a bourgeois class society, there is always the risk that humanist ideology, when it is not just a slip of the pen or an image of political rhetoric, when it is of a lasting and organic character, serves as a cover for an economistic deviation in the workers' organizations, which are not immune to the contagion of the dominant ideology. This deviation is in principal contradiction to proletarian class positions. The whole history of the rights of man proves it. Behind man is Bentham who comes out the victor. Much of the history of the Second International, whose dominant tendency Lenin denounced, also goes to prove it. Behind Bernstein's Neo-Kantian idealism is the economist current which comes out on top. Who can seriously claim that the whole of this long history, with all its conflicts and dangers, is behind us, and that it will never again menace us, that we shall never again be at risk? I am talking about the ideological pair of communism, humanism. It is a pair in which two terms are complementary. It is not an accidental link, but an organic and. 86. Consubstantial 1. It is born spontaneously, that is to say necessarily, of the bourgeois practices of production and exploitation, and at the same time of the legal practices of bourgeois law and its ideology, which provide a sanction for the capitalist relations of production and exploitation and their reproduction. And it is quite true that bourgeois ideology is fundamentally economist, that the capitalist sees everything from the point of view of commodity relations and from the point of view of the material conditions, means of production are also commodities, which allow him to exploit that very special commodity, the labor power of the workers. Thus he sees things from the point of view of the techniques of the extortion of surplus value, which are linked together with capitalist organization and division of labor, from the point of view of the technology of exploitation, of economic performance and development, from the point of view of capitalist accumulation. And what does the bourgeois economist do? Marx showed that even when he raised himself to the point of thinking in terms of capitalism, he did no more than theorize the economistic viewpoint of the capitalist. Marx criticized the very project of political economy as such because it was economistic. But at the same time, it is true that the reverse side of the same coin, the necessary cover, the alibi, the point of honor of this economism is humanism or bourgeois liberalism. This is because ideas find their foundations in the categories of bourgeois law and the legal ideology materially indispensable to the functioning of bourgeois law. Liberty of the person, that is in principle, his right freely to dispose of himself, his right to his property, his free will, his body, the proletarian. A person free to sell himself and his other goods, private property, real property, which abolishes others, that of the means of production. This is the breeding ground of communism, humanism, the capitalist mode of production and exploitation. And this is the precise link by which, the precise place in which these two ideologies join together as a pair, bourgeois law, which at the same time both provides a real support for. Reply to John Lewis 87. Capitalist relations of production and lends its categories to liberal and humanist ideology, including bourgeois philosophy. The question then arises, when this bourgeois ideological pair penetrates into Marxism, when it pursues the struggle, not on its own terrain but on the general terrain of Marxism, as revisionism, Lenin, what does it become? It remains what it was before, a bourgeois point of view, but this time functioning within Marxism. As astonishing as this may seem, the whole history of the labor movement and Lenin's theses are witness to it. Marxism itself can, in certain circumstances, be considered and treated as, even practiced as a bourgeois point of view. Not only by armchair Marxists, who reduce it to academic bourgeois sociology and were never anything but functionaries of the dominant ideology, but also by sections of the labor movement and their leaders. This is something which depends on the relations of power in the class struggle, and at the same time on class position in the class struggle, in the line, the organization and the functioning of the class struggle fought by the labor movement. That is to say that it is a historical form in which the fusion between the labor movement and Marxist theory, which alone can assure the objectively revolutionary character of the movement, Lenin, is held up or reversed in the face of what must perhaps, for purposes of understanding, also be called a fusion, but quite another kind of fusion, that between the labor movement and bourgeois ideology. The economism humanism pair, when it is introduced into Marxism, does not really change in form, even if it is forced to make some changes, only some in its vocabulary. Humanism remains humanism. It takes on a social democratic accent, one which raises not the question of the class struggle and its abolition through the emancipation of the working class, but that of the defense of human rights, of liberty and justice, even of liberation and free development. 88. Men of the personality, or the integral personality. Economism remains economism. For example, in the exaltation of the development of the productive forces of their socialization. What kind of socialization? Of the scientific and technical revolution, of productivity, etc. Can we make a comparison? Yes, we can. And we discover the factor which permits us to identify the ideological pair economism, humanism, and its practices as bourgeois. It is the elimination of something which never figures in economism or humanism, the elimination of the relations of production and of the class struggle. The fact that the bourgeoisie in its own ideology keeps silent about the relations of production and class struggle, in order to result not only expansion and productivity, but also man and his liberty, that is its own affair and is quite in order, in bourgeois order, because it needs this silence which allows communism, humanism expressing the bourgeois point of view to work at the concealment of the relations of production while helping to guarantee and reproduce them. But when the workers' parties before the revolution, or even after, themselves keep silent or semi-silent about the relations of production, the class struggle, and their concrete forms, while exalting both the productive forces and man, this is quite a different matter. Because unless it is only a question of words or a few speeches, if it is really a question of a consistent political line and practice, then you can bet, as Lenin did when he spoke about the premise 1914 Second International, that this bourgeois point of view is a contaminating agent which can threaten or even overcome the proletarian point of view within Marxism itself. And since we have been talking about the Second International, let us say a brief word about the third, about the last 10 years of its existence. After all, why be silent about a question which is burning to be expressed? Why need the official silence with nothing but another silence and thus give a sanction for an official silence does still reign? Reply to John Lewis 89. Beneath the facade of feigned or embarrassed explanations over this period, one whose heroism, whose greatness, whose dramas we have lived through or known. Why should we not try to understand, whatever the risks of what we say, not only the merits of the International, but also the inevitable contradictions of its positions and its line, and how could it have avoided them, especially given the tragic times with which it had to deal? I am rather afraid that we may one day have to recognize the existence within it of a certain tendency which held it down by Lenin's efforts, could not finally be mastered, and ended up by quietly taking over the leading role. I am rather afraid that a long time might be allowed to go by, for apparently pragmatic reasons, which doubtless have deeper roots, before a hypothesis such as that which I want to put forward today could hopefully be stated in black and white and put to the test of a genuine Marxist analysis. I shall take the personal risk of advancing this hypothesis now in the form of necessarily schematic propositions. 1. The international communist movement has been affected since the 1930s to different degrees in very different ways in different countries and organizations by the effects of a single deviation, which can provisionally be called the Selenian deviation. 90. This is only a hypothesis, and I am simply laying down its reference points. It naturally poses very great problems. The most obvious of these problems can be stated in the following way. How could a basically economistic tendency have combined with the superstructural effects we know so well, effects which produce as the transformation of its own forms? What were the material forms of existence of this tendency, which enabled it to produce these effects in the existing conjuncture? How did this tendency, centered from a certain time onwards on the USSR, spread through the whole international communist movement, and what special, and sometimes differing, forms did it take? If some readers are disconcerted by the comparison between the economism of the Second International and that of the Selenian deviation, I will first of all reply, you must look and see what was the first principle of analysis recommended and used by Lenin at the beginning of chapter 7 of the collapse of the Second International to help understand deviation in the history of the labor movement. The first thing you have to do is to see if this deviation is not linked with some form of current of socialism, not because of some vulgar historicism, but because there exists a continuity in the history of the labor movement of its difficulties, its problems, its contradictions, of correct solutions, and therefore also of its deviations, because of the continuity of a single class struggle against the bourgeoisie and of a single class struggle, economic, political, and ideological theoretical, of the bourgeoisie against the labor movement. The possibility of cases of posthumous revenge, of revivals, is based on this continuity, but I would like to add something else. There are of course serious political questions at stake in the summary and schematic hypotheses which I am proposing, but above all there exists the possibility of serious ambiguities which must at all costs be guarded against. Look how Lenin, who was uncompromising in his denunciation of the idealistic communist tendency of the Second International, treated this very organization. He never reduced the Second International to its deviation. He recognized the different periods in its history. He distinguished the main question from the reply to John Lewis 91, secondary one, and for example he always gave the International credit for having developed the organizations of the proletarian class struggle, the trade unions and workers' parties. Nor did he ever refuse to cite Kautsky or to defend Platonov's philosophical work. In the same way, and for infinitely more obvious and powerful reasons, Stalin cannot be reduced to the deviation which we have linked to his name. Even less can this be done with the Third International which he came in the 30s to dominate. He had other historical merits. He understood that it was necessary to abandon the miraculous idea of an imminent world revolution and to undertake instead the construction of socialism in one country. And he drew the consequences. It must be defended at any cost as the foundation and last line of defense of socialism throughout the world. It must be made into an impregnable fortress capable of withstanding the imperialist siege, and to that end it must be provided with heavy industry. It was this very industry that turned out the Stalingrad tanks which served the heroic struggle of the Soviet people in their fight to the death to liberate the world from Nazism. Our history also passed in that direction, and in spite of the deformations, caricatures, and tragedies for which this period is responsible, it must be recalled that millions of communists also learned. Even if Stalin taught them in dogmatic form that there existed principles of Leninism. Thus, if it seems possible, keeping everything in proportion, to talk about the posthumous revenge of the Second International, it must be added that it is a revenge which took place in other times, in other circumstances, and of course in other forms, which cannot be the subject of a literal comparison. But in spite of these considerable differences, one can talk about revenge, or the revival, or the resurgence of the tendency which is basically the same, of an economistic conception and line, even when these were hidden by declarations which were, in their own way, cruelly humanist. If this is true, if the Selenian deviation cannot be 92, reduced to violations of Soviet legality alone, it is related to more profound causes in history and in the conception of class struggle and class position, and even supposing that the Soviet people are now protected from all violations of legality, it does not follow that either they or we have completely overcome the Selenian deviation, neither the causes nor the mechanisms, nor the effects of which have been the object of a concrete analysis in the Leninist sense, that is to say, of a scientific Marxist analysis, simply on account of the denunciation of the personality cult, or by patient work of rectification unenlightened by any analysis. In these conditions, with all the information past and present available to us, including the official silence, which refuses to pronounce against these facts, we can bet that the Selenian line, purged of violations of legality, and therefore liberalized, with economism and humanism working together, has, for better or worse, survived Stalin, and it should not be astonishing. The 20th Congress, one is even justified in supposing that, behind the talk about the different varieties of humanism, whether restrained or not, this line continues to pursue an honorable career, in a peculiar kind of silence, a sometimes talkative, and sometimes mute silence, which is now and again broken by the noise of an explosion or a split. So that I do not have to leave anything out of consideration, I will advance one more risky hypothesis, which will certainly say something to John Lewis, specialist of Chinese politics. If we look back over our whole history of the last 40 years or more, it seems to me that, in reckoning up the account, which is not an easy thing to do, the only historically existing, left critique of the fundamentals of the Selenian deviation to be found, and which moreover is contemporary with this very deviation, and thus for the most part precedes the 20th Congress, is a concrete critique, one which exists in the facts, in the struggle, in the line, in the practices, the principles, and the forms of the Chinese Revolution. A silent critique, which speaks through its actions, the result of the political and ideological struggles of the revolution, from the long march to the cultural revolution and its results. A critique from afar, a critique, replied to John Lewis 93, from behind the scenes, to be looked at more closely, to be interpreted, a contradictory critique, moreover, if only because of the disproportion between acts and text. Whatever you like, but a critique from which one can learn, which can help us to test our hypotheses, that is, help us to see our own history more clearly. But here too, of course, we have to speak in terms of tendency and of specific forms, without letting the forms mask the tendency and its contradictions. If I have been able, with the means at my disposal, and from afar, even very feebly to echo these historic struggles and to indicate behind their ideological effects the existence of some real problems, this for a communist philosopher is no more than his duty. These, to go no further, are some of the very concrete questions where politics stares you in the face, which haunt the margins of the simple philosophical work undertaken by me, for better or worse, more than 10 years ago. As far as John Lewis is concerned, it seems that it never occurred to him to ask such questions. From our point of view, I hope that it is so, because the matter would be that much more serious if, having understood what was at stake, he had kept silent about it, so as not to get his fingers burned. June 1972, remark on the category, process without a subject or goals, this formula, process without a subject. Process without a subject or goal has everything required to offend against the evidence of common sense, that is, Ramsey, of the dominant ideology, and thus without any trouble at all to make some determined enemies. For example, the objection will be raised that the masses and classes are, when all is said and done, made up of men, and that if man category which is then simply declared to be an abstraction, or to add weight, a speculative abstraction, cannot be said to make history, at least men do so, concrete, living men, human subjects. In support of this idea, Marx himself will be cited as witness, his testimony being the beginning of a little remark in the 18th from there, men make their own history. With the backing of evidence, quote, the conclusion is quickly drawn, history has subjects. These subjects are obviously men. Men are therefore, if not the subject of history, at least the subject of history. This kind of reasoning unfortunately only stands up at the cost of confusions, sliding meanings and ideological word games, on man, subjects, etc. Let us be careful therefore not to play with words and let us look at the thing a bit closer. In my opinion, men, plural, in the concrete sense, are necessarily subjects plural in history, because they act in history as subjects plural. But there is no subject, singular, of history, and I will go even further. Men are not the subjects of history. Let me explain. To understand these distinctions, one must define the nature of the questions at issue. The question of the constitute, reply to John Lewis 95, shot individuals as historical subjects active in history has nothing in principle to do with the question of the subject of history, or even without the subject of history. The first question is of a scientific kind. It concerns historical materialism. The second question is of a philosophical kind. It concerns dialectical materialism. First question, scientific. That human, that is social individuals are active in history, as agents of the different social practices of the historical process of production and reproduction. That is a fact. But considered as agents, human individuals are not free and constitutive subjects in the philosophical sense of these terms. They work in and through the determinations of the forms of historical existence of the social relations of production and reproduction, labor process, division and organization of labor, process of production and reproduction, class struggle, etc. But that is not all. These agents can only be agents if they are subjects. This I think I showed in my article on ideology and ideological state apparatuses. See Lenin in Philosophy and Other Essays, London NLB 1971. No human, that is social individual, can be the agent of practice if he does not have the form of a subject. The subject form is actually the form of historical existence of every individual, of every agent of social practices, because the social relations of production and reproduction necessarily comprise, as an integral part, what Lenin calls juridico-ideological social relations, which, in order to function, impose the subject form on each agent individual. The agent individuals thus always act in the subject form as subjects, but the fact that they are necessarily subjects does not make the agents of social historical practices into subjects of history in the philosophical sense of the term, subject of. The subject agents are only active in history through the determination of the relations of production and reproduction and in their forms. Second question, philosophical. It is for precise ideological ends that bourgeois philosophy, 96, has taken the legal ideological notion of the subject, made it into a philosophical category, its number one philosophical category, and posed the question of the subject of knowledge, the ego of the cogito, the Kantian or Husserlian transcendental subject, etc., of morality, etc., and of the subject of history. This illusory question does of course have a purpose, but in its position and form it has no sense as far as dialectical materialism is concerned, which purely and simply rejects it, as it rejects, for example, the question of God's existence. In advancing the thesis of a process without a subject or goal, I want simply but clearly to say this. To be dialectical materialist, Marxist philosophy must break with the idealist category of the subject as origin, essence, and cause, responsible in its internality for all the determinations of the external object, of which it is said to be the internal subject. For Marxist philosophy, there can be no subject as an absolute center as a radical origin as a unique cause. Nor can one, in order to get out of the problem, rely on a category like that of the excentration of the essence, Lucian said it, since it is an illusory compromise which, using a fraudulently radical term, one whose root is perfectly conformist excentration, safeguards the umbilical cord between essence and center, and therefore remains a prisoner of idealist philosophy. Since there is no center, every excentration is superfluous or sham. In reality, Marxist philosophy thinks in and according to quite different categories. Determination in the last instance, which is quite different from the origin, essence, or causiness. Determination by relations, idem, contradiction, process, nodal points, Lenin, etc. In short, in quite different configuration according to quite different categories from classical idealist philosophy. Naturally, these philosophical categories do not only concern history. But if we restrict ourselves to history, which is what concerns us here, the philosophical question presents itself in the following terms. There is no question of contesting the reply to John Lewis 97, Gains of Historical Materialism, which says that individuals are agent subjects in history under the determination of the forms of existence of relations of production and reproduction. It is a question of something quite different, of knowing whether history can be thought philosophically in its modes of determination according to the idealist category of the subject. The position of dialectical materialism on this question seems quite clear to me. One cannot see the great conceive, that is to say, think real history, the process of the reproduction of social formations and the revolutionary transformation, as if it could be reduced to an origin, an essence, or cause, even man, which would be a subject of being or essence, held to be identifiable, that is to say, existing in the form of the unity of internality, and theoretically and practically responsible identity. Internality and responsibility are constitutive, among other things, of every subject, thus accountable, thus capable of accounting for the whole of the phenomena of history. The matter is quite clear when we are confronted with classical idealism, which within the opening stated category of liberty takes man, equal to human, equal to humanity, to be the subject and the goal of history, cf. the Enlightenment, and Kant, the purest philosopher of bourgeois ideology. The matter is also clear when we are confronted with the philosophical petty bourgeois communitarian anthropology of Feuerbach, still recited by Marx in 1844 manuscripts, in which the essence of man is the origin, cause, and goal of history. But the same position evidently takes on a more deceptive air in the post-Husserlian and pre-Kantian Cartesian phenomenological interpretations, like those of Sartre, or the Kantian theses of the transcendental subject. Unique because one and the liberty of humanity are mixed up and squashed together, and where the subject is multiplied with the theory of the originating liberty of infinity of concrete transcendental subjects. Trans Duke said, explaining Husserl, we are all you and I, each one of us, transcendental egos and transcendental equals, egos and ego, which brings us back to the 98 thesis that men, the concrete individuals, are the subjects transcendental constitutive of history. This is the basis of Sartre's special interest in a little phrase from the 18th Brumaire and a similar phrase from Engels, which fit him like a glove. Now this position, which brings the Kantian categories down to the level no longer of an anthropological philosophy Feuerbach, but of a vulgar philosophical psychosociology, not only has nothing to do with Marxism, but actually constitutes a quite dubious theoretical position, which it is practically impossible to conceive and to defend. You just have to read the critique of dialectical reason, which announces an ethics that never appeared, to be convinced of this point. In proposing the category of the process without a subject or goal, we thus draw a demarcation line, Lenin, between dialectical materialist positions and bourgeois or petty bourgeois idealist positions. Naturally, one cannot expect everything from a first intervention. This demarcation line must be worked on. But as Lenin said for his part, a demarcation line, if it is correct, is in principle sufficient, just as it is, to defend us from idealism and to mark out the way forward. These philosophical positions are of course not without their consequences. Not only, for example, do they imply that Marxism has nothing to do with the anthropological question, what is man, or with the theory of the realization, objectification, alienation, disalienation of the human essence, as in Feuerbach and his heirs. Theoreticians of philosophical reification and fetishism, or even with the theory of the excentration of the human essence, which only criticizes the idealism of the subject from within the limits of the idealism of the subject. Dress up the attributes of the ensemble of social relations of the sixth thesis on Feuerbach, but they also allow us to understand the sense of Marx's famous little phrase in the 18th Brumaire. This comment, in its complete form, reads as follows: men make their own history, but they do not make it out of freely chosen elements, under circumstances chosen by themselves, but under circums. Reply to John Lewis 99. Tansis, stand directly encountered Vorschendan, given by and translated from the past. And, as if he had foreseen the exploitation of these first 5 words, and even these circumstances from which Sartre draws out such dazzling effects of the practical inert that is the liberty, Marx, in the preface to the 18th Brumaire, written 17 years later, in 1869, 2 years after Capital, set down the following lines. I show something quite different from the ideology of Hugo and Proudhon, who both hold the individual Napoleon III to be the detestable or glorious cause responsible for the coup d'état. Namely how the class struggle, Marx's emphasis, in France created the circumstances, standard, and the relations for wholeness, which allowed a person, a subject, so mediocre and grotesque to play the role of a hero. One must read one's authors closely. History really is a process without a subject or goal, where the given circumstances in which men act as subjects under the determination of social relations are the product of the class struggle. History therefore does not have a subject in the philosophical sense of the term, but a motor, that very class struggle. 1 May 1973. 2. Elements of self-criticism. Forward. The reader will find 2 previously unpublished essays here. The first date from June 1972. It was to be included in the reply to John Lewis, thus adding to the elements of self-criticism to be found there, which in fact it may be remembered were limited to a rectification of the definition of philosophy. But in the end, it could not be included in that text, which had to be kept to the length of what was actually only a magazine article. And also because I wanted to preserve the unity of the same text when it was published in French. In this essay there can be found, for the first time, a critical examination of the positions I took from Marx and Reading Capital. Positions which, 2 years after the publication of these works, in the preface to the Italian edition of Reading Capital, I characterized as affected by a theoreticist tendency. I have taken the opportunity of adding to these elements of self-criticism as a supplement, an earlier essay which deals with the development of the young Marx and indicates in what direction I was then working. This self-criticism, whose logic and internal arguments I present here, in the form in which they came to disturb our course of thought on the subject, is naturally not a purely internal phenomenon. It can only be understood as the effect of a quite different external logic, that of the political events which I referred to in the reply to John Lewis. Elements of self-criticism 103. The reader will work out for himself the necessary relation between these 2 logics, without forgetting the primacy of practice over theory. That is, the primacy of the class struggle in economics and politics over the class struggle in theory. May 20, 1974. To Waldeck Roche, who admired Spinoza and spent a long day with me talking about him in June 1966. Elements of self-criticism. I really think that after John Lewis has given his point of view on my essays, after so many critics indeed have given their points of view, that I should now present my own. I have never disowned my essays, there was no good reason to do so. But in 1967, 2 years after their publication, I admitted in an Italian edition of Reading Capital, as well as in other foreign editions, that they were marked by an erroneous tendency. I pointed out the existence of this error, and I gave it a name, theoreticism. Today, I think I can go further and define the special object of the error, its essential forms and its reverberations. I should add that instead of talking about an error, it would be better to talk about a deviation, a theoreticist deviation. You will see why I am suggesting a change of terminology, that is, in this case, a change of category, and what is at stake philosophically and politically when I stress this nuance. The whole thing can be summed up in a few words. I wanted to defend Marxism against the real dangers of bourgeois ideology. It was necessary to stress its revolutionary character. It was therefore necessary to prove that there is an antagonism between Marxism and bourgeois ideology. That Marxism could not have developed in Marx or in the labor movement except in a radical and unremitting break with bourgeois ideology, an unceasing struggle against the assaults of this ideology. This thesis was correct, it still is correct, but instead of explaining this historical fact in all its dimensions, social, political, ideological, and theoretical, I reduced it to a simple theoretical fact, to the epistemological break, which can be observed in Marx's works from 1845 onwards. As a consequence, I was led to give a rationalist explanation of the break, contrasting truth and error in the form of the speculative distinction between science and ideology in the singular and in general. The contrast between Marxism and bourgeois ideology thus became simply a special case of this distinction. Reduction interpretation. From this rationalist speculative drama, the class struggle was practically absent. All the effects of my theoreticism derive from this rationalist speculative interpretation. Thus, to straighten things out, I must re-examine the situation from a critical perspective, not in order to introduce new subjects of discussion, which would create a diversion, but in order to come back to that departure point, to that special object, on which my theoreticist tendency took the opportunity to fix itself, in short, to the question of the break, to that extraordinary political theoretical adventure which took form and developed from 1845 onwards, in Marx's work, so that I can show how I interpreted it when I carried out this reduction. 1. The break. The break is not an illusion nor a complete myth, as John Lewis claims. I am sorry, I will not give way on this point. That one must explain the break without reducing it, I have just admitted. But look at the situation. I reduced the break to a simple rationalist speculative antithesis, but most of my critics reduced it to nothing. They rubbed it out, obliterated it, erased it, denied it. And how passionately they carried out this work of prescription and destruction, let us be explicit. There really does exist in the history of Marxist theoretical reflection something like a break, which is not a nullity, but of vital importance for the history of the whole labor movement. And between those who recognize the fact of the break and those who want to reduce it to nothing, there exists an opposition which, it must be acknowledged, is ultimately political. Let us look at this question a little more closely. It is clear to every reader who knows the theoretical works which preceded those of Marx, and which one can list, following Lenin, as German philosophy, including philosophy of law and history, English political economy, and French socialism, utopia and proletarian. It is clear and undeniable, because empirically verifiable by a process of comparison, as long as what is analyzed is not this or that isolated formula, but the structure and mode of functioning of the text, that, with the German ideology, something new and unprecedented appears in Marx's work, something which will never disappear. An historical event in the strong sense, but one which concerns the field of theory, and within theory what I called, using a metaphor, the opening of the continent of history. Thus, using metaphors which we shall retain, and we must retain both, and play on the distinction between them, we may speak of this event as the opening of the continent of history, or, and of the eruption of the sudden appearance of the continent of history within scientific theory. In fact, something radically new, though in often very unstable form, clumsy in working out its new object in terminology, or even still trapped in the old philosophical category, and yet terribly anxious to make its appearance in the world, really did arrive on the theoretical scene. It had never been seen before, it was in fact unprecedented, and as we now know, with the benefit of hindsight, it was destined to remain there. This thesis, which my critics have not spared, I maintain, is of course very schematic, both in the form which I originally had presented and in the form which I now take up again. It would need to be backed up by lengthy research and analysis, for which it is only the hypothesis. But none of the objections which have been raised to the thesis, even among the more or less serious ones, seems to me to have weakened it in principle. Because bare and schematic as it was, it did in the last resort simply register a fact. What I said was that it is possible to locate, even among the ambiguities and hesitations of the German ideology, a set of fundamental theoretical concepts which cannot be found in Marx's earlier texts, and which present a special characteristic of being able to function in quite another manner than in their prehistory. I will not enter here into a study of these new concepts, whose novel organization gave them a quite new meaning and function. Mode of production, relations of production, productive forces, social classes rooted in the unity of the productive forces, and relations of production, ruling class, oppressed class, ruling. Elements of self-criticism 109. Ideology, oppressed ideology, class struggle, etc. To take only one example, which can be proved beyond doubt by process of comparison. I repeat that the theoretical system of the 1,844 manuscripts rested, in contrast, on three basic concepts: human essence, alienation, alienated labor. And it should be noted that the mode of functioning of this new system, or for John Lewis, like so many other critics, may well object that one can find in 1844 manuscripts most of the concepts of classical political economy. For example, capital, accumulation, competition, division of labor, conceptual apparatus proved to be quite simply different, without any relation in its nature, without either continuity or an inversion from the mode of functioning of the earlier systems. Because what we are seeing here is a change of terrain. I proposed early on the use of this important metaphor, therefore a new terrain on which the new concepts, after much elaboration, can lay down the foundations of a scientific theory, or another metaphor, open the road to the development of what will irresistibly become a science, an unusual science, a revolutionary science, but a theory which contains what we recognize in sciences because it provides objective knowledge, consensus objectives. As a matter of fact, it is possible on this new terrain to pose, little by little, and for the first time, by using the new concepts, the real problems of concrete history in the form of scientific problems. It is possible to produce, as Marx says in Capital, proven theoretical results, that is, results which can be verified by scientific and political practice, and are open to mathematical replication. Now, the historical appearance of this new scientific continent, of this new apparatus of fundamental theoretical concepts, went together, as you can see empirically in Marx, even if the process is clearly contradictory, with the theoretical rejection of the old basic notions and of elements of self-criticism 111, their organization which were recognized and rejected as erroneous. Caution, we have reached a very sensitive theoretical and political point. This process of explicit rejection begins in 1845 in the German ideology, but it is disguised by a very general and abstract form, which contrasts positive science, dealing empirical realities with the mistakes, the illusions and dreams of ideology, and very precisely of philosophy, which is at this time conceived of simply as ideology, better as ideology par excellence. But in 1847, in the poverty of philosophy, the settling of accounts takes place directly on the new scientific terrain, and it is the pseudo-scientific concepts of Proudhon, who 3 years earlier in the Holy Family had been celebrated as the scientific theoretician of the proletariat, which now have to pay the price. What is decisive in all this is the manner in which the accounts are settled. We no longer have a philosophical critique, which works in part, or can in case of need work by inversion. We have instead the scientific denunciation of errors as errors, and their elimination, their removal pure and simple. Marx puts an end to the reign of conceptual errors, which he can call errors because he is advancing truths, scientific concepts. This very special way of settling accounts is repeated again and again. It reappears throughout Marx's work in Capital and later CF. The showers of criticism directed at the social democratic leaders for their theoretical errors contained in the Gotha program, and at Wagner for the Hegelian theoretical nonsense, which he talked about the concept of value and its division into exchange value and use value. It is repeated in Lenin, polemic with Neurotics, the Romantics, with Rosa Luxemburg of Capital, with Kautsky on state and imperialism, etc. In Gramsci, polemic with Bukharin over historical materialism, etc. And now, it never comes to an end. A science, Lenin repeats it again and again when he talks about historical materialism, never comes to an end. But every science begins. Of course, it always has a prehistory, out of which it emerges, but it does emerge in two senses: in the ordinary sense, and in another sense, its own special sense, which distinguishes it above all from the philosophy with which it coexists within theory, but also from other realities, like the practical and theoretical ideologies. It emerges in the ordinary sense. This means that it is not born out of nothing, but out of a process of labor by which it is hatched, a complex and multiple process, sometimes brightened by a flash of lightning, but which normally operates blindly in the dark, because it never knows where it is headed, nor if ever it arrives, where it is going to surface. It is born out of the unpredictable, incredibly complex and paradoxical, but in its contingency, necessary. Conjunction of ideological, political, scientific, related to other sciences, philosophical and other elements, which at some moment discover, but after the event, that they need each other. Elements of self-criticism 113, since they come together without however recognizing one another in the theoretical shape of a newborn science. This is the first sense in which science emerges from its prehistory, like everything that comes into the world, from atoms to living things and to men, including code for their genetic reproduction. But science also emerges from its prehistory in its own special way, in quite another manner which, at least in theory, is proper to itself, since it distinguishes it, among other things, from the way in which philosophy emerges from its history. In the second sense, you can almost say that science emerges from its prehistory in the same way as Marx emerged from the room of the communist Weitling, with the famous remark: ignorance will never be an argument, taking hold of the door and slamming it. Rejecting all or part of its prehistory, calling it erroneous and error, and at least in the very beginning, it is not too bothered with the detail. It hardly matters that its judgment is, strictly speaking, unjust. It is not a question of morality. And it hardly matters, on the contrary, that ideologists arrive on the scene much later, when it is clear that this fatherless infant can no longer be got rid of, and provide it with an official genealogy which, in order to conjure the child away, looks into its prehistory, chooses for it, and imposes on it the father who had to have this child to keep it quiet. It hardly matters, or on the contrary, it matters very much, that genuine scholars, rather radically of course, come on the scene very much later to reestablish the existence of lines of descent so complex and so contingent in their necessity that they force the conclusion that the child was born without a single identifiable father, but one must nevertheless accept the evidence and try to take account of this fact. Every recognized science not only has emerged from its own prehistory, but continues endlessly to do so. Its prehistory remains always contemporary, something like its alter ego, by rejecting what it considers to be error, according to the process which Bachelor called the epistemological break rupture. I owe this idea to him, but to give it, to use a metaphor, the sharpest possible cutting edge, I called it epistemological break, coupure, and I made it the central category of my first essays. What a fuss I raised. The use of this expression caused a real holy alliance to be formed against me. It united first those bourgeois who will defend to the death the continuity of history, of which they are the masters, and of culture, which provides them with the facade that they need in order to believe in their empire and its uninterrupted future. It also included those communists who know that, according to Lenin, all the resources of human knowledge are required in order to construct socialism once the revolution is made, but who think, like the Marxists of the Gotha program, that it is not worth risking the loss of their political allies for a few displaced scientific concepts in the unity platform. And it included too those more or less anarchist elements which, using different political arguments, accuse me of having introduced bourgeois concepts into Marxism because I talked about it in terms of a break. But I shall continue to defend my theses, while of course rectifying them, at least until others, better suited and thus more correct, are proposed. I repeat, I shall continue to defend them, both for clear political reasons and for compelling theoretical reasons. Let us not try to fool ourselves. This debate and argument are, in the last resort, political. This is not only the case with my opening bourgeois critics, but also with the others, who really is naive enough to think that the expressions Marxist theory, Marxist science, sanctioned moreover time and time again by the history of the labor movement, by the writings of Marx, Engels, Lenin, and now would have produced the storms, the denunciations, the passions which elements of self-criticism 115 we have witnessed, if nothing had been at stake except a simple quarrel over words. This is not a debate about philology. To hang on to or to reject these words, to defend them or to destroy them, something real is at stake in these struggles, whose ideological and political character is obvious. It is not too much to say that what is at stake today, behind the argument about words, is Leninism. Not only the recognition of the existence and role of Marxist theory in science, but also the concrete forms of the fusion between the labor movement and Marxist theory, and the conception of materialism and dialectic. I know that it is not always easy to be fair. I agree that the ideological struggle is often confused, that the camps in this struggle are partly mixed up, and the arguments sometimes go on above the heads of the combatants. I recognize that not everyone who declares himself for one side really takes up all the positions, and that he may, while trying for one result, produce another. The attacks against the idea of Marxist science may even, as a result of certain of the arguments used, knock down by ricochet certain definite errors. Let's say that public positions must always be judged against the system of positions actually held and against the effects they produce. For example, to look at only one side of the question, you may declare yourself for Marxist theory, and yet defend this theory on the basis of positivist, therefore non-Marxist positions, with all the consequences. Because you cannot really defend Marxist theory and science except on the basis of dialectical materialist, therefore non-speculative and non-positivist positions, trying to appreciate that quite extraordinary. Because unprecedented reality, Marxist theory as a revolutionary theory, Marxist science as a revolutionary science. What is really unprecedented in these expressions is the combination of the terms revolutionary and theory. Without an objectively revolutionary theory, there can be no objectively revolutionary movement, Lenin. And since science is the index of objectivity of theory, the combination of the terms revolutionary and science. But in these combinations which, if taken seriously, upset the received idea of theory and of science, the terms theory and science nevertheless remain. This is neither fetishism, nor bourgeois reification, nor is it a slip of the pen. Politically and theoretically, we cannot do without these words. Because until it is proved otherwise, within the bounds of existing practices we have no others, and we have no better. And if Marx, Engels, and Lenin throughout the political battles and theoretical work never abandoned them as guides and as weapons, that is because they considered them indispensable to the political and theoretical struggle, to the revolutionary liberation of the proletariat. We therefore have the right and the duty to speak, as all the classics have done, of Marxist theory and within Marxist theory of science and philosophy, provided that we do not thereby fall into theoreticism, speculation, or positivism. And to touch immediately on the most delicate point, yes, we have the right as far as theory is concerned, and the duty politically to use and defend by fighting for the word, the philosophical category of science, with reference to Marxism, Leninism, and to talk about the foundation by Marx of revolutionary science. But we must then explain the reason for the conditions and sense of this unprecedented combination, which brings about a decisive shift in our conception of science. To use and defend the word science in the context of this program is a necessity, in order to resist the bourgeois subjective idealists and the petty bourgeois Marxists who, all of them, shout positivism as soon as they hear the term, no doubt because the only picture they can conjure up of the practice and history of science and a fortiori of Marxist science is the classical positivist or vulgar bourgeois picture. It is a necessity if we want to resist the petty bourgeois ideologists, Marxists or not, who like to weep over the reification and alienation of objectivity as Turner used to weep over the holy, no doubt because they attach themselves without any embarrassment to the very antithesis which, elements of self-criticism 117, constitutes the basis of bourgeois legal and philosophical ideology, the antithesis between person, liberty equal to free will equal to law, and thing. Yes, it is quite correct for us to speak of an unimpeachable and undeniable scientific core of Marxism, that of historical materialism, in order to draw a vital, clear and unequivocal line, even if you must, and you must indeed, continue forever to work on this line, to avoid falling into positivism and speculation between, on the one hand, the workers who need objective, verifiable, and verified, in short scientific knowledge, in order to win victory, not in words but in facts, over their class opponents. And on the other hand, not only the bourgeoisie, which of course refuses Marxism and claims to be scientific, but also those who are willing to content themselves with a personal or fake theory, put together in their imagination or according to their petty bourgeois desire, or who refuse the very idea of scientific theory, even the word science, even the word theory, on the pretext that 12. One only has to open a textbook of law or jurisprudence to see clearly that law, Droit, which uniquely works as one with its ideology. Every science or even every theory is essentially refining, alienating, and therefore bourgeois. And I should add, we also have the right to speak about an epistemological break and to use this philosophical category to mark the historical theoretical facts of the birth of the science, including, in spite of its unique character, Marxist revolutionary science, by the visible symptom of its emergence from its prehistory, its rejection of the errors of that prehistory. On condition, of course, that where only effects are not taken for the cause, but instead that the signs and effects of the break are considered as a theoretical phenomenon of the appearance of the science in history, of theory, which brings up the question of the social, political, ideological, and philosophical conditions of disruption. 2. Science and ideology. Now this is the very point at which I must, since no one else is really rendering me the service, 14 declare my theorizist error on the question of the break. In the end, and in spite of all my precautions, I conceived and defined this break and the rationalist terms of science and non-science, not openly in the classical terms of the opposition between truth and error of a Cartesian type, reproducing an antithesis fixed from its origins from Platonism onwards. Not in terms of an opposition between knowledge and ignorance, that of enlightenment philosophy, but if I may say so, worse, in terms of an opposition between science in the singular and ideology in the singular. Why was this worse? Because in this way, a very important but very equivocal and thus misleading notion was brought into play based on its contrast with that of science, a notion which appears in the German ideology, where one and the same term plays two different roles, designating a philosophical category on the one hand, illusion, error, and a scientific concept on the other, formation of the superstructure, the notion of ideology. And although the German ideology encourages this confusion, Marx did after all overcome it, and so made it easier for us to avoid the trap. But this equivocal notion of ideology was brought into play within the rationalist context of the antithesis between truth and error. And so ideology was reduced to error, and error called ideology, and this whole rationalist game was given a fraudulent Marxist appearance. I do not need to say what this led to, ideologically and practically. And in fact, this disguise, which disguised nothing, did have its consequences. But Marxism, although it is rational, is not rationalism, not even modern rationalism, of which some of our predecessors before the war dreamed in the heat of the struggle against Nazi rationalism. And in spite of everything which I said in another connection about the basically practical, social, and political function of ideology, because encouraged by the German ideology, I use one and the same term in two senses. The importance which I placed in its first use, a philosophical and definitely rationalist one, equal to the exposure of illusions of errors, caused my interpretation, objectively, to fall into theoreticism on this point. Nevertheless, and even in the equivocal terms of the German ideology, this disguise of error as ideology could take on, and in fact did take on another meaning. Ideology was only the Marxist name for error, but even in the German ideology, which itself carried out this reduction, you could feel that behind the contrast between positive truth and ideological illusion, a quite different break with the past, not simply theoretical but political and ideological, and on a quite different scale, was making its appearance and working itself out. This break was the one which Marx made not with ideology in general, not only with the existing ideological conceptions of history, but with bourgeois ideology, with the dominant reigning bourgeois conception of the world, which held sway not only over social practices, but also within the practical and theoretical ideologies in philosophy, and even the products of political economy and utopian socialism. The fact that this domination was elements of self-criticism 121, not absolute, but the result of a struggle against the rivals of the feudal conception of the world and against the fragile foundations of the new proletarian conception of the world. This too is a fact of vital importance for understanding Marx's position. For he was only able to break with bourgeois ideology in its totality because he took inspiration from the basic ideas of proletarian ideology and from the first class struggles of the proletariat, in which this ideology became flesh and blood. This is the event which, behind the rationalist facade of the contrast between positive truth and ideological illusion, gave this contrast its real historical dimension. I certainly sensed that what was at stake in this debate was the break with bourgeois ideology, since I set to work to identify and characterize this ideology in terms of humanism, historicism, evolutionism, economism, idealism, etc. But for want of understanding at that time the mechanisms of ideology, its forms, its functions, its class tendencies, and its necessary relations with philosophy and the sciences, I was not really able to clarify the link existing between, on the one hand, Marx's break with bourgeois ideology, and on the other hand, the epistemological break. This latter break is not an illusion. Behind this disguise of error is ideology, there's a fact. The declaration of opposition between truth and error, which is objectively one of the symptoms of the birth of the appearance of science, when this really is what is taking place. Whatever has been claimed, there is no doubt that I did not hold to a non-dialectical opposition between science and ideology. For I showed that this opposition was recurrent, therefore historical and dialectical, since it is only if the truth has been discovered and acquired and then alone, that the scientist can look back from this established position towards the prehistory of his science and declare that it consists in part or whole of error, of a tissue of errors, bachelor, even if he recognizes within it partial truths which he exempts or anticipations which he retains, for example, classical political economy, utopian socialism. But this very exemption is only possible because the partial truths and anticipations of the prehistory are now recognized and identified as such on the basis of the finally discovered and established truth. Habemus animum ideum verum, Spinoza. It is just because in and we possess habemus, a true idea that we can also say. There in the next fallacy, what is true is the sign both of itself and of what is false, and the recognition of error and of partial truths depends on starting from what is true. It is still the case, however, that in reducing and extending the break to the simple opposition between science and ideology, even if I did call it recurrent, even perpetual and endless, I uncritically adopted the point of view which science in the singular holds about itself and all too clearly. Not only about itself, or rather, since this formula is still idealist, I adopted the point of view which the agents of scientific practice hold about their own practice and the history of its results, or rather, since this formula is even now still idealist, 16 the point of view of the spontaneous philosophy of scientists, Lenin, who see in the beginnings of science only the finished contrast between before and after, between the truth or truths discovered and the errors rejected. Now I have since tried to show precisely that this spontaneous philosophy of scientists is not spontaneous, and does not all derive from the philosophical imagination of the scientists as such, for it is quite simply a repetition by these scholars and scientists of theses of contradictory tendencies developed publicly by philosophy itself, that is, ultimately, by the philosophy of philosophers. I did then note the existence of the break, but since I treated it in terms of the Marxist disguise of error as ideology, and in spite of all the history and dialectics which I tried to inject 17 into it in categories which in the last resort were rationalist, I could not explain what was the basis of this break, and if deep down I sensed it, I was incapable of grasping it and expressing it. Thus, in fact, I reduced the break between Marxism and bourgeois ideology to the epistemological break, and the antagonism between Marxism and bourgeois ideology to the antagonism between science and ideology. This false position, like any correct one, had its consequences. It might not have done so if I had been satisfied with limiting expression to a few phrases, but I was naive enough or logical enough to make a theoretical argument out of it, and to insert it into a line of argument rigorous enough for me to have to pay the price. I theorized this error of the rationalist opposition between science truths and ideology errors, in spite of all kinds of necessarily inoperative reserves, in terms of three figures which embody and summed up my theoresis as rational speculative tendency. 1. A speculative sketch of the theory of the difference between science in the singular and ideology in the singular in general. 2. The category of theoretical practice insofar as in 124, the existing context intended to reduce philosophical practice to scientific practice. 3. The speculative thesis of philosophy as theory of theoretical practice, which represented the highest point in the development of this theoreticist tendency. Of course, this last thesis on philosophy was not without its secondary effects on the Marxist conception of science. 19. You only need to bring these three theses together to understand the term by which I have named my deviation, theoreticism. Theoreticism here means primacy of theory over practice, one-sided insistence on theory, but more precisely, speculative rationalism. To explain only the pure form, to conceive matters in terms of the contrast between truth and error was in fact rationalism. But it was speculation to want to conceive the contrast between established truths and acknowledged errors within a general theory of science and ideology, and of the distinction between them. Of course, I am simplifying and forcing things to the extreme, reasoning them out to their ultimate conclusions, for our analyses never actually went so far, certainly not reaching these conclusions. But the tendency is undeniable. It was organized, as is often the case, around the manifest form of a word, whose credentials seem beyond doubt, epistemology. Thus we went back to Bachelard, who makes constant use of the term, and also to King Wilhelm, who, though we did not notice it, uses it very little. We, especially I, used it and abused it, and did not know how to control that use. I point this out because a whole number of our readers jumped onto this, reinforcing by their own philosophical inclinations the theoreticist tendency of our essays. What do we understand by epistemology? Literally, the theory of the conditions and forms of scientific practice and of its history in the different concrete sciences. But this definition could be understood in two ways. In a materialist way, which could lead us to study the material, social, political, ideological, and philosophical conditions of the theoretical modes of production and production processes of already existing knowledge. But this would properly fall within the domain of historical materialism. Or in a speculative way, according to which epistemology could lead us to form and develop the theory of scientific practice in the singular, in distinction to other practices. But how did it now differ from philosophy, also defined as theory of theoretical practice? We were now within the domain of dialectical materialism, since philosophy was and is nothing but epistemology. This was a crossroads. If epistemology is philosophy itself, their speculative unity can only reinforce theoreticism. But if epistemology is based on historical materialism, though naturally possessing a minimum of concepts which are its own and specify its object, then it must be placed within it. And at the same time, the illusion and deception involved in the very project must be recognized. It follows, as we have since pointed out, that one must give up this project and criticize the idealism or idealist connotations of all epistemology. Elements of self-criticism 125 of historical materialism, not so much because of the use to which I put the distinction, correcting principle, between science and Marxist philosophy, as because of the way in which I treated it. This relation to philosophy being ultimately treated as theory like science, made of the same stuff with the added capital letter, theory. Very unfortunate consequences resulted as far as the presentation of the modality of Marxist science of historical materialism was concerned, especially in reading capital. It was no doubt on this occasion that the accidental byproduct of my theoreticist tendency, the young pup called structuralism, slipped between my legs. 3. Structuralism. It must be admitted that thus being tempting to flirt coherent, not with the structure and its elements, etc., because all these concepts are in Marx, but for example with the notion of the effectivity of an absent cause, which is, it must be said, much more spinozist than structuralist, in order to account at one and the same time for classical political economy's mistakes for the relations of production, and even for fetishism, but I did not do so. The theory of fetishism always seemed to be ideological, and to herald by the term structural causality, cf. Spinoza, something which is in fact an immense theoretical discovery of Marx, but which can also in the Marxist tradition be termed dialectical materialist causality. Provided that the critical effects are kept under control, these notions are not entirely useless. An example is the notion of the absent cause, but we were not always able to restrain ourselves. 20. In three senses. 1. Political. For example, it is difficult to put your finger on the cause of what some call Stalinism and others the personality cult. The effects were certainly present, but the cause was absent. 2. Scientific. 7. In certain pages of Reading Capital in that spring of 1965, and our flirt with structuralist terminology obviously went beyond acceptable limits, because our critics, with a few exceptions, did not see the irony or parody intended. For we had in mind quite another personage than the honest author of structuralist themes in their vogue, which will soon see who. There were, however, certain indications in our essays which might have been cause for reflection. I have, for example, always wondered how structuralism could swallow and digest categories like determination in the last instance, domination, subordination, to mention only these. But what did it matter? For flagrant reasons of convenience, we were called structuralists, and it was in a coffin marked structuralism that the great family of social democrats from all parties and lands solemnly bore us to our grave and buried us in the name of Marxism, that is, of their Marxism. The staples of earth, of history, of practice, of the dialectic, of the concrete, of life, and of course of man and humanism fell thick and fast for a funeral. It was a nice one. With its rather special characteristic that the years have passed, but the ceremony is still going on. I will say no more about these episodes, for while they are not lacking in interest, it still remains to show why. They can distract us from the essential point, and for a very simple reason. This is that the criticisms which were then addressed to us put things in the wrong order. They called us structuralists, but they said little about our theoreticism. In a sense, they certainly did bury something. The main deviation, theoreticism, was buried beneath the secondary deviation and problematic structuralism. And it is easy. 128. To understand why, the point is that the Marxist thesis of theoretical anti-humanism, the formulation of which may have overlapped with certain good structuralist, anti-psychologist, anti-historicist, reflexes of some important thinkers, Saussure and school, who of course were no Marxists, came directly into conflict with their humanist ideology. What our critics, fascinated by the pseudo-antagonism between structuralism and humanism, and fixed within an antithesis which suited them, could neither see nor understand, was that certain demarcation lines can overlap in this way, can meet at certain sensitive points, and in the philosophical battle you sometimes have to take over a certain key point occupied by others, who may be enemies. In order to make it part of your own defensive positions, it may then change its significance because it will then be part of a different system. That this integration procedure is not guaranteed by anyone in advance, and that it involves risks, precisely those risks to which Marx draws attention when, in book I Capital, he flirts with Hegel and his terminology. That is why things must be put back in their proper order. With hindsight, and benefiting from the criticisms which were made of me, I did not ignore them. Some were very much to the point, and from further thought, I believe that 6 years later I can stand by the terms of my brief but precise self-criticism of 1967 and identify a fundamental theoreticist equal to rational speculative deviation in my first essays from Marx, Reading Capital, and also in Reading Capital, its circumstantial byproduct, a very ambiguous flirtation with structuralist terminology. But since the question of structuralism has arisen, I should like to say a few words about it. This very French speciality is not a philosopher's philosophy. No philosopher gave its name nor its seal, and no philosopher has taken up its vague and changing themes in order to create the unity of a systematic conception out of them. This is not an accident. Structuralism, born of theoretical problems encountered by scientists in their practical work in linguistics from the time of Saussure, in social anthropology from the time of Boas and Levi Strauss, in Elements of Self-Criticism 129, Psychoanalysis, etc. is no philosopher's philosophy, but a philosophy or philosophical ideology of scientists. That its themes are vague and changing, that their boundaries are very ill-defined, does not mean that its general tendency cannot be characterized as rationalist, mechanistic, and above all formalist. Ultimately, and this can be seen in certain of the texts of Levi Strauss and among linguists or other philosophizing logicians, structuralism, or rather, certain structuralists, tends towards the ideal of the production of the real and effective combinatorial elements. But of course, since it uses a whole lot of concepts drawn from existing disciplines, we cannot honestly accuse structuralism of being the first to use the concept of structure. At this point, it is important to remember that structuralism is not a completely worked out philosophy, but a jumble of vague themes which only realizes its ultimate tendency under certain definite conditions. According to what you understand by structuralism, e.g. anti-psychologism, according to what you see in it when you come up against concepts which it has in fact borrowed, and according to whether you follow the extreme logic which inspires it, either you are not a structuralist, or you are one more or less, or you really are one. Now, no one can claim that we ever gave way to the crazy formalist idealism of the idea of producing the real by combinatorial elements. Marx does speak of the combination of elements in the structure of mode of production. But this combination, Vernon, is not a formal combinatory. We expressly pointed that out, purposely. In fact, this is where the most important demarcation line is drawn. For example, there is no question of deducing, therefore predicting, the different possible modes of production by the formal play of the different possible combination of elements. And in particular, it is not possible to construct in this way a priori. The communist mode of production, Marx constantly uses the concept of position and function, and the concept of trade supports, meaning supportive relations, but this is not in order to make concrete realities disappear, to reduce real men to pure functions of supports. It is in order to make mechanisms intelligible by grasping them. To state 130, through their concept, and beginning with these, since this is the only possible way to make intelligible the concrete realities which can only be grasped by making a detour through abstraction. But just because Marx uses the concepts of structure, elements, point, function, trade, relations, determination by relations, forms and transform forms, displacement, etc., that does not make him a structuralist since he is not a formalist. Here the second demarcation line is drawn. Marx concepts are actually used and confined within precise limits, and they are subjected to other concepts which define their limits of validity. The concepts of process, contradiction, tendency, limit, domination, subordination, etc. Here a third demarcation line is drawn, where there are those who have said, or will one day say, that Marxism is distinguished from structuralism by the primacy of the process over the structure. Formally, this is not false, but it is also true of Hegel. If you want to go to the heart of the matter, you must go much deeper. For it is possible to conceive of a formalism of the process, of which bourgeois economists offer us daily a caricature, therefore a structuralism of the process. In truth, what we need to look at is the strange status of a decisive concept in Marxist theory, the concept of tendency, tendential law, law of the tendential process, etc. In the concept of tendency, there appears not only the contradiction internal to the process. Marxism is not structuralism, not because it affirms the primacy of the process over the structure, but because it affirms the primacy of contradiction over the process. Yet even this is not enough, but something else, which politically and philosophically is much more important. The special unique status which makes Marxist science a revolutionary science. Not simply a science which revolutionaries can use in order to make revolution, but a science which they can use because it rests on revolutionary class theoretical positions. Of course, we did not see this last point clearly in 1965, which means that we had not yet appreciated the exceptional importance of the role of the class struggle in Marxist philosophy and in the theoretical apparatus of capital itself. 8. Elements of Self-Criticism 131 is a fact, although we suspected that Marxist science was not a science like the others, we did finally treat it as a science like the others, thus falling into the dangers of theoreticism. But we were never structuralists. 4. On Spinoza. If we never were structuralists, we can now explain why. Why we seem to be, even though we were not, why it came about this strange misunderstanding on the basis of which books were written. We were guilty of an equally powerful and compromising passion, who were Spinozists, in our own way, of course, which was not Brunswick's, and by attributing to the author of the Tractatus Theologico-Politicus and the Ethics a number of theses which he would surely never have acknowledged, though they did not actually contradict him. But to be a heretical Spinozist is almost orthodox Spinozism. If Spinozism can be said to be one of the greatest lessons in heresy that the world has seen. In any case, with very few exceptions, our blessed critics, imbued with conviction and swayed by fashion, never suspected any of this. They took the easy road. It was so simple to join the crowd and shout structuralism. Structuralism was all the rage, and you did not have to read about it in books to be able to talk about it. But you have to read Spinoza and know that he exists. They still exist today. To recognize him, you must at least have heard of him. Let's clarify this business in a few words. After all, to lump structuralism and theoreticism together is hardly satisfactory or illuminating, because something in this combination is always hidden, formalism, which happens to be essential to structuralism. On the other hand, to bring structuralism and Spinozism together may clarify certain points and certain limits as far as the theoreticist deviation is concerned. But then comes the important objection. Why did we make reference to Spinoza when all that was required was for us simply to be Marxists? Why this detour? Was it necessary, and what price did we have to pay for it? The fact is, we did make the detour, and we paid dearly. But that is not the question. The question is, what is the meaning of the question? What can it mean to say that we should simply be Marxists in philosophy? In fact, I found out, and I was not. Elements of Self-Criticism 133. The only one, but the reasons which I gave at the time are still almost all relevant. Just how hard it was in practice to be a Marxist in philosophy. Having for years banged our heads against the wall of enigmatic texts and wretched commentaries on them, we had to decide to step back and make a detour. In itself, nothing scandalous. It is not simply accidental personal factors which are relevant here. We all begin from a given point of view, which we do not choose, and to recognize it and understand it, we need to move on from this point at the cost of so much effort. It is the work of philosophy itself which is at stake here, for it requires steps back and detours. What else did Marx do? Throughout his endless research, go back to Hegel in order to rid himself of Hegel and to find his own way. What else but rediscover Hegel in order to distinguish himself from Hegel and to define himself? Could this really have been a purely personal affair, fascination, rejection, then a return to a youthful passion? Something working in Marx which went beyond the individual level. The need for every philosophy to make a detour via other philosophies in order to define itself and grasp itself in terms of its difference, its division. In reality, and whatever its pretensions, no philosophy is given the simple absolute fact of its presence, least of all Marxist philosophy, which in fact never made the claim. It only exists insofar as it works out its difference from other philosophies, from those which, by similarity or contrast, help it sense, perceive, and grasp itself, so that it can take up its own positions. Lenin's attitude to Hegel is an example, working to separate out from the debris and useless rubbish those elements which might help in the effort to work out a differential definition. We are only now beginning to see a little more clearly into this necessary procedure. How can it be denied that this procedure is indispensable to every philosophy, including Marxist philosophy itself? Marx, it has often been pointed out, was not content with making a single detour via Hegel. He also constantly and explicitly, in his insistent use of certain categories, measured himself against Aristotle, that great thinker of the forms. And how can it be denied that these detours, indispensable as they were, nevertheless had to be paid for, that we do not yet know, though we have our suspicions, what the theoretical cost really is, and that we can only find out by ourselves working on these detours. This, keeping the matter, of course, in proportion, is how we approach Spinoza, courageously or imprudently, as you prefer. In our subjective history, and in the existing ideological and theoretical conjuncture, this detour became a necessity. Why? If a reason, one single and therefore fundamental reason must be given, here it is. We made a detour via Spinoza in order to improve our understanding of Marxist philosophy. To be precise, since Marxist materialism forced us to think out the meaning of the necessary detour via Hegel, we made a detour via Spinoza in order to clarify our understanding of Marxist detour via Hegel. A detour, therefore, but with regard to another detour. At stake was something enormously important. The better understanding of how and under what conditions the dialectic borrowed from the most speculative chapters of the great logic of absolute idealism, borrowed conditionally on inversion and demystification, which also have to be understood, can be materialist and critical. Now this astonishing and enigmatic game of maneuvers between idealism and materialism had already taken place once in history in other forms with which Hegel typically identified 2 centuries earlier. Under astonishing conditions, how could this philosophy of Spinoza have been materialist and critical? A philosophy terrifying to its own time, which began not with the spirit, not with the world, but with God, and never deviated from its path, whatever form or appearance of idealism and dogmatism it might take on. In Spinoza's anticipation of Hegel, we tried to see and thought that we had succeeded in finding out under what conditions the philosophy might, in what it said or did not say, and in spite of its form. Or on the contrary, just because of its form, that is because of the theoretical apparatus of its theses, in short because of Elements of Self-Criticism 135. Its positions produce effects useful to materialism. Thus, some light will be thrown on what philosophy really is, therefore on what philosophy is, and on materialism. And then other things will begin to become clear. I mentioned Hegel and great logic, and not without reason. Hegel begins with logic, God before the creation of the world. But as logic is alienated in nature, which is alienated in spirit, which reaches its end in logic, there is a circle which turns within itself, without end and without beginning. The first words of the beginning of the logic tell us, being is nothingness, the positive beginning is negated, there is no beginning, therefore no origin. Spinoza for his part begins with God, but in order to deny him as being, subject, in the universality of his own infinite power, is equal to Torah. Thus Spinoza, like Hegel, rejects every thesis of origin, transcendence, or an unknowable world, even resides within the absolute interiority of the essence. But with this difference, for the Spinozist negation is not the Hegelian negation, that within the void of the Hegelian being there exists, through the negation of the negation, the contemplation of the dialectic of telos equal to goal, a dialectic which reaches its goals in history. Those of the spirit, subjective, objective, and absolute presence and transparency. But Spinoza, because he begins with God, never gets involved with any goal, which even when it makes way forward in immanence, is still favored in thesis of transcendence. The detour via Spinoza thus allowed us to make out by contrast a radical quality lacking in Hegel. In the negation of the negation, in the ophibone equal to transcendence which conserves what it transcends, it allowed us to discover the goal, the special form and sight of the mystification of the Hegelian dialectic. Is it necessary to add that Spinoza refused to use the notion of a goal, but explained it as a necessary and therefore well-founded illusion? In the appendix to book I of the Ethics and the Tractatus Theologico Politicus, we find in fact was undoubtedly the first theory of ideology ever thought out, with its three characteristics: its imaginary reality, its internal inversion, its center, the illusion of the subject. An abstract theory of ideology, it will be said, I agree, but try to find something better before Marx, who himself said little on the subject, except in the German ideology, where he said too much. And above all, it is not sufficient to sell out the letter of theory, we must also see how it operates, that is, since it is always an apparatus of theses, what it refuses and what it accepts. Spinoza's theory rejected every illusion about ideology, and especially about the number one ideology of that time, religion, by identifying it as imaginary. But at the same time, it refused to treat ideology as a simple error, or as naked ignorance, because it based the system of this imaginary phenomenon on the relation of men to the world expressed by the state of their bodies. This materialism of the imaginary opened the way to a surprising conception of the first level of knowledge. Not at all, in fact, as a piece of knowledge, but as the material world of men as they live it, that of their concrete and historical existence. Is this a false interpretation? In certain respects, perhaps, but it is possible to read Spinoza in such a way. In fact, his categories do function daringly in this way in the history of the Jewish people, of its prophets, of its religion, and of its politics, where the primacy of politics over religion stands out clearly. In the first work, which after Machiavelli offered a theory of history, but this theory of the imaginary went still further. By its radical criticism of the central category of imaginary illusion, the subject, it reached into the very heart of bourgeois philosophy, which since the 14th century had been built on the foundation of the legal ideology of the subject. Spinoza's resolute anti-Cartesianism consciously directs itself to this point, and the famous critical tradition made no mistake here. On this point, too, Spinoza anticipated Hegel, but he went further. For Hegel, who criticized all these theses of subjectivity, nevertheless found a place for the subject, not only in the form of the becoming subject of substance, by which he reproaches Spinoza for wrongly taking things no further than substance, but in the interiority of the telos of the process without a subject, which by virtue of the negation of the negation realizes the designs and destiny of the idea. Thus Spinoza shows the secret. Elements of self-criticism 137, alliance between subject and goal, which mystifies the Hegelian dialectic. I could go on. I will, however, deal with one last theme, that of the famous verum index sui e falsi. I said that it seemed to us to allow a recurrent conception of the break, but it did not only have that meaning. In affirming that what is true is the sign of itself and what is false, Spinoza avoided any problematic which depended on criterion of truth. If you claim to judge the truth of something by some criterion, you face the problem of the criterion of this criterion, since it also must be true, and so on to infinity. Whether the criterion is external, relation of adequacy between mind and thing, in the Aristotelian tradition, or internal, Cartesian self-evidence. In either case, the criterion can be rejected, for it only represents a form of jurisdiction, a judge will authenticate and guarantee the validity of what is true. And at the same time, Spinoza avoids the temptation of talking about the truth. As a good nominalist, nominalism, as Marx recognized, could then be the antechamber of materialism. Spinoza only talks about what is true. In fact, the idea of truth and the idea of the jurisdiction of a criterion always go together, because the function of the criterion is to identify the truth of what is true. Once he has set aside the idealist temptations of the theory of knowledge, Spinoza then says that what is true identifies itself, not as a presence but as a product. In the double sense of the term product, result of the work of a process which discovers it as it emerges in its own production. Now this position is not unrelated to the criterion of practice, a major thesis of Marxist philosophy. For this Marxist criterion is not exterior but interior to practice. And since this practice is a process, Lenin insisted on this. Practice is not an absolute criterion. Only the process is conclusive. The criterion is no form of jurisdiction. Items of knowledge, consciousness, emerge in the process of their production. There again, by contrast between them, Spinoza allows us to perceive Hegel's mistake. Hegel certainly did rule out any criterion of truth by considering what is true as interior to his process. But he restored the credential of the truth as telos within the process itself, since each moment is only ever the truth of the moment which precedes it. When in a provocative formula which took up Lenin's words, Marx's doctrine is all powerful because it is true, directed against the dominant pragmatism, and every idealist idea of jurisdiction, I define knowledge as production, and affirm the interiority of the forms of scientificity to theoretical practice. I base myself on Spinoza, not in order to provide the answer, but to counter the dominant idealism and via Spinoza, to open a road where materialism might, if it runs the risk, find something other than words. It is understandable that behind these reasonings, we found other theses in Spinoza which supported them, and that we put these to use too, even at the cost of overdoing things. Spinoza helped us to see that the concept subject will constitute the mystifying side of the Hegelian dialectic, but is it enough to get rid of them in order to introduce the materialist dialectic of Marxism by a simple process of subtraction and inversion? That is not at all sure, because free of these fetters, the new dialectic can revolve endlessly in the void of idealism, unless it is rooted in new forms, unknown to Hegel, and which can confer on it the status of materialism. Now, what does Marx demonstrate in the poverty of philosophy, in the contribution to a critique of political economy and capital? Precisely that the functioning of the materialist dialectic is dependent on the apparatus of a kind of topography, topik. I am alluding to the famous metaphor of the edifice, in which, in order to grasp the reality of social formation, Marx installs an infrastructure, the economic structure or base, and above it, a superstructure. I am alluding to the theoretical problems posed by this apparatus, the determination, in the last instance, of the superstructure, by the economy, the infrastructure, the relative autonomy of the elements of the superstructure, their action and reaction on the infrastructure, the difference in the unity between determination and domination, etc. And I am alluding to the decisive problem within the infrastructure, for example, of the elements of self-criticism 139. Unity of the relations of production and productive forces under the dominance of the relations of production. Therefore, the problem of the determination by relations on the one hand, you find the trace of this problem everywhere in Marx CF. The concepts of structural elements, of position, function, support, etc. And on the other hand, the problem of domination. Now, we are not talking here about a few formulae which might slip from Marx's pen by accident, but about a necessity, something which expresses a position essential to materialism and which must be taken seriously. From where do you see Hegel thinking within the structure of the topography? It is not that Hegel does not propose topographical distinctions. To take only one example, he does indeed talk about abstract right, subjective right, morality, and objective right, the family, civil society, the state, and talks about them as spheres. But Hegel only ever talks about spheres in order to describe them as spheres within spheres, about circles in order to describe them as circles within circles. He only advances topographical distinctions in order later to suspend them, to erase them, and to transcend them all, since their truth always, for each of them, lies beyond itself. We know the consequences of this idealist retreat. It is abstract right which comes first. Morality is the truth of law. The family, civil society, and the state are the truth of morality. And within this last sphere, civil society, let us say, Marx's infrastructure, is the truth of the family, and the state is the truth of civil society. The offibung is at work here, offibung of every topography, but there's worse. The spheres which have been introduced are arranged in order which allows the greatest possibility of this retreat. All the spheres of the philosophy of right are only spheres of the law, the existence of liberty, and in order to demonstrate it, Hegel buries the economy between the family and the state after abstract right and morality. This allows us to glimpse what might come of the dialectic abandoned to the absolute delirium of the negation of the negation. It is a dialectic which, starting from being equal to nothingness, itself produces by the negation of the negation. 140. All the spheres in which it operates, of which it is a dialectic, is a dialectic which produces its own spheres of existence. It is, to put it bluntly, a dialectic which produces its own material substance. A thesis which faithfully transposes and translates the fundamental thesis of bourgeois ideology is the capitalist labor which has produced capital. It is now possible to understand the material stamp of the Marxist topography. The fact that the metaphor of the structure is a metaphor matters little. In philosophy, you can only think through metaphors. But through this metaphor, we come up against theoretical problems which have nothing metaphorical about them. By the use of this topography, Marx introduces real, distinct spheres which only fit together through the mediation of the offibung. Below is the economic infrastructure, above the superstructure, with its different determinations. The Hegelian order is overthrown. The state is always up above. Law is no longer either primary or omnipresent, and the economy is no longer squeezed between the family and the state. Its truth. The position of the infrastructure designates an unavoidable reality. The determination in the last instance by the economic. Because of this, the relation between infrastructure and superstructure no longer has anything to do with the Hegelian relation. The truth of the state is indeed always up above, but not as the truth of the economy. In direct contradiction to a relation of truth, it actually produces a relation of mystification, based in exploitation, which is made possible by force and by ideology. The conclusion is obvious. The position of the Marxist topography protects the dialectic against the delirious idealist notion of producing its own material substance. It imposes on it, on the contrary, a forced recognition of material conditions of its own efficacy. These conditions are related to the definition of the sites, the spheres to their limits, to their mode of determination and totality of the social formation. If it wants to grasp these realities, the materialist dialectic cannot rest satisfied with the residual forms of the Hegelian dialectic. It needs other forms which cannot be found in the Hegelian dialectic. It is here that Spinoza, Elements of Self-Criticism 141, served us as a sometimes direct, sometimes very indirect reference. In its effort to grasp a non-immanent, that is non-transcendent, not simply transitive, a la Descartes, nor expressive, a la Leibniz causality, which would account for the action of the whole on its parts, and of the parts on the whole, an unbounded whole, which is only the active relation between its parts. In this effort, Spinoza served us, though indirectly, as a first and almost unique guide. A Marxist cannot, of course, make a detour via Spinoza without paying for it, for the adventure is perilous, and whatever you do, you cannot find in Spinoza what Hegel gave to Marx. Contradiction. To take only one example, this theory of ideology and this interpretation of the first level of knowledge as a concrete and historical world of men living in the materiality of the imaginary led me directly to the conception to which the German ideology can lend support. Materiality, imaginary, inversion, subject. But I saw ideology as the universal element of historical existence, and I did not at that time go any further. Thus I disregarded the difference between the regions of ideology and the antagonistic class tendencies which run through them, divide them, regroup them, and bring them into opposition. The absence of contradiction was taking its toll. The question of the class struggle in ideology did not appear. Through the gap created by this theory of ideology slipped theoreticism, science, ideology, and so on. But in spite of everything, it seems to me that the benefit was not nil. We wanted to understand Marx's detour via Hegel. We made a detour via Spinoza, looking for arguments for materialism. We found some, and through this detour, unexpected, not unsuspected by many, we were able, if not to pose or to articulate, at least to raise, as you might raise an animal, unexpectedly disturbing it, some questions which otherwise might have remained dormant, sleeping the peaceful sleep of the eternally obvious in the closed pages of Capital. While waiting for others either to show the futility of these questions or to answer them more correctly, we shall continue, you can bet, to be accused of structuralism. 5. On tendencies in philosophy. I spoke earlier about a theoreticist error, now I want to speak of a theoreticist tendency. I use the first term in order not to shirk my duty of fair myself in any way. But the second, if I may say so, has even more damaging implications because it is correct, an erroneous tendency, or more correctly still, a wrongly oriented, therefore deviant tendency. A deviation. For you can ultimately only talk about an error in philosophy, from a Marxist point of view, if you think of philosophy itself in the categories of rationalism, truth, error. That is to say, according to non-Marxist philosophical theses. If I simply talk about my philosophical error without rectifying this expression by the use of the terms tendency and deviation, I would fall into the trap of the rationalist antithesis between truth and error, and would then be denouncing my past error in the name of the truth which I now possess, without knowing why I was in the present of it. And without regard to the very special dialectic which is at work in the practice of philosophy, which is not a science but class struggle in theory. Let's advance the thesis. Strictly speaking, all theoretical errors are scientific ones, and the recurrent relation links the science to its own prehistory, which remains a contemporary and always accompanies it. Its history's alter ego. In philosophy, we are dealing with tendencies which confront each other on the existing theoretical battlefield. These tendencies group themselves in the last instance around the antagonism between idealism and materialism, and they exist in the form of philosophies which realize the tendencies. Their variations and their combinations as a function of class theoretical positions in which it is the social practices, political, ideological, scientific, etc., which are at stake. Thus, in order to mark this distinction, you have to introduce a category which plays an all-important role in Marxist political practice and theoretical reflection on philosophical theses and tendencies. The category of correctness. That elements of self-criticism 143 is why I propose the express use of this category to characterize the special nature of philosophical propositions, theses, or positions. A position which is marked out thus takes a position by occupying a position on the basis of and against other positions, saying philosophy states propositions which are theses. A thesis is said to be correct or not. You can say the same of tendencies, which are the effective apparatus of theses. A tendency is correct or deviant. It follows the correct line or more or less departs from the correct line, even to the point of becoming antagonistic to it. Correctness does not fall from the sky. It has to be worked for, and involves considerable effort, and it must be continually reworked. There must be adjustment. There's no doubt that philosophy also has a theoretical function. The question is, of what kind and under what conditions? You would need an extensive treatment of the subject in order to answer this question. The point that I wanted to bring home, and which seems to me, as things are, decisive for Marxism, is not only the mixed up character of the theoretical and practical functions of philosophy, but the primacy of the practical function over the theoretical function of philosophy itself. It was to mark the decisive importance of this position, thesis, and to clarify the primacy of the practical function that before the thesis. Philosophy is, in the last instance, class struggle in theory. Correct theses, correct tendency, deviation. These categories allow us to give a quite different account than the rationalist one of what happens in philosophy. It is not a whole made up homogeneous proposition submitted to the verdict, truth or error. It is a system of positions, theses, and through these positions, itself occupies positions in the theoretical class struggle. It takes up these positions in the struggle with reference to the enemy and against the enemy. But the enemy is also not a unified body. The philosophical battlefield is thus not a reproduction in the form of opposed systems of the simple rationalist antithesis between truth and error. It is not a question of, on the one hand, a homogeneous good side and on the other a bad side. The positions of the two sides are usually mixed up together. Not all enemies are equally enemies, and the key of the struggle is not always easy to identify the main enemy and to recognize that there also exist secondary enemies, which may be fighting for old positions as if the front line had not changed, or for partial or misplaced stakes. It is therefore necessary to fight, if not everywhere at the same time, at least on several fronts, taking account both of the principal tendency and of the secondary tendencies, both of the principal stake and of the secondary stakes, while all the time working to occupy correct positions. All this will obviously not come about through the miracle of consciousness capable of dealing with all problems with perfect clarity. There is no miracle. A Marxist philosopher able to intervene in the theoretical class struggle must start out from a position already recognized and established in the theoretical battles of the history of the labor movement. But he can only understand the existing state of the theoretical and ideological terrain if he comes to know it both theoretically and practically in and through struggle. It may be that in the course of his endeavors, even when he starts out from already established positions in order to attack open or disguise enemies, he will take up positions which in the course of struggle are shown to be deviant positions, out of step with the correct line which he is aiming for. There is nothing astonishing in that. The essential thing is that he should then recognize his deviation and rectify his positions in order to make them more correct. But let's go further. It is true that philosophy, class struggle, and theory is, in the last instance, this interposed conflict between tendencies, idealism, and materialism, which Engels, Lenin, and Mao spoke about. Then, since this struggle does not take place in the sky, but on the theoretical ground, and since this ground changes its features in the course of history, and since at the same time the question of what is at stake also takes on new forms, you can therefore say that the idealist and materialist tendencies which confront one another in all philosophical struggles on the field of battle are never realized in pure form in any philosophy. In every philosophy, even when it represents explicitly and coherently as possible one of the two great antagonistic elements of self-criticism 145. Tendencies, there exist manifest or latent elements of the other tendency, and how could it be otherwise if the role of every philosophy is to try to besiege the enemy's positions, therefore to interiorize the conflict in order to master it? Now this mastery may escape precisely whoever is trying to establish it. For a simple reason, the fate of philosophical theses does not depend only on the position on which they stand, because the class struggle in theory is always secondary in relation to the class struggle in general, because there is something outside philosophy which constitutes its philosophy, even though philosophy itself certainly does not want to recognize the fact. That is why both in order to talk about and in order to judge philosophy, it is correct to start out from Mao's categories on contradiction. Now Mao talks about all about politics, even in his philosophical texts, and in this he is correct, more so than might be imagined. And he gives reasons for believing what Engels and Lenin suggested, which is the theoretical foundation of the Leninist materialist reading, not only of Hegel, the absolute idealist, but of all philosophers without exception, including Engels, Lenin, and Mao themselves, that in every philosophy, in every philosophical position, you must consider the tendency as contradiction, and within this contradiction, the principal tendency and the secondary tendency of the contradiction, and within each tendency, the principal aspect, the secondary aspect, and so on. But it is not a question of an infinite and formal platonic division. What must be understood is how this division is fixed in a series of meaning points, in which the political theoretical conjuncture defines the central meaning point, the decisive link, and the secondary meaning points. Or, to change the metaphor, the principal front and the secondary fronts, the main point of attack and defense, the secondary points of attack and defense. This is indeed in its present form very schematic and perhaps even scholastic. Distinguo, Similiar's philosopher, thus caricaturing division, a major operation in philosophical practice, which by its demarcations realizes the tendency in the struggle by transforming it into simple distinctions which establish objects and essences. Lenin's and Mao's distinctions, however, are actually not distinctions which determine the result, but divisions, the lines which open up the path. On this basis, work can begin. The tools are of course always open to improvement, a better understanding of what happens in philosophy and in a philosophy. Why these general remarks? In order to be able to characterize more adequately than before the tendency of my first essays, as far as the principal tendency is concerned, and in spite of the severe criticism which I must make of them, I think they do in their own way, with the available means and in a precise conjuncture. Defend positions useful to Marxist theory and to the proletarian class struggle against the most threatening forms of bourgeois ideology, humanism, historicism, pragmatism, evolutionism, philosophical idealism, etc. But as far as their secondary, theorized tendency is concerned, these same essays express a deviation harmful to Marxist positions in the class struggle. But it is not enough to talk about balance on the one side or on the other. You must at the same time reassess the effect of the whole, that is, the effects of each tendency on the other and the global result. You can then talk about a contradictory unity between principal, basically correct tendency, and the secondary deviant tendency. Within this unity, the theorized tendency has not been without consequences for the theses of the principal tendency. The more politically oriented of my critics saw this. The class struggle does not figure in its own right in Marx and capital. It only makes an appearance when I talk about the practical and social function of ideology. And of course, this is certainly the biggest mistake I made in my essays on Marxist philosophy. There is no mention of class, position in theory. But on the other hand, one can also not ignore, within their contradiction, the effects of the principal, correct tendency on the secondary deviant tendency. Certain of my theorized theses, modified by their relation to the principal tendency, and especially those drawn from Spinoza, also play a role in the struggle. It is not my place to say what the result of this enterprise was, what problems were brought to light, which others. Elements of self-criticism 147 were clarified what categories and concepts were proposed, which perhaps allowed us a better understanding of what is offered and reserved to us by the extraordinary theory bearing the name of Marx. But I think that I can say that a front was opened, and that even if it was not held and defended all along the line in the same manner, with equally correct arguments, it remains true that in its essentials, as far as the principal tendency was concerned, it was held on the basis of dialectical materialist principles. My opponents did certainly recognize the weak points, and even if they were not able to take an overall view, for some of them this did not matter, they did turn to their advantage those details which could be so used, and the rest they invented. It was a fair fight, but what is more important, certain of the theses which we attacked were forced to retreat, for example, the humanist and historicist theses, etc. But now that I've learned a lesson of practice, and knowing as Lenin said, it is more serious not to recognize an error than simply to commit it, I can look to the past. Reassess my theses in the light of the contradiction which haunted them, and sort things out. There are theses which obviously must be got rid of because in their existing state they are false, wrongly oriented, and therefore harmful. For example, the definition of philosophy as theory of theoretical practice seems to me quite indefensible and must be done away with. And it is not enough to suppress a formula. It is a question of rectifying within their theoretical apparatus all the effects and echoes of its reverberation. In the same way, the category of theoretical practice, which was very useful in other contexts, is nevertheless dangerous in its ambiguity, since it uses one and the same term to cover both scientific practice and philosophical practice, and thus induces the idea that philosophy can be a science. But in a context which does not cause the ambiguity to become speculative confusion, this category may still, on occasion, play a role, since it serves as a materialist reminder to theory of practice. As far as the antithesis science ideology is concerned, I said enough about it for it to be understood that in its general, rationalist speculative form, it must be rejected. And reworked from another point of view which must split it up into the elements of the complex process of the production of knowledge, where the class conflicts of the practical ideologies combine with the theoretical ideologies, the existing sciences and philosophy. But there are other theses and categories which can, even in their old form, render theoretical and political services in struggle and in research, though they may sometimes have to be displaced. Even if imperceptibly, lean in shades of opinion and insert it into a more correct theoretical apparatus, a better adjusted one. I will not go through all the examples now. Anyone who wishes may work out the proof. The whole point is that the guide marks of the theoretical class struggle must be taken seriously, so that it is easier to recognize and to know the class enemy, that is, on the existing theoretical terrain, which itself must be better grasped, the philosophical enemies, and possible to take up more correct theoretical class positions in order to hold and defend a better adjusted front. What was essentially lacking in my first essays was the class struggle and its effects in theory. To realize this is to allow certain categories which I began with to be replaced in more correct positions. An example to return to for a moment is the famous break. I want to keep it in service, using the same term, but displacing it, or rather assigning a place on the firm ground of the front of dialectical materialism, instead of letting it float dangerously in the atmosphere of perilously idealist rationalism. But what does it mean to talk about assigning a place in a better adjusted apparatus? It means above all to recognize, which I failed to do, that if there is indeed something at stake here in connection with those specific and indisputable facts which the break is the index. This break is itself not the last word in the affair. For not only must it be admitted that the break does not explain itself, since it actually only records the simple fact that certain symptoms and effects were produced by a certain theoretical event. The historical appearance of the new science, it must also be said that this event in theoretical history has to be explained by the conjunction of the material, technical, social, political elements of self-criticism 149 and ideological conditions which determine it. And among these conditions, the most important in certain cases, and indisputably in the case of Marx, is the intervention of class theoretical positions, or what we call the intervention of philosophical instance. In the case of Marxist theory, the event which can be called a break, as I defined it above, in fact seems to have been produced like a fatherless child by the meaning of what Lenin called the three main sources, or, to use a more accurate term, by the intersection of conjunction against the background of the class struggles of 1840-48, in which the class struggle between bourgeoisie and proletariat was more important than the historical class struggle between the feudal class and the bourgeoisie of lines of demarcation and extremely complex theoretical and ideological lineages which aimlessly and each for itself crisscross in the resultant field of their intersection. Now it is possible and necessary to distinguish as dominant in this contradictory process what we might call the change in the class theoretical position of the historical individual Marx Engels. This change of class theoretical position took place under the influence of the political class struggle and other lessons in philosophy. This claim is not at all strange if, as I suggest, philosophy really is in the last instance class struggle in theory. I must insist on this point. In fact, it takes me directly back to my first essays. At that time I said, the essential question is that of Marxist philosophy. I still think so. But if I did see, in 1960-65, what the essential question was, I now see that I did not understand it very well. I defined philosophy as theory of theoretical practice, thus on. Bearing on it, by the use of the single term, theory, the same status as science. In theoretically overestimating philosophy, I underestimated it politically, as those who correctly accused me of not bringing in the class struggle were quick to point out. Another proof of this is the introduction in Lenin and philosophy, where I did rectify the essential point of my deviation in proposing a new definition of philosophy, politics, and theory of the system of double. Equal representation at the level of the sciences and politics and the thesis borrowed, not accidentally from Hegel. Philosophy always rises when dusk has fallen, in a historical period following a unique event, not the event of a political ideological revolution, but the event of the birth or modification of the sciences themselves. This was still an improvised solution, that is, a semi-compromise, which while making some allowance for the events of the history of the sciences and philosophical reactions to them, did not really do them justice, because the priori did them justice too well. If I now propose a different formula, philosophy is in the last instance class struggle in theory. It is precisely in order to be able to devote the class struggle, the last instance, and the other social practices among the scientific practice, their due in their relation to philosophy. On this basis, new fields of research are opened up on the evolution of the young Marx. If I were asked to sum up in a few words the essential thesis which I wanted to defend in my philosophical essays, I would say Marx founded a new science, the science of history. I would add the scientific discovery is a theoretical and political event unprecedented in human history, and I would specify this event is irreversible, a theoretical event. Before Marx, what one could call the history continent was occupied by ideological conceptions derived from the religious, moral, or legal political sphere. In short, by philosophies of history. These claims offer a representation of what happens in societies and in history. In fact, they only succeed in masking within the story and its leading concepts the mechanisms which really do govern societies and history. This unification was not an accident, it was linked to their function. These conceptions were in fact only the theoretical detachment of practical ideologies, religion, morality, legal ideology, politics, etc., whose essential function is to reproduce the relations of production equal to exploitation in class societies. Marx opened the history continent by breaking these ideological conceptions. He opened it by the principles of historical materialism, by capital and his other works. He opened it, for as Lenin says, Marx only laid the cornerstones of an immense domain which his successors continue to exploit, and the vast extent of the field and the new problems posed to man and unremitting effort. A political event, for Marx's scientific discovery has been since the very beginning and has become more and more the object and the state of a fierce and implacable class struggle. When he demonstrated that human history is the history of class societies, therefore of exploitation and class domination, and thus finally of class struggle. When he demonstrated the mechanisms of exploitation and capitalist domination, Marx collided directly with the interests of the ruling classes. Their ideologists let fly against him, and even now are still intensifying their attacks. But the exploited classes, and above all workers, recognized their truth in Marx's scientific theory. They adopted it and made it a weapon in their revolutionary class struggle. This recognition bears the name in history. It is the union, or as Lenin said, the fusion of the labor movement and Marxist theory. This encounter, this union, this fusion, have never taken place spontaneously or easily. For the labor movement, which existed long before the appearance and spread of Marxist theory, came under the influence of petty bourgeois ideological conceptions like utopian socialism, anarchism, etc. A great deal of work and a very long ideological and political struggle were needed before the union could take place and acquire historical existence. The very conditions of its realization and existence mean that this union cannot be a once and for all victory. It does not exist in isolation from the class struggle, and must be incessantly defended in the course of their class struggle against the deviations and crises which threaten it. The evidence is structure yesterday of the Second International, and today the split in the international communist movement. One fact is indisputable. For 100 years, the whole history of humanity has depended on the union of the labor movement and of the oppressed peoples and Marxist theory, which became Marxist-Leninist theory. We only need to step back a little to see that, in different but convergent forms, this reality now easily dominates the scene of world history. The struggle of the proletariat and the oppressed peoples against imperialism. This fact is irreversible. Two, we can satisfy ourselves with these remarks, but if we, elements of self-criticism 153, wish, whatever our place in the struggle, to advance the exploration of the history continent, or what in one precise respect, comes to the same thing, to arrive at an active understanding of the forms of present-day proletarian class struggle, we must go further. We must ask ourselves, under what conditions was Marx's scientific discovery possible? This question may look like a detour, but it is not. It may look like a theoretical question. In fact, it has political implications which are clearly vital. Two, in my earlier essays, I showed that Marx's scientific discovery represented a break, could be a rupture, with previous ideological conceptions of history. What did I do? What did I do when I spoke of a break between science and ideology? What did I do when I spoke of ideology? I developed a formal analysis whose significance must now be indicated and whose limits must be traced. Above all, I arrived at a conclusion. I took cognizance of a fact, of the theoretical event, the appearance of the scientific theory of history in a domain hitherto occupied by conceptions which I called ideological. Let's leave aside for a moment this description, ideological. I showed that there existed an irreducible difference between Marx's theory and these conceptions. To prove it, I compared their conceptual content and their mode of functioning, their conceptual content. I showed that Marx replaced the old basic concepts, which I called notions, of the philosophies of history with absolutely new, unheard of concepts, not to be found in the old conceptions. Where the philosophies of history talked about man, the economic subject, need, the system of needs, civil society, alienation, theft, injustice, spirit, liberty, where they talked about society itself, Marx began to talk about mode of production, social formation, infrastructure, superstructure, ideologies, classes, class struggle, etc. I concluded that there was no continuity, even in the case of classical political economy, between the system of Marxist concepts and the system of pre-Marxist notions. This absence of a relation of continuity, this theoretical difference, this dialectical leap, I called an epistemological break, to pure rupture. Their mode of functioning, I showed that in practice Marxist theory functioned quite differently from the old pre-Marxist conceptions. It seems to me that the system of basic concepts of Marxist theory functioned like the theory of the science. As a basic conceptual apparatus open to the infinitude, Lenin of its object, that is, designed ceaselessly to pose and confront new problems and ceaselessly to produce new pieces of knowledge. Let us say, it functioned as original truth for the endless conquest of new knowledge, itself capable in certain conjunctures of renewing its first truth. In comparison, it appeared that the basic theory of the old conceptions, far from functioning as a provisional truth for the production of new pieces of knowledge, actually try and practice to operate as the truth of history, as complete, definitive, and absolute knowledge of history, in short, as a closed system, excluding development because lacking object in the scientific sense of the term, and thus only ever finding in reality its own mirror reflection. Here too, I concluded that there was a radical difference between Marxist theory and earlier conceptions, and I talked about the epistemological break, coup pure rupture. Finally, I called these earlier conceptions ideological, and understood the epistemological break, the proof of which I established, as a theoretical discontinuity between Marxist science on the one hand, and its ideological prehistory on the other. I should specify, not between science in general and ideology in general, but between Marxist science and its own ideological prehistory. But what allow me to say that the pre-Marxist conceptions were ideological. Or, what comes to the same thing, what sense did I give to the term ideology? An ideological conception does not carry the inscription ideology on its forehead or on its heart, whatever sense you give to the word. On the contrary, it presents itself as the truth. It can only be identified from outside, after the event, from the standpoint of the existence of Marxist science. Elements of self-criticism 155 of history, I repeat, not simply from the standpoint of the existence of Marxist science as science, but from the standpoint of Marxist science as the science of history. In fact, every science, as soon as it arises in history theories and shown to be science, causes its own theoretical prehistory, with which it breaks, to appear as quite erroneous, false, untrue. That is how it treats it in practice, and this treatment is a moment in its history. Nevertheless, there always exist philosophers who will draw edifying conclusions, who will draw out of this recurrent retrospective, practice an idealist theory of the opposition between truth and error, between knowledge and ignorance, and even provided that the term ideology is taken in a non-Marxist sense, between science and ideology in general. This effect of recurrence, retrospection, is also a factor in the case of Marxist science. When this science appears, it necessarily shows that its own prehistory as erroneous, but at the same time it also shows that it is ideological in the Marxist sense of the term. Better, it shows that its own prehistory as erroneous because ideological, and in practice treats it as such. Not only does it indicate error, it explains the historical reasons for error. Thus, it rules out the exploitation of the break between science and prehistory as an ideal synthesis of truth and error, of knowledge and ignorance. On what principle does this difference, this unprecedented advantage rest? On the fact that the science founded by Marx is the science of the history of social formations. Because of this, it gives for the first time a scientific content to the concept of ideology. Ideologies are not pure illusions, they are the bodies of representations existing in institutions and practices. They figure in the superstructure and are rooted in class struggle. If the science founded by Marx shows that the theoretical conceptions of its own prehistory is ideological, it is therefore not simply to denounce them as false. It is also to point out that they claim to be true and were accepted and continue to be accepted as true, and to show why this is so. If the theoretical conceptions with which Marx broke, let's say, to simplify matters, the philosophies of history deserve to be called ideological, it is because they were theoretical detachments of practical ideologies, which perform necessary functions in the reproduction of relations of production within class society. If this is true, then the break between Marxist science and ideological prehistory refers to something quite different from the theory of the difference between science and ideology, to something quite different from epistemology. It refers us on the one hand to a theory of the superstructure, in which the state and ideology figure. I tried to say a few words about this in the article on ideological state apparatuses. It refers us on the other hand to a theory of the material production, social division of labor, class struggle, ideological and philosophical conditions of the process of production of knowledge. These two theories are based in the last instance on historical materialism. But if this is true, Marxist scientific theory itself must answer the question of the conditions of its own eruption in the field of ideological conceptions with which it broke. I, the great Marxist, Marx above all, Engels and Lenin, certainly felt it was not enough to know the appearance of new science, but an analysis must also be provided, in conformity with the principles of Marxist science, of the conditions of its appearance. The first elements of this analysis can be found in Engels and Lenin, in the form of the three sources of Marxism: German philosophy, English political economy, and French socialism. But this old metaphor of sources, which contains in itself idealist notions, origin, interiority of the current, etc., must not be used in error. What is quite remarkable about this classical theory is first, that it attempts to understand Marx's discovery not in terms of individual or original genius, but in terms of the conjunction of different and independent theoretical elements, three sources. It emphasizes this conjunction as having produced fundamentally new effects with respect to the elements which enter into conjunction. An example of a leap or qualitative change, an essential category of the materialist dialectic. Elements of self-criticism 157. But Engels and Lenin do not stop there. They do not defend a purely internal, purely epistemological conception of the appearance of Marxist science. They recall that these three theoretical elements exist against a historical background, a material, social, and political history dominated by decisive transformations in the forces and relations of production. By centuries of class struggle between the rising bourgeoisie against the feudal aristocracy, and finally dominated by the first reactions of the proletarian class struggle. In a word, they remind us that it is practical, economic, political, ideological realities which are represented theoretically in more or less abstract form in German philosophy, English political economy, and French socialism. They are represented, but at the same time they are also deformed, mystified, and masked, because these theoretical elements are by nature profoundly ideological. It is here that the decisive question arises. In fact, it is not enough to point out that the conjunction of these three theoretical elements caused Marxist science to appear. We must also ask how this ideological conjunction could produce scientific disjunction, how this encounter could produce a break. In other words, we must ask how and why, when this conjunction took place, Marxist thought was able to leave ideology. Or again, what the displacement was that produced such a prodigious transformation, what the change was that could bring to light what was hidden, overturn what was accepted, and discover an unknown necessity in the facts. I want to propose the first element of the answer to this question by proposing the following thesis. It was by moving to think of absolutely new proletarian class positions that Marx realized the possibilities of the theoretical conjunction from which the science of history was born. These can be demonstrated by running through the main lines of the moments of the evolution of the young Marxist thought. 4 years separate the liberal radical articles of the Rheinische Zeitung from the revolutionary break, rupture, of 1845, recorded in the theses on Feuerbach and the German ideology. In the famous phrases proclaiming the settling of accounts with our erstwhile philosophical consciousness and the arrival of a new philosophy which will no longer interpret the world but change it. In these 4 years, we see a young son of the Rhenish bourgeoisie move from bourgeois radical political and philosophical positions to petty bourgeois humanist positions, then to communist materialist positions in unprecedented revolutionary materialism. Let me specify the aspects of this evolution. We see the young Marx at the same time change the object of his thought. Roughly, he moves from law to the state, then to political economy. Change his philosophical position, he moves from Hegel to the Iraq, then to revolutionary materialism, and changes political position. He moves from radical bourgeois liberalism to petty bourgeois communism, then to communism. Although these changes are not completely in phase, there are profound links between them, but they should not be fused into a single formless unity because they interrelate at different levels, and each plays a distinct role in the process of transformation of young Marxist thought. We can say that in this process in which the object occupies the front of the stage, it is the class political position that occupies the determinant place, but it is the philosophical position that occupies the central place because it guarantees the theoretical relation between the political position and the object of Marx's thought. This can be verified empirically in the history of young Marx. It was indeed politics which allowed him to move from one object to another systematically, from press laws to the state, then to political economy. But this move was realized and expressed each time in the form of a new philosophical position. On the one hand, the philosophical position appears to be the theoretical expression of the political and ideological class position. On the other hand, the translation of the political position into theory in the form of a philosophical position appears to be the condition of the theoretical relation to the object of thought. Elements of self-criticism 159. If this is true, and philosophy really does represent politics in theory, we can say that the philosophical position of the young Marx represents, in its variations, the class theoretical conditions of his thought. If this is true, then it is no surprise that the break of 1845, which ushered in a new science, is first expressed in the form of a philosophical break rupture, of a settling of accounts within erstwhile philosophical consciousness, and in terms of the proclamation of an unprecedented philosophical position. This astonishing dialectic can be seen at work in the 1844 manuscripts. When you examine them closely, you appreciate the extent of the theoretical drama which Marx has lived through in this text. He never published it. He never referred to it again. The crisis of the manuscript is summed up in the untenable contradiction between political and philosophical positions which confront one another in the treatment of the object, political economy. Politically, Marx wrote the manuscript as a communist, and thus made the impossible theoretical gamble attempting to use in service of his convictions and notions, analyses and contradictions of the bourgeois economists, putting in the forefront what he calls alienated labor, which he could not yet grasp as capitalist exploitation. Theoretically, he wrote these manuscripts on the basis of petty bourgeois philosophical positions, making the impossible political gamble of introducing Hegel into Feuerbach so as to be able to speak of labor alienation and of history in man. The manuscripts are moving by implacable symptom of an unbearable crisis, the crisis which brings the object and closes the ideological limits against incompatible political and theoretical class positions. We find the solution of this crisis in the thesis of Feuerbach and the German ideology, where the thesis finally claimed that it is solved, the germ of a new conception of the world, Engels. The change which the thesis briefly indicates is a change, not in Marx's political position, but in his philosophical position. Marx finally abandons Feuerbach, breaks with the whole philosophical tradition of interpreting the world, and advances into the unknown territory of revolutionary materialism. This new position now expresses 160 Marx's political position in philosophy. In other words, Marx was taking the first step, but a decisive and irreversible one, towards proletarian class theoretical philosophical positions. Here again is politics, which is the determinant element, the ever deeper engagement in the political struggles of the proletariat. Here again it is, from the theoretical point of view, philosophy which occupies the central place. It is as a consequence of this class theoretical position that Marx's treatment of his object, political economy, takes on a radically new character, breaking with all ideological conceptions to lay down and develop the principles of the science of history. This is how I take liberty in interpreting the theory of the three sources, the conjunction of the three theoretical elements, German philosophy, English political economy. French socialism can only produce this effect, Marx's scientific discovery, by means of the displacement which led young Marx not only onto proletarian class positions, but also onto proletarian theoretical positions. Without politics, nothing would happen, but without philosophy, politics would not have found its theoretical expression, indispensable to scientific knowledge of its object. I will add just a few words more. First to say that the new philosophical position announced in the theses is only announced. It is not therefore given to us as a stroke or made. It continues to be developed silently or explicitly in the later theoretical and political work of Marx and his successors, and more generally in the history of the union between the labor movement and Marxist theory. And this development is determined by the double effect of Marxist Leninist science and practice. Second, to point out that it is no surprise that the adoption of a proletarian philosophical position, even in germ, is essential to the foundation of science history, that is, to analysis of the mechanisms of class exploitation and domination. In every class society, these mechanisms are covered up, mass by enormous coding of ideological representations of which the philosophies. Elements of self-criticism 161 of history, etc., are the theoretical form. For the mechanisms to become visible, it is necessary to leave the ideologies, that is, to settle accounts with the philosophical consciousness, which is the basic theoretical expression of these ideologies. It is therefore necessary to abandon the theoretical position of ruling classes and take up a position from which these mechanisms can become visible, the proletarian standpoint. It is not enough to adopt a proletarian political position. This political position must be worked out into a theoretical, philosophical position, so that causes and mechanisms of what is visible from the proletarian standpoint may be grasped and understood. Without this displacement, the science of history is unthinkable and impossible. The I will add finally to come back to where I began. That is, for yet the conditions of the appearance of the science of history is not a matter of scholasticism. On the contrary, it brings us back to earth, for both demanded of young Marx's still, and more than ever demanded of us, more than ever, in order to develop Marxist theory, that is, in order to analyze the new capitalist imperialist forms of exploitation and domination, more than ever. In order to make possible the direct union between the labor movement and Marxist Leninist theory, we need to stand on proletarian positions in theory, in philosophy. To stand on such positions, which means working out on the basis of proletarian political positions, I mean the radical critique of all the ideologies of the ruling class. Without revolutionary theory, said Lenin, there can be no revolutionary movement. We can add, without proletarian position in theory, in philosophy, there can be no development of Marxist theory, and no correct union between the labor movement and Marxist theory. Is it simple to be a Marxist? In philosophy, the following text contains the main arguments which we Althusser coming to submission at the University of Theory. Asserting his earlier writings with a degree of Dr. D'état. The dialectical form of that position is only correct when it knows its limits. Marx's contribution to the critique of the political economy. I think that I shall neither surprise nor upset anyone when I confess that I wrote none of these texts. The little modest view, the articles in for Marx. The two chapters in Reading Capital, with a view to presenting them as a university thesis. It is however true that 26 years ago, in 1949 to 50, I did place before Mr. Hitlerite and Mr. Yankovic a project for a grande, these as it used to be called, on politics and philosophy in the 18th century in France with a petite piece on Jean-Jacques Rousseau's second discourse, and I never really abandoned this project as my essay on Montesquieu shows. Why do I mention this point? Because it concerns the text placed before you. I was already a communist, and I was therefore trying to be Marxist as well. That is, I was trying to the best of my ability to understand what Marxism means. Thus I intended this work on philosophy and politics in the 18th century as a necessary propedeutic of understanding of Marxist thought. In fact, I was already beginning to practice philosophy in a certain way, a way which I have never abandoned. First of all, I was beginning to make use of the 18th century authors as a theoretical detour, a process which seems to me indispensable not only to the understanding of philosophy but to its very existence. A philosophy does not make its appearance in the world as a nerve appear to the society of gods and men. It only exists insofar as it occupies a position, and it only occupies a position insofar as it is concrete in the thick and already occupied world. It therefore only exists insofar as its content has made something distinct, and its distinctive character can only be one imposed in an indirect way by a detour involving ceaseless study of other existing positions. This detour is a form of conflict which determines what side philosophy takes in battle among capitalist tact, the battlefield of philosophy. Because if the philosophy of philosophers is perpetual war, to which come to an end by introducing the everlasting peace of his own philosophy, then no philosophy can exist within this theoretical relation force except insofar as Marx is offered its opponents, and lay siege to that part of the positions which they have to occupy in order to guarantee their power over the enemy who impress it there. If, as Hobbes says, seeking perhaps anti-benches, and with reference to much philosophy as the society of men, war is a generalized state and needs nowhere in the world for shelter, and it produces its own conditions as its own result, which means that every war is essentially preventive. It is possible to understand that the war of philosophies in which systems come into conflict presupposes preventive strike positions against one another, and thus the necessary use by philosophy of the detour by other philosophies in order to define and defend its own positions. If philosophy is, in the last instance, class struggle at the level of theory, as I recently argued, then this struggle takes the form, proper to philosophy, of theoretical demarcation, detour and production of a distinctive position. To prove it, I need only refer, aside from the whole philosophical history, to Marx himself, who was only able to define himself by reference to Hegel and by marking himself off from Hegel. And I think that, from afar, I have followed his example by allowing myself to refer back to Spinoza in order to understand why Marx had to refer back to Hegel. Of course, this conception of philosophy is struggle, and in the last instance, as class struggle in theory, implied reversal of the traditional relation between philosophy and politics. So I went to work on a study of political philosophers and ordinary philosophers, from Machiavelli to Hegel, via Hobbes, Spinoza, Locke, Montesquieu, Rousseau, and Kant. I claim that it was necessary to get rid of the suspect division between philosophy and politics, which at one and the same time treats the political figures as inferior, that is, as non-philosophers or afternoon philosophers, and also implies that the political positions of philosophers must be sought exclusively in the texts in which they talk explicitly about politics. On the one hand, I was of the opinion that every political thinker, even if he says almost nothing about philosophy, like Machiavelli, can nevertheless be considered a philosopher in a strong sense. And on the other hand, I held that every philosopher, even if he says almost nothing about politics, like Descartes, can nevertheless be considered a political thinker in a strong sense because the politics of philosophers, that is, the politics which make philosophies what they are something quite different from the political ideas of their authors. For if philosophy is in the last instance class struggle at the level of theory, the politics which constitute philosophy, like the philosophy which supports the thought of political thinkers, cannot be identified with such and such an episode of political struggle, nor even with the political inclinations of the authors. The politics which constitute philosophy bear on and turn around quite different question, that of the ideological hegemony of the ruling class, whether it is a question organizing it, strengthening it, defending it, or fighting against it. Here I am using formulae which I was not earlier in the position to put forward, but if I may say so, I was little by little discovering, as I challenged some accepted ideas, something resembling what I later called a new practice of philosophy, and having discovered the need for this new practice, I straightway started, for better or worse, to put it into practice. With the result, in any case, that it did later provide me with a special way of approaching Marx. If I seem to abandon this 18th century theoretical propedeutic, which in fact continued to inspire me, it was certainly not exclusively for personal reasons. What are called circumstances, those which I mentioned in the preface to Marx, who after the 20th Congress of the CPSU was baptized by the name without concept of the personality cult, together with the rightist interpretations which then engulfed Marxism, celebrating or exploiting liberation, or the hope of its coming philosophies of man, of his freedom, of his designs, of transcendence, etc. These circumstances obliged me to throw myself into the battle, keeping everything in proportion. You might say that the young Marx, writing for the Rhine who was forced to give an opinion on some practical questions, that of wood or the Prussian censorship. I too was soon forced, on pain of being misunderstood on account of my silence, to give an opinion on some burning questions of Marxist theory. He came for me to do so as accidental. That is, it happened that in 1960 I had to write a simple review for the journal of an international collection of articles on young Marx. This review became a counterattack, which did not simply take the accepted theses to task, but attacked them from the flank. Thus I displaced the ground of the debate and to this end proposed a certain number of theses, which since that time I continued to argue, to work on, and then to rectify. The reason that I recall these circumstances is that I want to make a second remark about the polemical, or to put it bluntly, the political character of my philosophical essays. Those essays which are now placed before you have to declare openly that struggle is at the heart of every philosophy. Of course, what I have just said should make clear they are not made about politics in the raw, since they are philosophical, nor are they simply polemical, or words, since they cannot reason argument. And because the whole meaning of the effort is to put forward and defend the simple idea that Marx cannot fight, in what he writes or in what he does without thinking out the struggle, without thinking out the conditions, the mechanisms, and the stakes of the battle in which he is engaged and which engages him. These texts are thus explicit interventions in a definite conjuncture, political interventions in the existing world of Marxist philosophy, directed at one and the same time against dogmatism and right decree, key of dogmatism, and also philosophical interventions in politics against communism and humanist appendix. But since they appeal to the history of the labor movement and to Marx, they could not be reduced to a simple commentary on the conjuncture. And I want to say this, whatever might be thought about its weaknesses and its limits, this philosophical intervention was the work of a member of the Communist Party, acting, even if I was at first isolated, even if I was not always listened to, even if I was then and still criticized for what I said, within the labor movement and for it, thus the work of a militant trying to take politics seriously in order to think out its conditions, limits, and effects within theory itself, trying in consequence to define the line and forms of intervention. It cannot be denied that such an initiative involved great efforts and risks, and since I'm talking about risks, I may be allowed to talk about one of them. them, leaving the others undiscussed. The one which concerns the theoretical position of my essays. Here it is. In the debate in which I became involved, I chose with respect to certain politically and theoretically strategic points to defend radical theses. These literally stated looked paradoxical and even theoretically provocative. 2 or 3 examples to illustrate this choice. I argued and wrote that theory is a practice and proposed the category of theoretical practice, a scandalous proposal in some people's eyes. Now this thesis, like every thesis, has to be considered in terms of its effect in drawing the demarcation line that is in defining a position of opposition. Its first step was, in opposition to all forms of pragmatism, to justify the thesis of the relative autonomy of theory, and thus the right of Marx's theory not to be treated as a slave to tactical political decisions, but to be allowed to develop in alliance with political and other practices without betraying its own needs. But at the same time, this thesis had another effect in opposition to the idealism of pure theory, of stamping theory with materialism of practice. Another radical formulation, the internal character of criteria of validation of theoretical practice. I was able to cite Lenin, who himself put forward this provocative thesis among so many others. Marx's theory is all-powerful because it is true. It is not because it is verified by successes and failures that it is true, but because it is true that it is verifiable by successes and failures. By bringing other arguments, that mathematics do not require the application of their theorems in physics and chemistry in order to prove them, that the experimental sciences do not require the technical application of their results in order to prove them. For demonstration and proof are the product of definite and specific material and theoretical apparatuses and procedures internal to each science. There again is the relative autonomy of theory which was at stake, not this time in opposition to theoretical idealism, but in opposition to the pragmatic and empiricist lack of discrimination which made it impossible to distinguish practices from one another, like the cows and the Hegelian night. One last example, I argued the thesis of Marx's theoretical anti-humanism, a precise thesis, but one whose precise meaning some people did not want to understand, and which roused against the all-world bourgeois and social democratic ideology even within the international labor movement. Why did I take up such radical positions? I shall not shelter behind arguments of manifest ignorance, which can still be useful but at the proper time. I want, first of all, to defend the principle of taking up these radical positions, because obviously they were met with cries of dogmatism, speculation, scorn for practice, for concrete for man, etc. This indignation was not without a certain frequency. For my part, since I was not aware of the relation which I mentioned above between philosophy and politics, I remember Machiavelli, whose rule of method, rarely stated but always practiced, was that one must think in extremes, which means within a position from which one seeks borderline theses, or, to make the thought possible, one occupies the place of the impossible. What does Machiavelli do? In order to change something in the country's history, therefore in the minds of the readers who wants to provoke into thought and self-volition, Machiavelli explains, offstage as it were, that one must rely on one's own strength. That is in fact not rely on anything, neither on an existing state nor on an existing prince, but on a non-existent impossibility, a new prince and a new principality. I found an echo of the basis of his argument in Lenin. He, of course, a few years after what was to be done, in response to certain criticisms which had been made of his formulae, replied in the form of the theory of the bending of the stick. When a stick is bent in the wrong direction, said Lenin, it is necessary if you want to put matters right. That is, if you want to straighten it and keep it straight, to grasp it and bend it durably in the opposite direction. This simple formula seems to me to contain a whole theory of the effectiveness of speaking truth, a theory deeply rooted in Marx's practice. Contrary to the whole rationalist tradition, which only requires a straight true idea in order to correct a bent false idea, Marxism considers that ideas only have a historical existence so far as they are taken out and incorporated in the materiality of social relations. Behind the relations between simple ideas, there thus stand relations of force, which place certain ideas in power, those which can be systematically called the ruling ideology, and hold other ideas in submission, which can be called the oppressed ideology, until the relation of force is changed. It follows that if you want to change historically existing ideas, even in the apparently abstract domain called philosophy, you cannot content yourself with simply preaching naked truth, and waiting for its anatomical obviousness to enlighten minds, as our 18th century ancestors used to say. You are forced, since you want to force a change in ideas, to recognize the force which is keeping them bent. By applying a counter force capable of destroying this power and bending the stick in the opposite direction, so as to put the idea right. All this outlines the logic of the social process, whose scope is obviously wider than any written text. But in a written text, like what is to be done, the only form which this relation of force can take is its presence, its recognition, and its anticipation in certain radical formulae, which cause the relation of force between the new ideas and the dominant ideas to be felt in the very statement of the theses themselves. If I might in my own wise way allow myself to be inspired and empowered by these examples, I would say, yes, I did consciously confront and deal with the relation between ideas as a relation of force, and yes, I did consciously think extremes about some points which I consider important and bend the stick in the opposite direction. Not for the pleasure of provocation, but to alert my readers to the existence of this relation of forces, to provoke them in its connection, and to produce definite effects. Not in function of some belief in the omnipotence of theory, for which I have been reproached by certain headmasters of the school of philosophy, but on the contrary, in the materialist knowledge of the weakness of theory left to itself, that is, in the consciousness of the conditions of force which theory must recognize and to which it must refer, it is to have a chance of transforming itself into a real power. As a proof of what I have been saying, I would be happy when the opportunity offers itself to argue the point that this relation of force, counterbending and bending, this extremism and formulation of theses, belongs quite properly to philosophy, and that even if they did not admit as much, as Lenin did in passing from behind the shelter of common maxim, the great philosophers always practiced it. Whether they hid this fact behind an idealist disclaimer or brought it out into the full light of day in their treatment of the scandals of materialism, it remains true that in bending the stick in the opposite direction, you run a risk of bending it too little or too much, the risk which every philosopher takes. Because in this situation in which social forces and interests are at stake, but can never be untangled with absolute certainty, there is no court of final appeal. If you intervene too abruptly, you run the risk of not immediately finding the mark. If you bend the stick too little or too much, you run the risk of finding yourself being pulled back into error. This, as you perhaps know, is what I publicly admitted to have happened to some extent in my own case, when I recognized in 1967 and explained more recently in the elements of self-criticism in my writings of 1965, which have been laid before you, were impaired by theorized tendency and just a little compromised by a flirt with structuralist terminology. But to be able to explain these failings, I needed perspective of time, not just a 10-year interval, but the experience of the effects caused by my writings, of further work, and of self-criticism. It has been written. You need to understand, I would add, especially to understand what you yourself have written. Before discussing the detailed argument of my essays, a word about their very general objective. This objective can be made out from the titles of my books, from Marx, Reading Capital, for these titles are slogans. I think that I can speak here for figures of my generation, who have lived through Nazism and fascism, the Popular Front, the Spanish War, the War and Resistance, and the Stalin period. Caught up in the great class struggles of contemporary history, we had engaged ourselves in the struggles of the labor movement and wanted to become Marxists. Now it was not easy to be Marxist and to find one's seat within Marxist theory, even after the 20th Congress, since the dogmatism of the preceding period lived on, now in conjunction with its counterpoint. All that Marxist philosophical twaddle about man. And since this twaddle was based on the letter of the works of the young Marx, it was necessary to return to Marx in order to throw a little light on ideas clouded over by the trials of history. I do not want to lay stress on the political importance of this operation. It did, however, have something original about it, for which I had never been forgiven. In the fact that it criticized dogmatism not from the right-wing positions of student ideology, but from the left-wing positions of theoretical anti-humanism, anti-empiricism, and anti-communism. I was not alone in the operation, as I later found out others, not only developed in Italy, but also certain young Soviet thinkers whose writings have been widely published, had also in their own manner set out on the same path. We were attempting to get back to Marxist theory, which had been treated by dogmatism and by Marxist humanism as the first available ideology, something of its status as a theory, revolutionary theory. Marx had expressed a hope in the preface to Capital for a reader who was willing to think for himself. In order to try to understand what Marx had thought, the very least that we had to do was return to Marx and think for ourselves about what he had thought. Thus, in opposition to the subversions which Marx thought had been rejected, it seemed to me indispensable to lay stress on one simple idea, the unprecedented and revolutionary character of this thought. Unprecedented because Marx had, in a work of conceptual elaboration which begins with the German ideology and culminates in Capital, founded what we might call, as a first approximation, the science of history. Revolutionary because this scientific discovery which armed the proletariat in its struggle caused a complete upset in philosophy. Not only by causing philosophy to revise its categories in order to bring them into line with the new science and its effects, but also and above all by giving philosophy the means, in the term of understanding its real relation to the class struggle, of taking responsibility for and transforming its own practice. It is this innovation, this radical difference between Marx and his predecessors, that I wanted not only to bring out but also to clarify and if possible to explain, because I consider it to be politically and theoretically vital for the labor movement and its allies and still consider it vital for this difference to be grasped. To this end, I had to establish myself at the level of the new philosophy, produced by Marx in the course of the scientific revolution, and in a movement of thought close to Spinoza and sanctioned by Marx to try to grasp this difference on the basis of the newly acquired truth. But to this same end, I had to grasp the philosophy capable of grasping the difference, that is, I had to obtain a clear view of Marx's own philosophy. Now everyone knows that I'm sure Marx left nothing in this line except the extraordinary 1857 introduction to a contribution to the critique of political economy and the intention which he never realized, of writing a dozen pages on dialectic. No doubt Marx's philosophy is, as Lenin said, contained in Capital, but in practical state, just as it is also contained in the great struggles of the labor movement. I decided that it had to be extracted, basing myself on the little fragments of examples. I tried to give it form resembling its concept. That is why the question of Marxist philosophy naturally occupied the center of my attention. I did not make it the center of the world. I did not raise philosophy to the level of command, but I had to make its philosophical detour in order to grapple with the radical character of Marx's work. This conviction has always been with me. I would not formulate it differently than in from Marx Reading Capital, but I consider that I made no mistake in looking philosophy as a place from which Marx can be understood, because that is where his position is summed up. The last instance, I now suggest to you that my essay should be approached by three rough paths which travel across them and intersect. I will first take the path of the last instance. We know that Marx and Engels argued the thesis of determination by the economy in the last instance. This little phrase which seems like nothing at all, in fact, upsets the whole ruling conception of society and history. Not enough attention has been paid to the figure and metaphor in which Marx presents his conception of society and preface to the 1859 contribution. This figure is that of photography, that is, of a spatial apparatus which assigns positions in space to given realities. The Marxist topography presents society in terms of the metaphor of edifice whose upper floors rest as the logical edifice would have it on its foundation. The foundation is in German die basis or die Struktur, which is traditionally translated as base or more often infrastructure. It is the economy, the unity of productive forces and relations of production under the dominance of the relations of production. From the base of the ground floor rise the upper floor or floors of the Uberbau, in translation the legal, political, and ideological superstructure. A simple image will be said representing realities. Agreed. But it also distinguishes realities, which is very important, for example, by placing positive law, which includes within society in the category of the superstructure, and thus distinguishing something very different from simple realities, their efficacy and dialectic. When Marx says that the base or infrastructure is determined in the last instance, he implies that what it determines is the superstructure. For example, the specific economic form in which unpaid surplus labor is pumped out of direct producers determines the relationship of rulers and ruled as it grows directly out of production itself and in turn reacts upon it as a determining element. But the determination which Marx is speaking of here is only determination in the last instance, as Engels wrote in a letter to Bloch. According to the materialist conception of history, the ultimately determining element in history is the production and reproduction of real life. More than this, neither Marx nor I have ever asserted. Hence, somebody twists it into saying that the economic element is the only determining one. He transforms that proposition into a meaningless, abstract, senseless phrase. 3. In the determination of the topography, the last instance really is the last instance. It is the last one, as in the legal. 2. Marx continues. Upon this, however, is founded the entire formation, just of the economic community, which grows out of the production relations themselves. In it which invokes court of the last instance, that is because there are others, those which figure in the legal, political, and ideological superstructure. The mention of the last instance in determination thus plays a double role. It divides Marx sharply off from all mechanistic explanations and opens up with the determination of the functioning of different instances. The functioning or real difference in which dialectic is inscribed. The topography thus signifies that the determination in the last instance by the economic base can only be grasped with a differentiated, therefore complex and articulated whole, the Gliron, in which the determination in the last instance fixes the real difference of the other instances, their relative autonomy, and their own mode of reacting on the base itself. Before drawing consequences, I would like to underline the decisive theoretical importance of this category of the last instance, too often considered as a philosophical approximation or popularization. To argue for the determination in the last instance by the economy is to mark oneself off from all idealist philosophies of history, is to adopt a materialist position. But to talk about the determination by the economy in the last instance is to mark oneself off from every mechanistic conception of determinism and to adopt a dialectical position. However, when you are working in Hegel's shadow, you must be on your guard against the idealist temptations involved in dialectic. And Marx is on his guard because when he inscribes dialectic within the functioning of the instance of the photography. He effectively traps himself in the illusion of a dialectic capable of producing its own material content in spontaneous movement of self-development. In submitting the dialectic to the constraints of photography, Marx is submitting it to the real conditions of operation. He is protecting it from speculative folly. He is forcing it into a materialist mold, forcing it to recognize that its own figures are prescribed by the material character of its own conditions. That this inscription and its description are not in themselves sufficient to provide us with the figures of material dialect in person, I agree. But they do save us from at least one temptation that seeking these figures ready-made in Hegel. In this manner, we come back to the themes developed in my essays, whose object was to differentiate between Marx and Hegel. I stated elsewhere what Marx owed to Hegel, and also why he was constantly forced to make a detour by Hegel in order to find his own way forward. Yes, Marx was close to Hegel, but above all for reasons which are not mentioned, for reasons which go back further than dialectic. For reasons which relate to Hegel's critical position in respect to the theoretical presuppositions of classical bourgeois philosophy from Descartes to Kant. To sum it up in a word, Marx was close to Hegel in his insistence on rejecting every philosophy of the origin and of the subject, whether rationalist, empiricist, or transcendental. In his critique of the Guido, of essentialist empiricist subject and of the transcendental subject, thus in his critique of the idea of theory of knowledge. Marx was close to Hegel in his critique of the legal subject and of the social contract, in his critique of the moral subject, in short, every philosophical ideology of the subject, which whatever the variation involved gave classical bourgeois philosophy the means of guaranteeing its ideas, practices, and goals by not simply reproducing but philosophically elaborating the notions of the dominant legal ideology. And if you consider the grouping of these critical themes, you have to admit that Marx was close to Hegel just in respect to those features which Hegel had openly borrowed from Spinoza, because all this can be found in the ethics and the tractatus theological politicus. These deep-rooted affinities are normally passed over in pious silence, and nevertheless constitute, from Epicurus to Spinoza and Hegel, the premises of Marxist materialism. They are hardly ever mentioned, for the simple reason that Marx himself did not mention them, and so the whole of the Marx-Hegel relationship is made to hang on dialectic, because this Marx did talk about, as if he would not be the first to agree that he was never judged someone on the basis of his own self-conscious image, but on the basis of the whole process which behind his consciousness produces it. I hope I shall be excused for laying so much stress on this point, but it is the key to the solution of very many problems, real or imaginary, concerning Marx's relation to Hegel, and within Marx concerning the relation of the dialectic to materialism. In fact, I believe that the question of Marx's dialectic cannot be properly posed unless the dialectic is subjected to the primacy of materialism, and studies made what forms the dialectic must take in order to be the dialectic of his materialism. From this point of view, it is easy to understand how the idea of the dialectic could impose itself on a philosophy like that of Hegel, not only because of the dramatic turmoil of the French Revolution and its after effects provided the hard lesson, but also because the dialectic was the only means of thinking within philosophy, which had very good reasons for originally refusing, even if it later transformed and reintroduced them, the use and guarantee of the categories of origin and subject. Of course, Hegel did not apply himself to the search for the dialectic only after rejecting origin and subject. In a single movement, he created the dialectic which he needed to differentiate himself from the classical philosophies, and to force it to serve his ends, he mystified the dialectic, to use Marx's words. But that does not mean that the Hegelian mystification itself is not witness to a relation constant since the time of Epicurus, and perhaps before him between materialism, which can only play its role by drawing demarcation line between itself and every philosophy of the origin, whether it being of subject or meaning, and the dialectic. To make the matter clearer in a few words, when you reject the radical origin of things, whatever the figure used, you need to create quite different categories from classical ones in order to get a grasp on those notions, essence, cause, or liberty, whose authority is drawn from its origin. When you reject the category of origin as a philosophical issue in vain, you have to refuse the currency too, and put other categories into circulation, those of the dialectic. That is an outline of profound relation linking the premises of materialism to be found in Epicurus, Spinoza, and Hegel, which governs not only everything about the dialectic but also the dialectic itself. It is this which seems to be important, much more than the conclusions without premises, which are the only judgments made by Marx on Hegel, and where he raises only, and for its own sake, the question of the dialectic. He does this, of course, in order to recognize Hegel merit having, I quote, been the first to express the general movement of the dialectic, which is correct and certainly a rather reserved statement, but also in order to argue this time without any reservations that Hegel had mystified it, and that Marx's own dialectic was not only not that of Hegel, but its exact opposite. But we also know that according to Marx it was enough in order to demystify the Hegelian dialectic to invert it. I have argued enough in the past about the fact that this idea of inversion did not do the job, and was only meant for a real materialist transformation of the figures of the dialectic, about which Marx promised us a dozen pages which he never wrote. This silence was surely not accidental. It was doubtless the consequence of the need to trace a line back for the conclusions to the materialist premises of the dialectic, and on the basis of these premises to think out, in the strong sense, the new categories which they imply and which can be found in operation capital and lens writings, but which do not always or do not yet clearly bear their name. I became involved in this problem and started to look for the difference in the very proximity between Marx and Hegel. It is quite obvious that if Marx borrowed from Hegel the word and the idea of the dialectic, he nevertheless could not possibly have accepted this double mystified dialectic. Mystified not only in the idealist attempt to produce its own material content, but also above all in the figures which realize the miracle of self-incarnation, negation and negation of negation, or off of because if the Hegelian dialectic rejects every origin, which was said at the beginning of the logic, where being is immediately identified with nothingness, it projects this into the end of Telos, which in turn creates with its own process its own origin and its own subject. There is no assignable origin in Hegel, but that is because the whole process which is fulfilled in the final totality is intensely, in all the moments which anticipates its own origin. There is no subject in Hegel, but that is because the becoming subject of substance, as accomplished process of negation of negation, is the subject of the process itself. If Marx took over the idea of the dialectic from Hegel, he not only inverted it in order to rid it of the pretension or fantasy of self-production, but also had to transform its figures so that they should cease to produce the implied effects. Let me make the point again and again during the years 1918-23 that socialism does not succeed in transforming petty commodity production, then as long as it is allowed to exist. Petty commodity production will continue to give rise to capitalism. One might say in the same manner, as long as Marxism does not succeed in transforming the figures of the dialectic mystified by Hegel, these figures will continue to give rise to Hegelian mystified facts. Now this transformation was not to be found in my head, nor only in the future, but out in the open in the text of Marx and Lenin and the practice of the proletarian class struggle. I was therefore simply trying to formulate conceptually already existed in practical state. That to approach the matter from this direction is why I claim that Marx did not have the same idea of the nature of social formation as Hegel, and I believe that I demonstrate this difference by saying that Hegel thought society as a totality, while Marx thought of it as a complex whole structured in dominance. If I may be allowed to be a little provocative, it seems to me that we can lead to Hegel the category of totality and claim from Marx the category of the whole. It might be said that this is a verbal quibble, but I do not think that this is entirely true. If I prefer to reserve for Marx the category of the whole rather than that of the totality, it is because within the totality a double temptation is always present, that of considering it as a pervasive essence which exhaustively embraces all of its manifestations, and what comes to the same thing, that of discovering it as a circle or a sphere, a metaphor which makes us think of Hegel once again, a center which would be its essence. On this point I believe that I have found an important difference between Marx and Hegel. For Hegel, society, like history, is made up of circles within circles, of spheres within spheres. Dominating his whole conception is the idea of the expressive totality, in which all the elements are co-parts, each expressing the internal unity of the totality which is only ever, in all its complexity, the objectification and alienation of a simple principle. And in fact, when you read the rest philosophy, you find that Hegel is pointing in the dialectic of the objective sphere which produces them, the spheres of abstract law, of morality and syllogism, so that each produces the other through the negation of negation so as to find the truth in the state. There are many differences between them, but since their relation is always one of truth, these differences are always affirmed only to be denied and transcended in other differences. And this is possible because each difference is already presenting in itself a future for itself. And when you read the introduction to the philosophy of history, you find the same process when not using the same procedure. Each moment of the development of the idea exists in states, which realize a simple principle, the beauty of individuality for ancient Greece, the legal spirit for Rome, etc. And borrowing from us the idea that in historical totality all concrete determinations, whether economic, political, moral, or even military, express one single principle. Hegel conceives history in terms of the category of the expressive totality. For Marx, the differences are real, and they are not only differences in spheres of activity, practices, and objects, they are differences in efficacy. The last instance operates here in such a way that it slows the peaceful fiction of the circle of the sphere. It is not an accident that Marx abandons the metaphor of the circle for that idea is. A circle is closed, and the corresponding notion of totality presupposes that one can grasp all the phenomena exhaustively and then reassemble them within the simple unity at the center. Marx, on the other hand, presents us with an edifice, a foundation, and one or two upper floors, exactly how he is not stated. Nor does he say that everything must fall into these categories, that everything is either infrastructure or superstructure. You can argue for the idea, essentially capital, that the Marxist theory of societies and of history imply the whole theory of their incidental costs and their failures. Marx only says that you must distinguish that the distinctions are real, irreducible, that in the order of determination the share of the base and that of the superstructure are unequal, and that this inequality or unevenness and dominance is constitutive of the unity of the whole, which therefore can no longer be the expressive unity of a simple principle, all whose elements would be the phenomena. That is why I talk about whole, to make clear that in the Marxist conception of social formation, everything holds together, that the independence of elements only ever form of dependence, and that the interplay of differences is regulated by unity of determination in the last instance. But that is why I did not talk about totality, because Marx's whole is complex and uneven, and stamped with this unevenness by determination in the last instance. It is the interplay, this unevenness, which allows us to understand that something real can happen in social formation, and that through political class struggle it is possible to get a hold on real history. I made the point in passing, no politics have ever been seen in the world which were inspired by Hegel, for where can you get a hold on the circle when you are caught in the circle? Formally, the Marxist part gives an answer when it says, this is what is determinant in the last instance. The economy, therefore the economic class struggle, extended into the political class struggle for the seizure of state power. And this is how the class struggle in the base is linked, or is not linked, to the class struggle in the superstructure. But that is not all. In pointing this out, the Marxist topography refers any question to his place in the historical process. This is the place which you occupy, and this is where you must move to in order to change things. Our only wanted a single fixed point in order to live the world. The Marxist topography names the place where we must fight because that is where the fight will take place with the transformation of the world. But this place is no longer a point, nor is it fixed. It is an articulated system of positions governed by determination in the last instance. All this remains formal, no one will deny it, in the practice of the contribution to which I alluded. But the Communist Manifesto calls these names and capital repeated them. Capital is full example of the topographical figure. It is through the use of this figure that theoretical determination can become practical decision because it arranges things in such a way that the workers who Marx was talking to can seize them. The concept which is grasped becomes in Marx the theoretical practical apparatus of topography, a means of practically grasping the world. It is easy to see that in this new whole, the dialectic outward is not at all Hegelian. I try to show this in connection with the question of contradiction by pointing out that if you take seriously the nature of the Marxist whole and its unevenness, you must come to the conclusion that this unevenness is necessarily reflected in the form of the overdetermination or of the underdetermination of contradiction. Of course, it is not a question of treating overdetermination or underdetermination in terms of the addition or subtraction of quantum determination, a quantum adder subtracted from a pre-existing contradiction. That is, one needing to do existence somewhere. Overdetermination or underdetermination are not exceptions in respect to pure contradiction, just as Marx says that man can only be alone in society. Just as Marx says that the existence of simple economic categories is an exceptional product of history. In the same way, contradiction in the pure state can only exist as a determinate product of the impure contradiction. The effect of this thesis is quite simply to change the reference points from which we look at contradiction, and in particular it warns us against the idea of what I call simple contradiction, or more exactly contradiction in the logical sense of the term, whose terms are two equal entities, each simply bearing one of the contrary signs for A or not A. If I might now go a little further than I did in my first essay, but in the same direction, I should say that contradiction, as defined in capital, presents the surprising characteristic of being uneven, of bringing contrary terms into operation, which you cannot obtain just by getting the second sign obtained by getting that of the first. This is because they're caught in a relation of unevenness, which continuously reproduces the conditions of existence just on account of this contradiction. I am talking, for example, of a contradiction in which the capitalist mode of production exists, in which tendentially condemns to death the contradiction of the capitalist relation of production. The contradiction which divides classes into classes, in which two quite unequal classes confront each other, the capitalist class and the working class. Because the working class is not the opposite of the capitalist class, it is not the capitalist class negated, deprived of its capital and its powers, and the capitalist class is not the working class plus something else, namely riches and power. They do not share the same history, they do not share the same world, they do not lead the same class struggle, and yet they do come into confrontation. And this certainly is a contradiction, since the relation of confrontation reproduces the conditions of confrontation instead of transcending them in a beautiful alien exaltation and reconciliation. I think that if you can cite this special characteristic of Marx's fiction that is uneven, you will come up with some interesting conclusions. Not only about capital, but also about the question of the struggle of the working class, of the sometimes dramatic contradictions of the labor movement and the contradictions of socialism. For if you want to understand this unevenness, you will have to follow Marx and Engels and taking seriously the conditions which make the contradiction uneven, that is, the material and structural conditions of the why called the structural dominance, and here you will get a glimpse into the theoretical foundations of the Leninist thesis of uneven development. Because Marx all development is uneven, and here again it is not a question of addition to or subtraction from so-called even development, but an essential characteristic. Every development is uneven because its contradiction which drives development, and because contradiction is uneven. That is why, alluding to the discourse on the origin of inequality by Rousseau, who was the principal theoretician of alienation before Hegel, I once added as a subtitle to my article on the materialist dialectic the phrase, on the unevenness of origin, signifying by the plural origins that there is no origin in the philosophical sense of the term, and that every beginning is marked with unevenness. I only sketched out a few themes simply to indicate the critical importance of the thesis of the last instance for understanding Marx, and it is of course true that every interpretation of Marx's theory involves not only theoretical stakes but also political and historical. These theses on the last instance on the structured whole and dominance, on the unevenness of contradiction, had an immediate principal objective, which governed the way in which they were expressed, that of recognizing and indicating the place and the role of theory in the Marxist labor movement, not just by taking note of Lenin's famous slogan, without revolutionary theory there can be no revolutionary movement, but by going into detail in order to free theory from confusions, mystifications, and manipulations. But beyond this primary objective, my theses had other more important aims bearing on the temptations faced by the labor movement. The temptation of messianic or critical idealism of the dialectic, which haunted intellectuals in revolt from the time of the young Lukács and even old and new young Hegelians. The temptation of what I call the poor man's Hegelianism, the illusionism which is always in the labor movement, taking the form of communism. In both cases, the dialectic functions in the old manner of pre-Marxist philosophy as a philosophical guarantee of coming revolution and socialism. In both cases, materialism is either juggled away in the case of the first hypothesis, or else reduced to the mechanical and abstract materiality of the productive forces in the case of the second hypothesis. In all cases, the practice of this dialectic runs against the implacable test of the facts. The revolution did not take place in 19th century Britain, nor in early 20th century Germany. It did not take place in the advanced countries at all, but elsewhere, in Russia, then later in China and Cuba, etc. How can we understand this displacement of the principal contradiction of imperialism onto the weakest link? And correlatively, how can we understand the stagnation of the class struggle in those countries where it appeared to be triumphant without Lenin's category of uneven development, which refers us back to the unevenness of contradiction and its over and underdetermination? I am deliberately stressing underdetermination because while certain people easily accept this full determination, it denies the idea of underdetermination, that is, of the threshold of determination which, if it is not crossed, causes revolutions to miscarry, revolutionary movements to stagnate or disappear, and imperialism to rot while still developing, etc. If Marxism is capable of registering these facts, but not capable of understanding them, it cannot grasp, in the strong sense, the obvious truth that revolutions which we know are either premature or miscarried. But from within a theory which dispenses with the normative notions of prematurity and of miscarriage, that is, with a normative standpoint, then it is clear that something is wrong on the side of the dialectic, and that it remains caught up in a certain idea which is not yet definitively settled down with Hegel. That is why I think that in order to see more clearly what makes Marx different, one must put into its proper perspective the immediate formulation in which he expresses relation to the Hegelian dialectic. To do so, one must first consider how Marx's materialism is expressed, because the question of the dialectic depends on this. And there does exist a rather good way of dealing with this problem, which I just tried to follow, that which uses the category of determination in the last instance. On the process of knowledge, I now want much more briefly to take another path across my essays in order to look at another group of theses developed there on the question of knowledge. I cannot hide the fact, and in this matter I depend heavily on Spinoza. I said a moment ago that Marx was close to Hegel in his critique of the idea of the theory of knowledge. But this Hegelian critique is already present in Spinoza. What does Spinoza in fact mean when he writes in a famous phrase, happiness and idea verum? That we have a true idea? No, the weight of the phrase lies on them. It is in fact because and only because we have a true idea that we can produce others according to its norm. And it is in fact because and only because we have a true idea that we can know that it is true, because it is index we. Where does this true idea come from? That is quite a different question, but it is a fact that we do have it, happiness, and whatever it may be that produces this result, it governs everything that can be said about it and derived from it. Thus Spinoza in advance makes every theory of knowledge, whose reasons about justification of knowledge depend on the fact that knowledge which we already possess. And so every question of the origin, subject, and justification of knowledge, which lies at the root of all theories of knowledge, is rejected. But that does not prevent Spinoza from talking about knowledge, not in order to understand its origin, subject, and justification, but in order to determine the process in its moments, the famous three levels, which moreover appear very strangely difficult because the first is properly the world, and the last is especially suited to grasping the singular essence, or what Hegel in his language called the universal concrete, of the Jewish people, which is correctly treated in the theological little treatise. I am sorry some people consider, apparently out of theoretical opportunism, that I thus fall into a heresy, but I would say that Marx, not only the Marx of the 1857 introduction, which in fact opposes Hegel through Spinoza, but the Marx of Capital together with Lenin, is in fact on close terms with Spinoza's positions. For while they too reject every theory of the origin, subject, and justification of knowledge, they too talk about knowledge. And the fact that Lenin claims for Marxism the expression theory of knowledge is not an embarrassment when we realize that he defines it as the dialectic. In fact, Marx and Lenin talk about knowledge in very general terms to describe the general aspects of this process. One must be suspicious of those passages in which Marx states such generalities. There is at least one case among others with respect to which he did explain himself, that of production, and when at the same time he outlines the general characteristics of production, and yet argues that general production and, a priori, production in general do not exist, because only particular modes of production exist within concrete social formations. This is one way of saying that everything takes place within concrete structure of particular processes, but that in order to be able to grasp what is happening, you need the help of that minimum of non-existent generality, without which it would be impossible to perceive and understand what does exist. While I think that the 1857 introductions in this vein, I think that it introduces neither a theory of knowledge nor its surrogate, and epistemology, I think that it only expresses that minimum of generality, without which it would be impossible to perceive and understand concrete processes of knowledge. But just like the general concept of production, the general concept of knowledge is their only disappear in concrete analysis of concrete processes, in the complex history of the processes of knowledge. In the whole of this affair, I base myself as closely as possible on Marx's 1857 introduction, and I used it to produce the necessary effects of theoretical provocation. I think that I did nevertheless remain faithful to it. I was directly and literally inspired by Marx, who several times used the concept of production of knowledge to argue my central thesis, the idea of knowledge as production. I obviously also had in mind an echo of Spinoza's production, and I drew on the sense of the word which contains both labor, practice, and the display of truth. But essentially, and in order to provoke the reader, I held closely, I would even say mechanically, to Marx's concept of production, which literally suggests the process and the application of tools to a raw material. I even outdid Marx by presenting the general concept of practice, which reproduced the concept of the labor process to be found in Capital, and referring back to theoretical practice. I used and no doubt forced a little Marx's text in order to arrive at the distinction between the three generalities, the first, of which function as the theoretical raw material, the second as the instruments of theoretical labor, and the third as the concrete thought or knowledge. I admit that Spinoza was involved in this affair too, because of his three levels of knowledge, and the central role of the second, scientific abstraction. What interested me above all else in Marx's text was his radical opposition to empiricism and to Hegel. In opposition to empiricism, Marx argued that knowledge does not proceed from the concrete to the abstract, but from the abstract to the concrete, and all this takes place, I quote, in thought, while the real object, which gives rise to this whole process, exists outside thought. In opposition to Hegel, Marx argued that this movement from the abstract to the concrete was not a manner of producing reality, but coming to know it. And what fascinated me in all his arguments that one had to begin with the abstract. Now Marx wrote that knowledge is a product of thinking, of comprehension, a product of the assimilation and transformation, a product of gravitating, of perceptions and images into concepts. And also that it would seem to be the proper thing to start with the real and concrete elements. For example, to start in the sphere of economy with population. Close consideration shows, however, that this is wrong. Population is abstraction. Six, I conclude that perceptions and images, as shown in War's Salem, were treated by Marx as abstractions. And I attributed to this abstraction the status of the concrete or of experience as you find it in Spinoza's first level of knowledge, that is in my language, the status of the ideological. Of course, I did not say that generalities too, working on generalities, only work on ideological material, because they could also be working on abstractions which are already scientifically elaborated, or both together. But there did remain this borderline case of purely ideological raw material hypothesis which allowed me to introduce the science ideology antithesis and the epistemological break which Spinoza long before bachelor inserted between his first and second levels of knowledge, and thus I produced a certain number of ideological effects which, as I pointed out in my elements of self-criticism, were not free of all theoretism. But of course, since I suffer from what Rousseau called something like the weakness of believing in the power of consequences, I did not stop there, but drew an important distinction that between the real object and the object of knowledge. This distinction is contained in the very phrases in which Marx deals with the process of knowledge. As materialist, he argues that knowledge is a real object, Marx says, a real subject, which I quote, remains after as before, outside the intellect and independent of it. And a little later, in reference to the subject of investigation society, he writes, I quote, that it must always be envisaged therefore as the precondition of comprehension. Marx therefore poses as a precondition of the whole process of knowledge of a real object, the existence of this real object outside thought. But this exteriority of the real object is affirmed at the same time as he affirms the specific character of the process of knowledge, which is the product of the assimilation and transformation of perceptions and images into concepts. And at the end of the process, the thought concrete, the thought totality, which is its result, presents itself as knowledge of the real concrete, of the real object. The distinction between the real object and the process of knowledge is indubitably present in Marx's text as is reference to the work elaboration and the diversity of its moments, and the distinction between the thought concrete and the real object of which it gives us knowledge. I use this text not in order to construct a theory of knowledge, but in order to assert something within the world of the blindly obvious, into which a certain kind of Marxist philosophy retreats in order to protect itself from its enemies. I suggested that all the knowledge which we possess really is knowledge of a real object which remains after before independent of the intellect. There was perhaps some point. In thinking about the interval separating this before from after, an interval which is the process of knowledge itself, and in recognizing that this process, defined by the word elaboration of successive forms, was inscribed precisely from beginning to end in a transformation which bears not on the real object, but only on its stand-ins, first of all on the perceptions and images, then on concepts which come out of them. Thus I arrived at my thesis. If the process of knowledge does not transform the real object, but only transforms its perception into concepts and then into a thought concrete, and all this process takes place, as Marx repeatedly points out, in thought and not in the real object, this means that, with regard to the real object, in order to know it, thought operates on the transitional forms which designate the real object in the process of transformation, in order finally to produce concept of it, the thought concrete. I refer to the 70 forms, including the last one, produced by this operation in terms of the category object of knowledge. In the movement which causes spontaneous perceptions and images to become the concept of the real object, each form does indeed relate to the real object, but without becoming confused with it. But neither can the thought concrete which is finally produced be confused with the real, and Marx attacks Hegel precisely for allowing this confusion to take place. Once again, Spinoza came to mind, and in memory of his taunting words, the idea of circle is not a circle, the concept of dog is not bark. In short, you must not confuse the real thing and its concept. Of course, if this necessary distinction is not solidly supported, it may lead to nominalism, even to idealism. It is generally agreed that Spinoza fell into nominalism, but he did in any case take measures to protect himself from idealism, both in developing theory of the substance with infinite attributes and arguing for the parallelism of the two attributes extension of thought. Marx protects himself in another way, more securely, by the use of the thesis of the primacy of the real object over the object of knowledge, and by the primacy of his first thesis over the second, the distinction between the real object and the object of knowledge. Here you have that minimum generality that is in the case in question of materialist theses which by drawing a line between themselves and idealism open up a free space for the investigation of the concrete processes of the production of knowledge. And finally, for whoever wants to make a comparison, this thesis of the distinction between real object and object of knowledge functions in a very similar manner to Lenin's distinction between absolute truth and relative truth, and to a very similar purpose. Lenin wrote, you will say that the distinction between relative and absolute truth is indefinite, and I shall reply, it is sufficiently indefinite to prevent science from becoming dogma in the bad sense of the term, from becoming dead, frozen, ossified, but at the same time it is sufficiently definite to enable us to draw a dividing line in the most emphatic and irrevocable manner between ourselves and Fideism and agnosticism, between ourselves and philosophical idealism, and the sophistry of the follower of Hume and Kant. 9. Which means, to put it bluntly, our thesis is precise enough not to fall into idealism, precise enough to draw a line between itself and idealism, that is, correct enough in its generality to prevent the leap of science from being buried in its own results. The same is true keeping everything in proportion of my thesis on the difference between a real object and the object of knowledge. The stakes were considerable. It was a question of preventing science produced by Marx being treated as dogma in the bad sense of the term. It was a question of bringing to light the prodigious work of criticism and elaboration carried out by Marx without which he would never have been able to put it in his way, which remained classical to several behind the appearance of things and diametrical opposition to this appearance, their unrecognized interrelations. It was a question of getting people to understand and to appreciate the unprecedented break which Marx had to make with the accepted world of appearances, that is, with the overwhelmingly obvious truths of the dominant bourgeois ideology. And since we were ourselves involved in the matter, it was a question of turning this truth into a living and active truth for us, because we had to break with other obvious truths, sometimes couched in Marx's own vocabulary, whose meaning the dominant ideology or deviations in the labor movement had distorted. It was a question of recalling that, if, as Lenin said, the living soul of Marxism is the concrete analysis of a concrete situation, and knowledge of the concrete does not come at the beginning of the analysis. It comes at the end, and the analysis is only possible on the basis of Marx's concepts, and not on the basis of the immediate obvious evidence of the concrete, which one cannot do without, but which cannot really be understood from the Marx which it bears on its face. Finally, and this was not the least important aspect, it was a question of recalling with Marx that knowledge of reality changes something in reality, because it adds to it precisely the fact that it is known, though everything makes it appear as if decision cancels itself out in its result. Since knowledge of reality belongs in advance to reality, since it is knowledge of nothing but reality, it adds something to it only on the paradoxical condition of adding nothing to it. And once produced, it reverts to it without need of sanction and disappears in it. The process of knowledge adds to reality, each step its own knowledge of that reality, but each step reality puts it in its pocket, because this knowledge is its own. The distinction between object of knowledge and real object presents a paradox that is affirmed only to be annulled. But it is not a nullity, because in order to be annulled, it must be constantly affirmed. That is normal. It is the infinite cycle of all knowledge, which adds something to reality, precisely knowledge of reality, only to get it back, and the cycle is only a cycle, and therefore living, as long as it reproduces itself, it is only the production of new knowledge keeps old knowledge alive. These things happen more or less as in Marx's text, which says living labor must add new values to materials in order that the value of the dead labor contained in the means of production should be preserved and transferred to the product, since, I quote, it is by the simple addition of a certain quantity of labor that the original values of the means of production are preserved in the product, capital, part 3 GH, constant capital, and variable capital. What is at stake with regard to these theses? Let's take Marx's science and suppose that political conditions are such that no one works on it anymore, no one is adding any knowledge. Then the old knowledge that reality has pocketed is there within it, in the form of enormous and dead obvious facts, like machines without workers, no longer even machines but things. We can no longer mistake short, as Lenin puts it, of preventing science from becoming a dogma in the bad sense of the term, from becoming dead, frozen, ossified, which is another way of saying that Marxism itself risks repeating truths which are no longer any more than the names of things when the world is demanding new knowledge about imperialism and state ideologies and socialism and the labor movement itself. It is a way of recalling Lenin's astonishing remark that Marx only laid the foundation stones of the theory, which we must at all costs develop in every direction. It is a way of saying Marx's theory can fall behind history and even behind itself if ever it believes that it has arrived. Marx and theoretical humanism. I now want very briefly to follow one last path across my essays in order to test out another provocative thesis, that of Marx's theoretical anti-humanism. I would say that, just for the pleasure of watching the ideological fireworks with which it was met, I would have had to amend this thesis if I had not already put it forward. It is a serious thesis, as long as it is seriously read, and above all, as long as serious attention is paid to one of the two words which made up, and not the diabolical one, but the word theoretical. I said and repeated that the concept of category of man did not play theoretical role in Marx, but unfortunately this term theoretical is ignored by those who do not want to understand it. Let us try to understand it, and to that end, let me first say a word about Feuerbach, some of whose texts I translated. No one will deny that Feuerbach's philosophy is openly a theoretical humanism. Feuerbach says every new philosophy announces itself under a new name. The philosophy of modern times, my philosophy, he says, announces itself under the name man. And in fact, man, the human essence, is the central principle of the whole Feuerbach's philosophy. It is not that Feuerbach is not interested in nature, because he does talk about the sun and planets, and also about plants, dragonflies, and dogs, and even about elephants in order to point out they have no religion. But he is first of all preparing the ground for how he put it in that way when he talks about nature, when he calmly tells us that each species has its own world, which is only a manifestation of its essence. This world is made up of objects, and among them there exists one object par excellence in which the essence of the species is accomplished and perfected, its essential object. Thus each planet has the sun as essential object, which is also the essential object of the planet, etc. Now that the ground is prepared, we can turn our attention to man. He is the center of the world as he is the center of the horizon that bounds it, of his own wealth. There is nothing in his life which is not his, or rather nothing which is not him, because all the objects of the world are only his objects as far as they are realization and projection of his essence. The objects of his perception are only his manner of perceiving them, the objects of his thought are only his manner of thinking them, and the objects of his feelings are only his manner of feeling them. All the objects are essential insofar as what they give him only ever his own essence. Man is always man, man never leaves the sphere of man, because in a symbol of phrase which he marks over from Feuerbach, and which provoked some scholarly discussion among the participants in last summer's Take Congress in Moscow. The world is the world of man, and man is the world of man. The sun and stars, the dragonflies, perception, intelligence, and passion are only so many transitions on the road to decisive truths. Man's specific characteristic, unlike the stars and the animals, is to have his own species, the essence of his species, his whole generic essence as the object, and an object which owes nothing to nature or religion. By the mechanism of objectification and inversion, the generic essence of man is given to man, unrecognizable in person, in the form of exterior object, of another world, in religion. In religion, man contemplates his own powers, his productive forces, as powers of an absolute other before whom he trembles and kneels down to implore pity. And this is perfectly practical, because out of it came all the rituals of religious worship, even the objective existence of miracles, which really do take place in this imaginary world since they are only. In Feuerbach's words, and I quote, the realization of desire, which alone. The absolute object which is man thus comes up against the absolute God, but does not realize that becomes up against himself. The whole of this philosophy, which does not limit itself to religion, but also deals with art, ideology, philosophy, and in addition, a fact which is too well known, with politics, society, and even history, thus rests on the identity of essence between subject and object. And this identity is explained by the power of man's essence to project itself in self-realization which constitutes its object, and the alienation which separates object from subject. Makes the object exterior to the subject, reifies it, and inverts the essential relation, since scandalously enough the subject finds itself dominated by itself in the form of an object, God or state, etc., which is however nothing but itself. It must not be forgotten that this discourse, of which I only sketch the premise here, has certain grandeur, since it calls for the inversion produced by religious or political alienation to be itself inverted in other words it. Call for inversion of the imaginary domination of the attributes of the human subject. It called on man finally to claim back possession of his essence. Alienated in his domination by God and state, it called on man finally, no longer in the imaginary world of religion, in the head of the state, or in the alienated abstraction of the alien philosophy found on earth. Here and now, in real society, to realize his true human essence which is the human community, communism. Man is the center of his world, in the philosophical sense of the term, the originating essence and the end of his world. That is what we call theoretical humanism in the strong sense. It would be agreed, I think, that Marx had originally espoused Feuerbach's problematic of the generic essence of man and of alienation, clearly with him. And also that this break with Feuerbach's theoretical humanism was a radical event in the history of Marx's thought. But I would like to go further. For Feuerbach is a strange philosophical personality with this peculiarity, if I may allow the expression, of blowing gaff. Feuerbach is the best theoretical humanist, but behind him stand the whole row of philosophical precursors who, while they were not so brave as to confess it so openly, were working on the philosophy of man, even in a less transparent form. Far be it from me to denigrate this great humanist tradition, whose historical merit was to struggle against feudalism, against the church, and against their ideologists, and to have given man status and dignity. But far be it from us, I think, to deny the fact that this humanist ideology, which produced great works and great thinkers, inseparably linked to the rising bourgeoisie, whose aspirations expressed, translating and transposing the demands of commercial and capitalist economy sanctioned by new system of law, the old Roman law revised as bourgeois commercial law. Man is a free subject. Free man is a subject of his actions and his thoughts. Is first of all man free to possess, to sell, and to buy, the subject of law. I will cut out short and put forward a claim here that, with some tiny exceptions, the great tradition of classical philosophy has reproduced in categories of the systems both the right man to know, out of which is made the subject of theories of knowledge. From the Guido to the empiricist and transcendental subject, and the right man to act, out of which is made the economic, moral, and political subject. I believe, obviously, I prove here that I have the right to claim the following, in the form of different subjects in which is both divided up and disguised, the category of man of the human essence, or of the human species, plays an essential theoretical role in classical Marxist philosophies. And when I talk about the theoretical role which a category plays, I mean that it is intimately bound up with the other categories that cannot be cut out of the set without altering the functioning of the whole. I think I can say that with a few exceptions, the great classical philosophy represents, in implicit form, an indisputable humanist tradition. And it is only Feuerbach closes the gap if he puts the human essence squarely at the center of the whole thing. It is because he thinks that he can escape from the constraint which causes classical philosophies to hide man behind the division into several subjects. This division, let's say, into two subjects in order to simplify matters, which makes man a subject of knowledge and subject of action, is a characteristic mark of classical philosophy and prevents it from coming out with Feuerbach's fantastic declaration. Feuerbach himself thinks that he can overcome this division. For the plurality of subjects, he substitutes the plurality attributes of the human subject. And he thinks that he can solve another politically important problem, the distinction between individual and species, in terms of sexuality, which oppresses the individual because it requires that there should always be at least two of them which already make a species. I think that it becomes obvious from the manner in which Feuerbach perceives that even before him the main concern of philosophy was man. The difference was that man was divided up between several subjects and between the individual and the species. It follows that Marx's theoretical anti-humanism is much more than selling accounts with Feuerbach. It is directed, at one and the same time, both against the existing philosophies of society and history and against the classical tradition of philosophy, and thus through them against the whole of bourgeois ideology. I would say that Marx's theoretical anti-humanism is all philosophical anti-humanism, if I just say has any truth in it. You only have to compare with earlier Marx's affinity with Spinoza and Hegel in opposition to philosophies of the origin and subject to the implications. And in fact, if you examine the text which might be considered the authentic text of Marxist philosophy, you do not find a category of man or any of its past or possible disguises. The materialist and dialectical theses which make up the whole of what little Marxist philosophy exists and give rise to all kinds of interpretations. But I do not see how they can allow any humanist interpretation. On the contrary, they are designed to exclude it as one variety of idealism among others, and to invite us to think in a quite different manner. But we still have not finished, because we still have to understand the theoretical anti-humanism of historical materialism, that is, the elimination of the concept of man as a central concept by the Marxist theory of social formations and history. Perhaps we not first of all deal with two objections. In fact, we certainly ought to try, because they come up again and again. The first includes that any Marxist theory conceiving of men and despising men and paralyzing their revolutionary struggle. But capitalists hold the sufferings of the exploited, from the period of primitive accumulation to that of triumphant capitalism, and is written for the purpose of helping to free them from class servitude. This, however, does not prevent Marx, on the contrary, obliges him to abstract from concrete individuals and treat them theoretically as simple supports of relations, and is in the same work Capital, which analyzes the mechanisms of their exploitation. The second objection opposes Marx's theoretical anti-humanism, the existence of humanist ideologies which, even if they do in general serve the hegemony of the bourgeoisie, may also in certain circumstances and within certain social strata, and even in religious form, express the revolt of the masses against exploitation and oppression. But this raises no difficulty, as soon as you realize that Marxism recognizes the existence of ideologies and judges them in terms of the role which they play in the class struggle. What is at stake here is something quite different. The theoretical pretensions of the humanist conception to explain society and history, starting out from the human essence, from the free human subject, the subject of needs, of labor, of desire, the subject of moral and political action. I maintain that Marx was only able to found the science of history and to write capital because he broke with the theoretical pretensions of all such varieties of humanism. In opposition to the whole of bourgeois ideology, Marx declares a society is not composed of individuals, grumbers, and by analytic method does not start from man but from the economically inferior society, notes on Wagner's textbook. And against the humanist and Marxist socialists who have proclaimed in the Gotha program that labor is the source of all wealth and all culture, he argues the bourgeois have very good grounds for falsely ascribing supernatural creative power to labor. In one imagined more distinct trait, the effects can be seen in capital. Marx shows that when the last instance determines social formation and allows us to grasp it. It's not any chimerical human essence or human nature, nor man nor human, but relation, the production relation, which is inseparable from the base, the infrastructure. And the opposition to all humanist idealism, Marx shows that this relation is not a relation between men, or a relation between persons, nor an intersubjective or psychological or anthropological relation, but a double relation, a relation between groups of men concerning the relation between groups of men and things, the means of production. It is one of the greatest possible theoretical mystifications that you can imagine to think that social relations can be reduced to relations between men, or even between groups of men, because this is to suppose that social relations are relations which only involve men, whereas actually They also involve things the means of production derived from material nature. The production relation is Marx. A relation of distribution. It distributes men among classes at the same time, and coordinates the means of production to a class. The classes are born out of the antagonism in distribution, which is also an attribution. Naturally, human individuals are parties to this relation, therefore active. First of all, insofar as they are held within it. It is because they are parties to it, as to a freely agreed contract, that they are held within it, and it is because they are held within it that they are parties to it. It is very important to understand why Marx considers men in this case only as supports of a relation or bearers of a function in the production process determined by the production relation. It is not at all because he reduces men to concrete like simple bearers of functions. He considers them as such in this respect because the capitalist production relation reduces them to the simple function within. The infrastructure in production that is an exploitation. In effect, the man of production, considered as an agent of production, is only that which capitalist mode of production. He is determined as a simple support of a relation, as a simple bearer of functions, completely anonymous and interchangeable, for he is a worker who may be thrown into the street. And if he is a capitalist, he may make a fortune or go bankrupt. In all cases, he must submit to the law of a production relation, which is a relation of exploitation, therefore an antagonistic class relation. He must submit to the law of this relation and its effects. If you do not submit to individual concrete determinations of proletarians and capitalists, their liberty or their personality to a theoretical production, then you will understand nothing of the terrible practical reduction to which capitalist production relations submit individuals, which treat them only as bearers of economic functions and nothing else. But to treat individuals as simple bearers of economic functions has consequences for individuals. It is not Marx's theory to treat them as such, but the capitalist production relation. To treat individuals as bearers of interchangeable functions is within capitalist exploitation, which is the fundamental capitalist class struggle, to mark them irreparably in the flesh and blood. To reduce them to nothing but appendices of the machine, to cast their wives and children into the hell of the factory, to extend their working days to the maximum, to give them just enough to reproduce themselves, and to create that gigantic reserve army from which other anonymous bearers can be drawn in order to put pressure on those who are in employment who are lucky enough to have work. But at the same time, it is to create conditions for an organization of struggle of the working class. For it is the development of the capitalist class struggle, that is, of capitalist exploitation, which itself creates these conditions. Marx continually insisted on the fact that it was the capitalist organization of production which forcibly taught the working class a lesson of class struggle. Not only in concentrating masses of workers in places of work, not only in mixing together, but also above all in imposing on them a terrible discipline of labor in daily life. All of which the workers suffer only to turn it back in common actions against their masters. But in order for all this to happen, the workers must be parties to and held within other relations. The capitalist social relation indeed cannot be reduced to the capitalist production relation alone. Therefore, to infrastructure. Class exploitation cannot continue, that is, reproduce the conditions of existence without the aid of superstructure, without legal, political, and ideological relations, which in the last instance are determined by the production relation. Marx did not enter into this analysis, except in the form of a few brief remarks. But from everything that he said, we conclude that these relations do treat concrete human individuals as bearers of relations, as supports of functions to which men are only parties because they are held within them. Thus, legal relations abstract from the real man in order to treat him as a simple bearer of the legal relation, as a simple subject of law, capable of owning property, even if the only property which he possesses is that of his native power. Thus, too, political relations abstract from the living man in order to treat him as a simple support of the political relation, as a free citizen, even if his vote only reinforces his servitude. And thus, too, the ideological relations abstract from the living man in order to treat him as a simple subject either subjected to or rebelling against the ruling ideas. But all these relations, each of which uses the real man as a support, nevertheless determine man and their flesh and blood, just as the production relation does. And since the production relation is a relation of class struggle, it is the class struggle which in the last instance determines the superstructural relations, their contradiction, and the overdetermination which they mark the infrastructure. And just as the capitalist class struggle creates within production the conditions of the workers' class struggle, so you can see that legal, political and ideological relations can contribute to organization and consciousness through the very constraints which they impose. The proletarian class struggle really did learn politics within the framework of bourgeois relations and via the bourgeois class struggle itself. Everyone knows very well that the bourgeoisie was only able to overthrow the old regime, its production relation and its state, by engaging the popular masses in its struggle. And everyone knows that the bourgeoisie was only able to defeat the great landowners by rolling workers into political power afterward, of course, mastering them. Through its law and its ideology, as well as through its bullets and prisons, the bourgeoisie educated them in the political and ideological class struggle, among other ways by forcing them to understand that the proletarian class struggle had nothing to do with the bourgeois class struggle, and to shake off the yoke of its ideology. It is here that the last instance and the contradictory effects which produces within Ethos intervenes to account for the dialectic of these paradoxical phenomena, which Marx grasps not with the help of the ridiculous concept of man, but with quite different concepts: production relation, class struggle, legal, political, and ideological relations. Here, I believe the functioning of the last instance allows us to account for the difference and evenness between the forms of the class struggle, from the economic struggle to the political and ideological struggle, and thus for the interplay existing between these struggles and the contradictions existing in this struggle. Marx's theoretical anti-humanism has operated within historical materialism, thus means a refusal to read the explanation of social formations and their history in the concept of man with theoretical pretensions, that is, a concept of man as an originating subject, one who originates his needs, homo economicus, his thoughts, homo rationalis, and his acts and struggles, homo moralis, juridica, politicus. For when you begin with man, you cannot avoid the idealist temptation of believing in the omnipotence of liberty or creative labor. That is, you simply submit in all freedom to the omnipotence of the ruling bourgeois ideology, whose function is to mass and to impose, in the illusory shape of man's power freedom, another power, much more real and much more powerful, that of capitalism. If Marx does not struggle with man, if he refuses to derive society and history theoretically from the concept of man, it is in order to break with this mystification, which only expresses an ideological relation of force, based in the capitalist production relation. Marx therefore starts out with the structural cause producing this effect of bourgeois ideology which maintains the illusion that you should start with man. Marx starts with the beginning of economic formation, and in the particular case of capital, with the capitalist production relation, and the relations which it determines in the last instance in the superstructure. Anytime he shows that these relations determine man and how they brand their concrete life, and how through the system of class struggles, living men are determined by the system of these relations. In 1857, Marx said, the concrete is the synthesis of many determinations. We might paraphrase him and say, men in the concrete sense are determined by synthesis of many determinations of the relations in which they are held and to which they are parties. If Marx does not start out from man, which is an empty idea, that is, one way down towards ideology, it is in order finally to reach living men. If he makes a detour via these relations of which living men are theirs, it is in order finally to be able to grasp the laws which govern both their lives and their concrete struggles. We should know that no time does this detour via relations estrange Marx from living men, because at each moment of the process of knowledge that is at each moment in his analysis. Marx shows how each relation, from the capitalist production relation, determined in the last instance, to legal, political, and ideological relations, brands man in their concrete life, which is governed by the forms and effects of the class struggle. Each of Marx's abstractions corresponds to abstraction imposed on men by these relations, and this terribly concrete abstraction is what makes men into exploited workers or exploiting capitalists. We should also know that the final term of this process of thought, the thought concrete, to which it leads, is a synthesis of many determinations which define concrete reality. Marx has placed himself on class positions, and he had in view the mass phenomena of the class struggle. He wanted to aid the working class to understand the mechanisms of capitalist society and to discover relations and laws within which it lives in order to reinforce and orient its struggle. He had no other object in the class struggle. His aim was to help the working class to make revolution, and thus finally, under communism, to suppress the class struggle and classes. The only more or less serious objection which can be made to the thesis of Marx's theoretical anti-humanism, it must be honest enough to admit, related to those texts which in capital return to the theme of alienation. I say purposely, the theme, because I do not think that passages in which this theme is stated not have a theoretical significance. I am suggesting that alienation appears there not as a really considered concept, but as a substitute for reality which did not yet die sufficient for Marx to be able to refer to them. The form still in the rise in organization and struggle of the working class. The theme of alienation in capital could thus be said to function as a substitute for concept or concepts not yet formed because the objective historical conditions had not yet produced their object. If this hypothesis is correct, it becomes possible to understand that the commune, in answering Marx's expectations, rendered the theme of alienation superfluous, as did the whole of Lenin's political practice. In fact, alienation disappears from Marx's thought after the commune and never appears in Lenin's men's work. But this problem does not just concern Marx's theory, it also involves the historical forms of fusion with the labor movement. This problem faces us openly today. We shall have to examine it. Something new. The following remarks constitute Althusser's contribution to the public discussion in Illuminati on the draft resolution presented to the 21st Extraordinary Congress of the French Communist Party held in October 1974. The resolution is finally adopted by the Congress, can be read in Cahiers du Communisme, number 11, November 1974. By instinct, communists understood that the resolution put forward for consideration by the 21st Congress contains something new, which would be important. It is obviously not a question of change in mind, but within the same line, the resolution provides more exact formulations and rectifications and innovations. Where are the innovations? Essentially, it concerns 2 points. A, who will be in power in the new democracy? Not the united left alone, but the alliance of all parties and organizations interested in democratic change. Of course, something new 209, the union of the left will remain the heart of this broad alliance. B, just as the 20th Congress put the accent on popular union, the resolution puts the accent on the union of the French people. But first of all, why this extra notion? Does it not duplicate the notion of the broad alliance? The resolution is not very clear on this important point. Cf. Paragraph 24, chapter 4. What difference is there in principle between the union of the left and popular union, between the broad alliance and the union of the French people? The difference which exists between the union concluded between organizations and union forged among the masses. The first is the minority, the second can be a large majority. There is of course a dialectic operating between political union organizations and union among the masses. When the union of the left was concluded, its effects were felt far beyond the ranks of the supporters of the left among the masses. The same will be true of the broad alliance when it is concluded. But, and this is the decisive point, what is it that has made possible, necessary and inevitable, the union between the French Communist Party, which had been fighting for years, the Socialist Party and the left radicals? The unprecedented development in May 1968 instance of the class struggle of the masses of the people, therefore the union of the masses in action. The development of the union of the masses in the class struggle, thus the agreement between organizations, thus the further development of the union of the masses, thus the broadening of the alliance between organizations, etc. That is the dialectic of a movement, in which it is the union of the masses in the class struggle which plays the determinant role. One must therefore clearly distinguish between the alliance between organizations and the union of the French people so as to be able to grasp their dialectic, and also so as not to give the term majority a purely electoral sense. Because once the elections are won, the alliance in power will only be able to govern against the monopolies if it can depend on the power of the people united in the class struggle to come. By definition, the union of the French people can only be realized at the base. How? Around the reforms proposed by the common program. But what are the means to this end? The explanations given by militants of the party and the other allied organizations and their diffusion. Discussions therefore, now all this is true. But more is needed. Marxists know that the level of masses ideas are only really exchange action through action. One must therefore be explicit. The union of the French people is the union of working people, democrats and patriots around working class. It is a union, at the grassroots, of the masses of the people in protest and struggle, workers, peasants, employees, artisans, tradesmen, intellectuals, women, soldiers, etc. The union of political trades union and other organizations is both the effect and the condition of the struggle, but it is the union of the French people which is the decisive motor of the struggle. This union is underway, but it must continue to gain strength and especially cohesion if it is to win victory. It is not enough to count on the crisis and the general discontent, nor to pile up sectional actions. To think that these actions are going to converge by themselves would be to fall into the illusion of spontaneism. This discontent and these actions have to be welded together in common political will. Now, what is capable of really bringing and welding these actions and protests together? The working classes and organizations in front of these of the party. That is why the union of the French people can only be constructed around the working class. I should like the resolution to say. The union of the French people is the decisive motor of coming political transformations. The union of the French people must be welded together around the working class. The union of the French people will be welded together by the action of the masses and action among the masses. The role of the party is essential in this. These clarifications are all more necessary because the revolution makes an innovation in comparison to the 20th Congress by talking about the union of the French. Something new 211. People. Why? The idea here is to unite around the working class not only Democrats but also patriots, for example, the Gaullists, who are concerned about France's independence and future. An electoral maneuver, it will be said, a way of gaining votes across the famous barrier. Communists will never fall into electoral criticism. They know that electoral relations of force can, here is the case, obscure relations of class forces. When the revolution defines the French people, which is calling on to unite the whole people with the sole exception of the few barons of big business, it tells the truth, but in the form of a slogan. It is true objectively, and in the long run, only monopolists and their agents, plus foreign imperialism, have a real interest in the maintenance of the dictatorship of the monopolies in France. But it is equally true that its distraction of novelist is able to maintain itself in power up to the present day. It is because it is able and clever enough to represent the general interest of the bourgeoisie as a class, Marx, and it can only do this because it has mass base. Not only in the bourgeoisie, but also in the petty bourgeoisie and even in part of the working class. Thus, the electoral barrier which has caused so many surprises. What obstacle did the electoral drive of the left come up against? Precisely the present frontier of the mass class base of the bourgeoisie, dominated by its monopolist fraction. To reduce this barrier to nothing but prejudice, or simply to the anti-communist defensive, that is, to ideas, is idealism. There is of course tradition, but this is constituted and maintained by concrete links, not only ideological, ideologies of different just ideas, but also material, between the ruling class and its mass base. These relations are complicated, but always precise and varying according to social category. The monopolists are not stupid. They know how to use these simulations to let events develop or to intervene with such and such measures to preserve these relations. Through which they hold on to the different elements of their mass base, just two examples in 100. They know how to close their eyes to tax frauds. Among a certain social category, they hold on to some working people by the DTO, etc. To win these elements for the union of French people, propaganda, equal to DS, though indispensable, is not enough. In each case, you must study the material and ideological nature of these relations. Only thus can you find the correct response. Therefore, the correct forms of explanation, propaganda, and action. Only thus can you wage correct ideological struggle relevant to the masses where they are, as they are. Otherwise, you will miss the mark. As the difficulties which unite is facing also being looked at from this point of view. In fact, the need is for the popular union to become the union of French people by winning over the majority of the mass base of the bourgeoisie. Here too, you cannot count on any miracles of spontaneity, even stimulated by the crisis and the fast crisis that opened the way to fascism. The need is for political victory, the result of political action, whose center is the working class and whose means are organizations of class struggle. If this victory is brought off, then and only then will the enemies of the French people be reduced to the monopolists and their agents alone. That's why the definition of the French people by revolution has the truth of the slogan, which needs both detailed concrete analysis and action if it is to become real. It is no longer a question of defining advanced democracy in terms of the notorious formula. Replace the logic of profit, capitalism, by the logic of needs. What? The 20th Congress had already toned this formula down, but kept the essential terms. At that time, Paul Laurent said, the logic of needs will lose rise to communism, from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. Marx. A formula which moreover defines communism by its relations of distribution and not by its relations of production. Its use should not be extended. In fact, since advanced democracy is not using socialism, what was this vague allusion to communism doing there? Something new 213. It is true that revolution still talks for some reason about a policy for man and a policy of reason, SIC, but it rectifies itself in several places. What matters is to satisfy popular demands. In using this latter kind of language, it is possible to avoid falling into utopianism, that is, into political idealism, and raising excessive hopes, thus causing disappointments, and to avoid the temptation of trying to outbid everyone in spiritualism. Cf. An article in Critique, February 1973, on the common program, centered on the needs of the human person. The revolution does not repeat the old formula of advanced democracy opening the road to socialism. On the contrary, it puts the accent on new democracy, democratic change. In fact, democracy cannot be qualified by any adjective, authentic, true, advanced, which measures even real democracy against the essence of democracy, but only by one which measures against its class content. In our case, democracy for the people. Likewise, revolution puts the accent on limited democratic reforms. That does not mean that socialism is forgotten, nor that policy of reforms necessarily falls into reformism. Communists know that every victory in the class struggle is in the more or less long term a step forward towards socialism. It is not a question of tactical maneuver aimed at others. Socialism frightens them, and we shall keep quiet about socialism, and let us guarantee that this is not the thin end of the wedge. On the contrary, it is a question of rejecting utopianism and its dangers, because it is true, and for us first of all, that there is no thin end of the wedge. That means you cannot program revolution, whether peaceful or otherwise. Lenin said so often enough. It is not enough that revolution, the transition to socialism, should be on the agenda. The situation must also be revolutionary, which presupposes the accumulation and welding together of a considerable number of national and international contradictions. Finally, the subjective conditions, the organization of the class struggle of the masses, must be abreast of the objective conditions. None of this can be programmed. None of it resembles the thin end of the wedge, but there is a definite political consequence. You need a mass political line, strong enough and flexible enough to prepare the party, even when the revolution is so far off. Not only to cope with the revolutionary situation when it is opened up, but first of all, right now, to prepare it, to help it mature, without knowing in advance either when or how it will present itself. The danger of the utopian idealist formulae which the revolution abandons or rightly rectifies can be seen. These formulae may lure militants and the party over the illusion of spontaneous history or the idealism of young militants and ideas, and divert them from the revolutionary task, which before the revolution does not consist in free mongering about revolution, its antechambers and open doors, but in really preparing oneself to make it when the time is right. As regards reforms, the matter is clear. A policy of reform is when it negotiates reforms which hinder revolution. It is revolutionary when it fights for reforms which prepare revolution. I think that revolution should lead to ratification or reexamination of a certain number of other utopian idealist formulae, e.g. on state law and state monopoly capitalism, which in recent years have flourished in the shadow of the slogans which revolution has correctly given up. These measures outline the image of a great mass party, armed with Marxist-Leninist theory, and clear of the reins of dogmatism and sectarianism. The watchword has been given. We are talking about a new party, or to put it schematically, the accent is no longer placed on cadres, cf. Stalin. The cadres decide everything, but on the masses. Something new 215. It necessarily follows that heavy responsibility falls to the base of the party, to the branches. The reason is simple. It is true it states to the branches that the party can become a mass party, applying a mass line and mass actions. A party must have many members before it can become a mass party, but that by itself is not enough. What makes a mass party are its links with the masses, the mass actions in which it takes part, and above all the mass actions in which it can take the initiative, one step ahead of the masses, and one step only. Lenin. In these last years, some party militants had to jump into a moving train, or they did not left on the platform. Why? Because they did not understand in time what was happening with the masses. They did not pay sufficient attention to their needs and reactions, nor did they make a detailed analysis of these in order to give them shape by proposing suitable united actions. The appeal to initiative, like G. Marx's appeal to get thinking, is addressed to every militant, but above all to the party branches. There can be no mass line, the union of the French people, without a mass party. But there can be no mass party without clear initiative from the base of the party. Article 60 of the statutes, the branches, which are at the heart of the masses. I therefore propose that revolution should specify, after paragraph 14, chapter B, in order properly to fulfill its vanguard role, the party must become a great mass party, capable of applying the mass line of the union of the French people. The party must greatly increase its membership, but to do that, and because it does so, it must be linked to the masses, to their responses and aspirations, in order to give these a shape and to initiate necessary actions. One step ahead of the masses and one step only. Lenin. This mass line places a heavy responsibility on the party base, on the branches, and especially on the factory branches, because they are at the heart of the masses. Louis Althusser, Paris, Bibliography. 1. Works by Louis Althusser. 1. 1 is 2. La politique et l'histoire. Paris, 1959. 2. Translator's note in Forbach. Manifest Philosophies. Paris, 1960. 3. Philosophy, Sciences, Means, Review, Enseignement, Philosophy. Number 5. June, July, 1963. 4. Problems and Studiums in La Nouvelle Critique. No. 152. January 1964. 5. Presentation of the article Climatery, La Philosophy de la Science de l'Ingénieur, in Latin, December 113. January, February 1964. 6.